On the Gaia continent, monsters have been mysteriously disappearing for years. At first, everyone thought they were just going extinct or something, but nah, turns out these creatures were actually getting sucked into another freaking dimension. Yeah, wild, right? And funny enough, that exact twist was what one particular mage had been hoping to uncover. This dude had been obsessed with studying the whole monster exodus thing for ages. Still, even after all that digging, he had zero clue about why or how the creatures were jumping worlds. But honestly, he didn't care much about the reason. His main focus was figuring out how to use that power for himself. So after collecting every little piece of research he could get his hands on, he finally set up a massive magic circle deep inside a dungeon known as the Great Labyrinth. After years of grinding his old ass, it was finally go time. He lined up the coordinates, poured in his mana, and stepped right into the magic circle, ready to make the ultimate leap to another world. A blinding flash erupted around him, lighting up everything like a damn supernova. The spell kicked in bright aura, glowing light, the whole deal. And then, boom, nothing. Silence. When he came to, he realized something was off. The air felt different. The temperature was weird. But this wasn't another dimension. He was still outside the dungeon. Actually, correction, the dungeon itself had been teleported to another world, leaving him standing in a giant empty hole where it used to be. Talk about an oops moment. Meanwhile, somewhere in that different dimension, a young guy stood frozen in his attic, staring at an interdimensional portal that had just appeared out of nowhere. Up until a few seconds ago, his day had been painfully normal. Kang Jinhyuk was just doing his usual work routine, watching college kids rush around, feeling that little sting of nostalgia for his own student days, back when he still had energy and ambition. Now though, life was way different. As a low-tier hunter, he didn't have time for dreams or fancy goals. His coworker had to literally snap him out of his daydreaming, reminding him they were only halfway done with their shift and couldn't slack off. After a long-ass day, the two finally crashed inside their van. Jinhyuk barely had on any warm clothes, even though it was freezing. But hey, perks of being a hunter. Even the weakest ones got boosted tolerance to temperature, which saved him some serious heating cash. Still, the perks didn't pay the bills. The guy was broke as hell and stuck doing random part-time jobs since every big guild hogged all the good hunter work. To make things worse, a local serial killer was out there targeting hunters from top guilds, and now those same guilds were greedily snatching up every single job around. So yeah, Jinhyuk's dream of ranking up was looking pretty damn hopeless. But today, things took a sharp turn. Out of nowhere, a loud crash followed by terrified screams echoed from the nearby school. Jackpot chaos like that usually meant monsters, and taking down even a few could score him enough money to chill for an entire year. Except, of course, his luck ran out fast. Just as he rushed in, some guy slammed right into him, knocking him aside, while a squad of elite hunters swooped in to handle the scene. The area's main guild titan was already on it, moving fast and clean like pros. Their deputy guildmaster, Du-yun, snapped at Jinhyuk to scram unless he had a death wish. And honestly, he wasn't wrong. The gap between a broke-ass D-rank hunter like Jinhyuk and an A-rank beast from a major guild was way too wide to cross. With his ambitions crushed yet again, Jinhyuk just sighed, dusted himself off, and dragged himself to his next part-time shift, praying it'd at least cover a few damn bills. Later that night, when Jinhyuk drags himself home, completely weighed down by defeat, he suddenly hears a strange sound echoing from deeper inside his apartment, and that's when things start getting weird. Because when he follows the noise, he ends up standing face to face with a freaking portal to another world filled with monsters, just casually floating there like it owns the place. The creatures on the other side can't seem to see him at all, and even when he steps closer, nothing happens, which instantly gets his brain spinning because this might be the break he's been waiting for his whole miserable life. He heads downstairs to gather his thoughts, trying to process the insanity in front of him, and it hits him that this portal is basically a dungeon, the kind people used to think only existed in theory, and if it had appeared anywhere else, he'd be jumping with joy. But since it's right in his damn attic, things just got way more complicated. Reporting it to the Hunter Association would mean they'd take over his place for investigation and boot him out instantly, so his only real move is to keep it low-key and claim the dungeon for himself. But before that, he needs to confirm whether monsters can cross into his world, because even though they can't see him, he knows he's barely strong enough to take down 2 or 3 goblins alone, and if an entire group somehow made it through, he'd be completely done for. With nothing left to lose, he takes a deep breath and steps right into the portal, landing on what looks like the first floor of a dungeon maze, where he barely gets a second to take in his surroundings, before a goblin charges him from the left, swinging a crude club straight at his face, forcing him to dodge and scramble right back into his attic. From there, he watches the goblin stumble around, confused, swinging at empty air like it's gone blind, which tells him 2 things: that they can't see the portal from their side, and they definitely can't cross through it either. That realization wipes away every ounce of fear he had, and he grabs a baseball bat, jumps back through the portal, and charges the goblin head-on, swinging with everything he's got, smashing it across the cheek and sending it flying before stabbing it straight in the chest to finish it off. For the first time ever, he's hunted solo, and with no teammates around, all the experience points are his alone. His level, which had been frozen for 3 years, finally ticks up, and the goblin corpse is now his property. worth a potential 3 million won if he plays it smart. The next day, he heads straight to a hunter's market with the body, hoping to cash in, and the merchant takes one look at the poorly handled corpse and instantly realizes this guy's a total newbie because his sloppy kill has already tanked the market value. But even then, Jin-hyuk somehow manages to secure just over 3 million won, exactly as he'd hoped. Now, all that's left is to provide the location of his hunt for verification, but that's the one piece of info he can't risk revealing, because if anyone finds out there's a dungeon chilling inside his attic, his little gold mine would vanish faster than that goblin he flattened with a bat. As he's trying to figure out how to escape this new mess, a group of hunters from the Black Dragon Guild suddenly storms in like a pack of starving hyenas looking for their next meal. Apparently, someone dared to steal a kill from their hunting grounds, and they're furious about it. At first, they zero in on Jin-hyuk, ready to pounce, but the merchant quickly points fingers at a clueless blonde-haired hunter standing nearby, and just like that, the poor bastard becomes their new target, getting beaten and interrogated before he can even explain himself, because sneaking into their territory without permission is straight-up suicide. For all the guild knows, this random guy could even be the serial killer they've been tracking, and as they drag his half-conscious body out of the building, Jin-hyuk just stands there, realizing how close he was to being in the blonde dude's shoes. Knowing there's no way he can lie about where the goblin came from, he decides selling here isn't worth the risk, and if he values his life, he'll need to find another way to offload his loot without crossing paths with those big guild psychos ever again. As soon as Jin-hyuk gets back home, he decides it's time to level up. Before he heads back into the dungeon, he arms himself with a teleportation stone for quick escapes back to his apartment, a monster tracking compass with a 50-meter range, and, of course, his trusty baseball bat. Fully equipped, he steps back into the dungeon for a monster-slaying spree, each victory ticking up his level by 1. True to its name, the Goblin Labyrinth is packed with goblins, making it the perfect playground for someone at level 2 to grind for experience. After a long day of hunting, his inventory is nearly maxed out. He's got room for just one more goblin. He hopes it'll be a big one for some extra cash. The compass pings, showing a goblin approaching his location. Perfect. All he needs to do is hide and launch a surprise attack. Jin-hyuk positions himself around a corner, waits for the perfect moment, and swings his bat right into the face of a remarkably short man. To Jin-hyuk's horror, it's not a goblin but a very irate stranger shouting at him in a language he can't understand. Jin-hyuk hurriedly bows an apology, which seems to calm the man down just enough. The stranger pulls 2 necklaces from a bag, hands one to Jin-hyuk, and as soon as Jin-hyuk puts it on, he can suddenly understand every furious word the man is saying. That's when he realizes 2 things. First, the guy has every reason to be mad, having just taken a bat to the face, and second, this isn't just a short man, it's a dwarf, a mythical being he'd only read about in fantasy novels. As the dwarf continues to rant, Jin-hyuk helps pick up the items scattered around, all of which look exceptionally high quality. Unfortunately, he doesn't get a chance to admire them before the dwarf notices his bat and snatches it up, demanding to know where Jin-hyuk got it. Jin-hyuk panikedly explains it's just an ordinary aluminum baseball bat, but the dwarf seems to think it's made from orichalcum, a highly prized metal. To the dwarf, this ordinary bat is so valuable that no amount of money could buy it. Instead, he offers Jin-hyuk a trade, some rare items from his own stash in exchange for the bat. Seeing no reason to refuse, Jin-hyuk follows the dwarf back to his workshop, watching as the dwarf takes the bat deeper into the maze of tools and treasures. As Jin-hyuk glances around the workshop, his eyes fall on the various weapons laid out. He can't help but wonder which one he should try to swipe, but the dwarf returns before he can make up his mind. In his hands is Jin-hyuk's newly upgraded baseball bat. For some reason, it's shining bright red and has a slight glow. Jin-hyuk double-checks, is this really his bat? The dwarf confirms that it's just one of orichalcum's traits. It starts out weak and flimsy, but once enchanted, it becomes incredibly strong and durable. That last word catches Jin-hyuk's attention, enchanted. Somehow, the dwarf managed to enchant his bat. Testing a few swings, Jin-hyuk notices it feels entirely different from what he remembers. It's almost hard to believe that something this powerful could even exist, let alone be made from an ordinary aluminum bat. He checks his status window, and sure enough, his bat is now classified as a legendary item, boasting S-grade durability and an automatic retrieval feature. Jin-hyuk's once basic bat has turned into an ultra-rare treasure. Selling this would be a jackpot, but the item's bound to him now, so no dice. Still, even if he can't make money off the bat, he can always make some cash with the goblin corpses he's stashed in his inventory. The problem, he can't sell them openly without drawing unwanted attention. His best option is the Hunter Industries black market. They don't ask questions, and have a solid setup for dealing with unique inventory. Jin-hyuk heads home, uses one of the black market business cards, and tracks down a suspicious-looking address. The card screams shady, but it's all he's got. While searching for the entrance, a man named Deputy Cho Hyung calls down to him and invites Jin-hyuk to meet the boss. The boss, Lee Junchul, is a loan shark disguised as a loan agent who also dabbles in monster corpses on the side. When Jin-hyuk lays out 20 goblin corpses for inspection, the 2 men are stunned. Despite being a newbie, Jin-hyuk managed to bring in such a huge haul, and in incredible condition too. Well, except for the bashed-in heads. As they're negotiating prices, they're interrupted by a black market merchant rushing in to announce that a monster has shown up nearby. Turns out laying out 20 fresh goblin corpses was like putting up a neon sign for nearby monsters. Worse yet, 2 orcs definitely out of Jinhyuk's league appear, and Jinhyuk quickly realizes he has 2 options: grab his corpses and run, or become orc food. But it's too late. One of the orcs is already swinging a battle axe straight at his head. He dodges the first swing, but the second one's too close. Just when he thinks it's game over, his enchanted bat magically summons itself from his inventory and blocks the attack, sending the orc flying back. Another enchantment presence detection. With this bat, Jinhyuk might actually stand a chance. As the orc charges again, Jinhyuk, now more confident, goes on the offensive. He smashes the bat down on the orc's knee, disorienting it, and follows up with a strike to its face, snapping its neck instantly. Just like that, his level jumps from 24 to 36. Before he can celebrate, the second orc attacks. This time he dodges, runs behind it, and slams his bat into its back, then finishes it off with a blow to the head. With the orcs defeated, Jinhyuk smirks, turns back to the men, and suggests they add the orc corpses to their deal. That day, he walks away with a spring in his step, having convinced them to pay him 15% above market price. His bank account is now a sight to behold, and thanks to saving the black market crew, he secured a reliable buyer for his future loot. Clearly, the black market guys have realized Jinhyuk isn't some low-level thief. They're looking at a hunter strong enough to take down 2 orcs solo. Even with his legendary bat and newfound strength though, he knows he'll need better gear to tackle higher-grade monsters. Fortunately, he's got a plan to score his next upgrades, maybe even for free. The next day, Jinhyuk shows up with a crate full of beer cans and alcohol for the dwarf, thinking he'd struck gold. After all, the dwarf loves aluminum, so why not beer cans? The dwarf's eyes widen seeing the crate full of orichalcum. He tries a can, only to spit it out immediately, the taste absolutely horrible. To avoid another shouting match, Jinhyuk quickly offers him some soju instead. The dwarf takes a swig, and while he's mildly satisfied, there's clearly room for improvement. Jinhyuk can sense it. The dwarf is looking for that extra kick. Taking advantage of the moment, the dwarf gives Jinhyuk a new quest: mine some mithril ore. What does mithril have to do with alcohol? Who knows, but Jinhyuk wants free gear, so he's in. He dives deeper into the labyrinth, emerging at a large forest clearing on the 2nd floor. A menu pops up, telling him he can record this location as a warp point. Jinhyuk has no idea what a warp point is, but accepts anyway, creating a portal to travel between floors. He ventures further, reaching the 2nd floor ominously called Dogs and Skeletons. Immediately, monster dogs leap at him. Compared to the orcs he fought before, these are nothing more than free XP. He swings his bat with abandon, wiping out 25 of them, and collecting their corpses. That haul alone should net him a solid 200 million won. Tempting as the money is, he has to stay focused on his mission mining that mithril ore. As he journeys deeper, skeletons start appearing. Since skeletons can't be sold and must be destroyed by breaking their core, Jinhyuk realizes why the dwarf sent him instead of going himself. Skeletons are an absolute pain to deal with, but they do help boost his level to 100, unlocking a new class. Expecting a berserker or warrior class after all the fighting he's done, he's shocked to find out he's been designated a cleric. After dispatching the skeletons, he finally collects the mithril. The dwarf, who doubted he'd make it back alive, seems impressed. As a reward, he offers to forge anything Jinhyuk wants. Already armed with a legendary bat, Jinhyuk requests lightweight armor that can still withstand heavy hits. The dwarf gets to work, and Jinhyuk heads home for a well-deserved nap. A few hours later, he returns to find the dwarf ready with a new piece mithril chainmail. It's designed to fit snugly under his shirt and hoodie, making it the perfect hidden armor. To demonstrate, the dwarf smacks Jinhyuk in the chest with a hammer, an attack that would have normally broken a rib or two, but Jinhyuk barely feels it. With this armor and his enchanted bat, his combat skills have skyrocketed. Meeting this dwarf was definitely the lucky break he'd been waiting for. But the dwarf isn't done. He hands Jinhyuk a large barrel of soju, made from the mithril ore Jinhyuk brought back. Jinhyuk takes it home to try, and discovers the dwarf was right. The mithril barrel has transformed the soju into something completely unique. With this in hand, he contacts the black market dealer again, offering not only cobalt corpses but now also premium quality liquor. Meanwhile, in another part of town, the Titan Guild is finishing a training session when an unexpected anomaly gate opens, spewing hordes of lizardmen. The deputy guildmaster, Du-yun, stubbornly refuses to call for backup, pushing his team to hold the line on their own. Jinhyuk, however, is having a much better day. His cleric class is now officially registered, and he's been promoted from D rank to C rank. Given that clerics are rare and highly sought after by top guilds, he's excited about the new opportunities. Just then, a bloodied hunter bursts in, desperate for a cleric's help. Jinhyuk volunteers, and is taken to the site where Titan Guild members are locked in battle with the lizardmen. He's instructed to stay in the back and heal as many people as he can. Jinhyuk wants to jump in on the action, but the guild member assures him that healing is all he needs to do, and he'll be handsomely paid once the fight is over. The healer's presence is enough to keep the guild members fighting, but the waves of lizardmen are relentless. One of the other clerics suggests calling a support guild for backup. As the odds are starting to look grim, Just as Jinhyuk is considering their next move, he senses a hostile presence behind him. His trusty bat saves him from a near-fatal blow delivered by a sneaky lizard man who somehow bypassed all the hunters, aiming straight for the healers. Realizing that the rear defense has been breached, Jinhyuk swings his bat, sending the attacker flying. He quickly warns the other clerics about the breach, understanding that he's the only one who can hold them off. The monsters must have used the concealment technique to slip through, planning to ambush the healers from behind. Jinhyuk instructs the clerics to focus on healing and leave the lizardmen to him. The other clerics look at him with concern. They think he's just another ordinary healer like them, but Jinhyuk charges in, reassuring them with a confidence he's only kind of feeling himself. In reality, he's nervous, but he manages to hold his ground against the onslaught. At one point, a lizardman slips past his guard and lunges for another cleric. Jinhyuk bolts after it, leaping just in time to intercept the attack. He lands a rush blow, but leaves himself open for a stab from behind. Thankfully, the dwarf's chainmail armor absorbs the impact, leaving the monster in shock when its attack doesn't work. Jinhyuk seizes the moment, countering with a solid swing to the creature's face, managing to hold the line and allowing the clerics to focus solely on healing. Suddenly, the lizardmen freeze, as a powerful figure joins the fray, a man who takes down one of the monsters with a single punch. It's Seo Sangho, the Titan Guildmaster himself. He nods at Jinhyuk and asks if he was the one who took down all the monsters in the area. Jinhyuk, a bit confused about who this powerhouse is, admits he was handling things here. The clerics are baffled. How could he not recognize Sangho, the infamous S-rank hunter? With no time to spare, Sangho heads back into battle, promising to reward Jinhyuk for his help later. As soon as he steps in, his presence immediately raises everyone's spirits, everyone except Duyun, who's clearly irritated. Sangho takes charge without hesitation, barking orders and commanding attention from all the hunters. With the area cleared, he unleashes a powerful shockwave attack that sends the lizardmen flying. In mere moments, Sangho has wiped out the remaining monsters. Satisfied that his guild members are now safe, Sangho turns to Duyun, grabbing him by the jacket to reprimand him. What was he thinking, risking his life and the lives of everyone else like that? Duyun claims he just wanted to protect the guild's reputation, but Sangho sees through him. It's not about the guild, is it? It's about his pride. Their tense standoff is broken when one of the guild members reminds Sangho to dismiss the clerics who helped secure the area. Sangho composes himself and addresses the hunters, thanking them for their efforts, especially Jinhyuk, who played a key role in keeping everyone alive. As a gesture of gratitude, Sangho invites Jinhyuk to join the Titan Guild directly, skipping the usual registration process. Duyun can't hold back, immediately stepping in to belittle Jinhyuk as just a D-rank who got lucky. Sangho snaps back loudly. He reminds the shitface that this mere D-rank saved countless lives that would have been lost without his determination. Sangho then forces Duyun to apologize, delivering a heavy blow to his pride. However, Jinhyuk declines the offer. He's not interested in joining a guild where people like Duyun hold authority. That's the final straw for Duyun, who lunges at Jinhyuk with an enhanced punch, only to be met by Jinhyuk's bat squarely in the stomach. The blow knocks him out cold, and the scene soon makes headlines, sparking quite a buzz in the local news. The next day, the higher-ups of the Titan Guild are seething over what happened to Duyun. Not only was he publicly embarrassed by a mere C rank, but he was also demoted from his position as Deputy Guildmaster. They demand that this C rank show up before them to explain himself. However, Sangho, the Guildmaster, isn't having any of it. He points out that Duyun not only put multiple guild members at risk for the sake of his pride, but also attempted to attack someone who fought for their guild. That's more than enough reason for a demotion in Sangho's eyes. This comment shuts the gathered crowd down, leaving them with nothing to say. Sangho sends them on their way, but his thoughts wander back to the extraordinary C rank he witnessed the other day. Before he grows any stronger, he must get Kang Jinhyuk to join his guild, no matter what. Jinhyuk was chilling in his apartment, sprawled on the couch with a drink in hand, lazily checking his spending habits. Since his last hunting spree brought in a ton of cash, he'd gone overboard with expenses, and now things were looking wild. If he'd known it'd turn out like this, he probably would have taken that extra pay the Titan Guild offered him. Still, he didn't really care. He had better ways to make money anyway. After some much-needed downtime, he hopped back into the dungeon, ready to stack more monster corpses for cash. But hunting the same old weak monsters wasn't cutting it anymore. Now that he'd powered up, he craved tougher fights. So, he pushed deeper into the second floor, only to stumble into a small army of orcs waiting for him. One tried to sneak from behind, but Jinhyuk smoothly dodged and countered, dropping the orc in a single hit. As more swarmed in, he couldn't help but think that a few days ago, this would have been game over for him. Thanks to his new gear though, he handled them like it was nothing, and soon 20 orc corpses were lying at his feet, enough loot to keep him set for a year. Still feeling fired up, he ventured deeper, stepping into the third floor, known as the Temple Guardian's Labyrinth. It looked empty at first, but the calm shattered when the ground began shaking violently. A giant stone hand erupted from below, and Jinhyuk barely dodged in time. The hand belonged to a stone golem made of pure mana, fast, heavy, and way too strong. Even blocking its hits sent him staggering backward. Realizing it was dumb but powerful, he aimed for its head and shattered it clean, only to watch it start reforming. That's when it hit him. Golems only die when their core is destroyed. Before he could regroup, the monster's arm regenerated and grabbed him mid-escape. Just when he thought he was done for, an arrow zipped through the air and nailed the golem right in the chest. Seizing the moment, Jinhyuk dashed in, jabbed through its back, cracked the core, and ended the fight for good. Turning around to thank his savior, he expected that dwarf from before, but instead, standing there was a stunning elf woman with long pointed ears and a look that could kill. Before he could even speak, she stormed over, grabbed his collar, and started grilling him about who he was and where he came from. She clearly wasn't from his world. His outfit alone had her confused. After bombarding him with questions, she finally eased up when he mentioned he'd just entered the dungeon today. Her eyes widened as she shoved him down, shouting that he knew the way out. Dropping her bow, she looked half crazy, half relieved, claiming she'd finally found a way to escape. Jinhyuk, still dazed, tried to ask what the hell was going on, but she ignored him completely and demanded that he guide her out. He rolled his eyes, thinking she was way too pushy, but damn, she was pretty, so he let it slide. She promised him a huge reward for helping her, bragging that she was a platinum-ranked mercenary and totally trustworthy. Introducing herself as Lucia, a half-elf with a reputation, she was shocked when Jinhyuk admitted he'd never heard of her. When she flashed her badge, he still looked clueless, making her ask if he was from some countryside dump. "I'm from Seoul, Korea," he replied flatly, and her face went blank. She realized right then that a crazy mage might have actually succeeded with a dimensional hop spell. According to her, a mage from her world cast some experiment that ended up pulling this entire dungeon into his dimension. It sounded insane to Jinhyuk, but it lined up with everything that felt off. If the dungeon returned to its original world, it could screw him over completely. When he asked if she planned to send it back, she said it wasn't possible to reverse the magic here. It was way too complex. But there might be a hidden room on this floor that could help, one she'd found long ago while searching for an exit. She asked for his help getting there, promising a solid reward in return. Since the deal didn't sound half bad, Jinhyuk decided to tag along because honestly, this weird-ass adventure had just started getting interesting. As they kept moving through the dungeon, cutting down a few stray orcs along the way, Jinhyuk couldn't help but realize that Lucia was way stronger than he first assumed. That arrow she'd fired earlier wasn't just some lucky shot, it packed serious power, and honestly, fighting her here would have been suicide. His best play was to stay chill, cooperate with her, and keep observing how she handled things. After trekking for a while, they decided to take a breather at a safe spot. Jinhyuk had stashed a few emergency chocolates in his pocket, so he handed one to her, thinking it'd be a nice gesture. Turns out she loved it a little too much before he knew it. She devoured his entire stash like a sugar-crazed maniac and was still asking for more. Unfortunately, that was all he had left, but she looked satisfied enough to keep going, so he figured they were good for now. Eventually, they reached a massive chamber that housed the dungeon's boss, and Lucia was convinced the mage's spell they were looking for might be hidden in there somewhere. The only problem, it was guarded by the boss itself. She told him not to stress too much, just to back her up once she took the big guy down so they could access the sealed room. The moment they stepped inside, the monster roared loud enough to shake the walls and charged straight at them. Lucia didn't even flinch. She pulled back her bow, energy crackling around her as she shouted for him to watch closely. Channeling something called aura, she fired an arrow that smashed straight into the boss's chest, sending it crashing onto its back like a ragdoll. One hit from her was enough to drop that massive armored beast. Yeah, she was definitely showing off. Now it was Jinhyuk's turn to finish the job before the thing recovered. Remembering how golems work, he knew the core was the weak point, so he leapt onto the monster's chest and swung his bat right where he thought it'd be. The first hit didn't do much, and before he could go again, a huge fist came flying from the side. He barely blocked it, activating his cleric skill Holy Shield just in time, and using the recoil to spring himself right back onto the creature's chest. If one hit wasn't enough, then fine, he'd just keep smashing until it stopped moving. After a few solid blows, the bat finally broke through, cracking the core wide open and ending the fight for good. His level shot up again, almost reaching 200, and he could feel the raw power rushing through him. When it was all over, he turned to Lucia and asked her to teach him how to use aura like she did. But the funny thing was, he had already used it without realizing. His shield skill had transformed his holy cleric power into aura on its own. Lucia had no clue what kind of skill that was, but seeing his potential, she figured he could probably learn to control aura way faster than she expected. Maybe even start enhancing his attacks right away. Still, before she'd agree to teach him properly, she gave him one simple condition: go back and bring her more chocolates. Meanwhile, back in the city, Sang-ho walked alongside his secretary, Lee Hyena, discussing a new anomaly that had appeared near Gangnam Station. It was detected yesterday, which meant they had about 5 days to prepare before a powerful monster crashed the party. No matter how Sang-ho pictured it, there was no way his guild was going to handle this one alone. However, all the other major guilds had been dispatched overseas, leaving the Titan Guild as the only one left in Korea to fight. Hyena continued searching for capable hunters who were freelancing locally, but none of them seemed reliable. Sang-ho, however, already had his sights set on someone else, and coincidentally, that someone just happened to be crossing the street. He excused himself from the conversation with his secretary and ran after Jinhyuk, who was carrying home a large box of snacks the elf had asked him to get. When the guildmaster called out to him, Jin-hyuk turned, listening as Sang-ho made another proposal for him to join the Titan Guild. But Jin-hyuk had no plans to change his mind. Seeing that, Sang-ho offered him a compromise, a job as a mercenary, so he could still work for the guild without being a part of it. The rewards sounded substantial, which caught Jin-hyuk's attention, but he only promised to think about it. He later returned to the dungeon and presented the snacks to the elf, who happily devoured them all. It was clear that her world didn't have this kind of food. After her hearty meal, Jin-hyuk asked why she was eating down in the basement when they'd already defeated the boss monster. She pointed up at a magic circle on the ceiling and explained that it connected the dungeon to the world he lived in. Because of this, she would be staying there for the time being, to study it, and if he wanted to learn more about aura, he'd better bring her more chocolates. Once she finished eating, she took his hand to teach him how to use aura. The first step was for her to pour her own aura into his body so he could feel what it was like. As Jin-hyuk felt the power flowing through him, Lucia noticed a sudden spike of energy. It seemed he had more talent for this than she initially expected. The movement of holy power coursing through him was impressive enough that she believed he'd grasp the basics by the end of the day. She commended him for his natural talent, and asked if he could remember the flow of aura in his body. He confidently assured her he could, and she acknowledged it with a nod before turning to leave the dungeon. She mentioned that she was supposed to investigate the magic circle first, but decided it would be faster to train him on how to use aura, and the best way to do that was through practical experience. She then took him to a different part of the dungeon and tossed him straight into a horde of monsters. He managed to hold his own while collecting their corpses. Turning to Lucia, he questioned why he was fighting an army of monsters when she had said he'd be learning how to use aura. Lucia's expression made it clear she believed this was the best way to learn. Even though she had infused a bit of mana into his body so he could feel it, she told him the rest he'd have to sense on his own by activating aura through his holy power. There was no better way to build instinct than in the middle of real combat. As they battled, the ground started to shake, and a stone golem emerged from the earth. The creature let out a deafening roar and pushed Jin-hyuk back, as Lucia explained that he needed to face a true crisis to unlock his potential. She told him to focus and try to feel the holy power coming from the shield he generated with his skill. Since the shield itself was made of aura, mastering it would come faster that way. Easier said than done, especially since he didn't even consciously activate the holy shield. He wondered how he was supposed to feel aura from something that turned on automatically. The monster suddenly brought down its massive fist toward him, and he barely managed to block it with the holy shield again. But this time, he felt something, a strange energy gathering around his left hand, the one that had activated the skill. This must be what holy power felt like. The golem attacked again, and Jin-hyuk summoned his holy shield once more, but this time, it looked different, and the sensation of summoning it wasn't the same. He suspected this must be mana. However, before he could think further, the golem smashed down on the shield, sending him flying back. From her platform, Lucia mocked him, saying she told him to get the hang of his skill, not to make foolish mistakes. Jin-hyuk gritted his teeth, realizing he was doing exactly what she'd told him to do. As he steadied himself for another attack, a status window suddenly appeared before him. He had acquired a new skill, Holy Power Application. It allowed him to use Holy Power to enhance both attack and defense, depending on how much power was used. That revelation made him pause. There were actually ways to gain skills beyond just a job change. Lucia noticed him spacing out and decided to step in, saying that facing a golem while learning aura might be too much for him. She was ready to handle it herself, but Jin-hyuk quickly recovered, telling her to stand down. Now that he had a grasp on his new power, he was confident he could handle it. He charged at the golem, leaping into the air to narrowly dodge another stone fist aimed right at him. While mid-air, he focused his mana on the bat, used a front flip to gain more momentum, and brought the mana-enhanced bat crashing down onto the golem's head. The monster fell, but he wasn't done yet. Landing on its chest, he concentrated again, channeling even more mana into his bat before slamming it down on the creature's core. In that moment, he unlocked a new skill, Holy Aura. With his enhanced weapon, he stabbed the golem and shattered its core, unlocking not only his holy aura, but also gaining new skills like precision strike and unyielding. Thanks to Lucia's brutal training, he had unlocked 2 passive skills and an active one. Lucia, however, was more stunned by how quickly he learned to use aura in battle. She had only intended to teach him the basics and be done with it, but now she knew she had to see this through to the end. She drew one of her arrows and brought down a wall, opening the area to an even larger horde of monsters. Jin-hyuk was far from impressed, but he readied his bat anyway and prepared for another fight, bracing himself as he muttered inwardly that, here they go again. The battle with the monsters in the dungeon drained Jin-hyuk completely, and by the time he went to sell the monster corpses, he looked like he had just crawled out of a war zone. When he arrived at the black market, the boss, Jin Chol, immediately noticed his exhausted state. Choosing not to ask too many questions, Jin Chol got straight to business, accepting the corpses and bringing up the topic of the alcohol Jin-hyuk had sold last time. Marketed as traditional artisan soju, the drink had exploded in popularity, with orders flooding in ever since it hit the market. The thought made Jin-hyuk pause. If he focused solely on selling liquor, he could probably live comfortably without ever worrying about money again. With that comforting realization, enough savings to last a lifetime, and a small business already set up, Jin-hyuk headed home to rest. His training with Lucia had left him completely worn out, and the moment his head hit the pillow, he passed out instantly. Not long after, he was jolted awake by the blaring sound of a disaster alert. A loud automated voice echoed through the streets, urging everyone to evacuate and get to safety. It was the day of the monster invasion, though it had arrived earlier than expected this month. Normally, these invasions happened at random, but there was one that occurred regularly every month. This particular invasion wasn't unusual, and under normal circumstances, Jin-hyuk would have used it as a chance to hunt low-level monsters for some quick cash. This time though, he was too damn tired to care. The large guilds would handle it anyway, or so he thought. That was until a new notification popped up on his phone, announcing that, due to the urgency of the situation, the rewards for defeating monsters were now tripled. At that point, there was no way Jin-hyuk could ignore it. He grabbed his gear and stepped out into the street to see what he could take down for some quick profit. Around him, security officials were shouting orders and trying to clear civilians from the area, while the Titan Guild fought hordes of monsters charging through the city. The security line was breaking fast, and Sang-ho was running out of stamina trying to hold the line. No matter how many monsters he cut down, more just kept pouring in. The guild members were already at their limits. Even though it looked like they were holding the upper hand, things weren't looking good. From a safe distance, the guild's secretary watched the chaos unfold with worry. Everything seemed fine thanks to the guildmaster's leadership, but she could tell they were being stretched thin. If only they had one more strong hunter to turn the tide. Her thoughts drifted to a man Sang-ho had recently shown interest in, someone he believed had potential. Without hesitation, she pulled out her phone and called Jin-hyuk. At that moment, Jin-hyuk was busy fighting goblins when he answered. The secretary quickly offered him a chance to join the Titan Guild for the battle, promising generous compensation in return. Jin-hyuk wasn't easily swayed and demanded 5 times the usual pay. She told him to meet her at a predetermined location to discuss further. When they met, she offered him 4 times the normal rate instead. He wasn't thrilled, but eventually agreed. She handed him a device that would track how many monsters he killed, explaining that it would record his contribution to the guild. If his performance exceeded the average, he'd get the full reward he asked for. With a real opportunity to show off his strength and get paid fairly, Jin-hyuk took off toward the battlefield. The secretary watched him go, unsure if he'd live up to the expectations Sang-ho had placed on him. After all, the only time he had taken down Do-yoon was by pure luck. No one really knew how capable he truly was. As soon as he arrived, Jin-hyuk spotted a rampaging ogre and charged at it without hesitation. In a single, powerful strike, he brought it down, leaving everyone around him stunned. The crowd started whispering, assuming he must be at least an A-rank hunter. Jin-hyuk smirked to himself. Maybe A-rank was close, but with his current abilities, he figured he was already stronger than that. He drank a mana potion to recharge and steadied himself. Thanks to Lucia's brutal training, he had reached level 200. Normally, there was no way someone like him could handle an ogre, but as long as his mana didn't run out, he was confident he could go toe-to-toe with S-rank hunters. With over 1,500 mana potions in stock, every monster in the area basically looked like free money to him. Elsewhere, Do-yoon was fighting alongside his guild members when he noticed the monsters around them thinning out fast. Curious, he turned to see what was happening and spotted a small crowd watching someone tear through the beasts like it was nothing. When he saw who it was, his expression twisted. It was Jin-hyuk. Anger flared instantly. He barked at his guildmates to stop gawking and get back to fighting, but his focus was locked on Jin-hyuk. Why the hell was this guy here? And who invited him? The memory of their last encounter, the one that got broadcast all over the news, still burned in his mind. That humiliation was something he hadn't forgotten. Last time must have been pure luck, he thought, but this time, he'd make sure to crush him properly. Determined to put Jin-hyuk back in his place, Do-yoon charged straight toward him, but Jin-hyuk saw him coming a mile away. With precise timing, Jin-hyuk countered, sending Do-yoon flying and knocking him out cold before he even got the chance to strike. Sorry, not today, Jin-hyuk muttered under his breath, brushing off the dust and the commotion. Meanwhile, across the battlefield, Sang-ho was struggling against a rampaging minotaur. His mana was nearly depleted, and he was running out of stamina fast. The beast raised its massive club for a killing blow, and for a split second, Sang-ho considered retreating just to catch his breath, but before the hit could land, a powerful force struck from behind. Jin-hyuk came soaring down from above, grabbing the minotaur by its horn and slamming it hard into the ground. For a C-rank hunter to take down a monster like that in a single hit was absurd. Sang-ho couldn't help but grin. His judgment about Jin-hyuk had been right all along. As the monster fell, Sang-ho approached to thank him, but Jin-hyuk brushed it off, saying that Hyena had called him and promised a hefty reward for his help, so there was no need for gratitude. Sang-ho chuckled and decided to take the opportunity to make another offer, telling him that if he joined their guild, opportunities like this would keep coming. Jin-hyuk took a moment to consider it, then simply replied that once they finished cleaning up the remaining monsters, he'd think about it. As they talk, Sang-ho receives a call from Hyena. She tells him to look at the sky, where the clouds have turned black and the weather has become fiery, crackling with lightning. Something huge and menacing lurks among the clouds, and it does not appear friendly. The creature shoots lightning down at everything, targeting both monsters and hunters while damaging buildings as it flies overhead. It's so high in the sky that their skills can't reach it, leaving them with no way to attack. Sang-ho suggests returning to his guild to assess the situation and invites Jin-hyuk to join him. Reluctantly, Jin-hyuk agrees, and they reconvene in his office. They run various tests, only to find that nothing they've done so far can affect the creature or defend against its attacks. Every attempt to stop it has been nullified or destroyed. They realize they need something with immense firepower capable of long-range destruction. Lucia immediately comes to Jin-hyuk's mind, and he recognizes that there may be a way to bring it down after all. As Jin-hyuk leaves to fetch Lucia, the executives of the Titan Guild gather to discuss Sang-ho's apparent favoritism towards a C-ranker. The other guild members brainstorm alternative methods to defeat the monster without relying on Jin-hyuk, but they find themselves with no other choice. All other strategies are guaranteed to fail, leaving them with only the option to trust the one hunter with a plan. They consider calling the Gudiyar Guild, a large group filled with A-rank and higher mages. But no, they don't care about casualties. Inviting them would likely lead to many deaths. The room falls silent as they acknowledge their limited options. Meanwhile, Jin-hyuk emerges from the portal with Lucia, thanking her for agreeing to help and promising her as many sweet treats as she desires in return. They ascend to the top of the Titan Guild headquarters, where Jin-hyuk shows her the monster terrorizing their city. He asks if she can take it down, and she confidently assures him that she can. The monster is so large that she could hit it with her eyes closed. It's a level 300 creature, the highest ever recorded, and she says she can eliminate it. But first, she needs some assistance. The building's roof can't withstand her power, so she asks Jin-hyuk to prepare a shield to absorb most of the impact. Not wanting to see multiple buildings destroyed, Jin-hyuk calls the guild leader to inform him about the potential damage once they take down the monster. Sang-ho tells him not to worry about collateral damage and to focus solely on bringing the creature down. With that settled, Jin-hyuk prepares the shield, while Lucia charges 2 arrows to strike the beast. She aims carefully and releases the arrows, creating a massive shockwave that pushes Jin-hyuk back even with the shield. The 2 shots soar through the sky and land a direct hit on the monster, obliterating half its body from the impact. The Titan Guild watches in awe from the ground, amazed that Jin-hyuk managed to pull it off so effortlessly. Meanwhile, Jin-hyuk is impressed the whiplash from Lucia's attack leaves smoking trails on the building's helipad. While it wasn't the time to hold back, this was excessive. Lucia, on the other hand, is disappointed that the monster was so weak, attributing her ease in defeating it to her immense strength. Regardless, the job is done, and it's time for her to head back. She hands Jin-hyuk a tracker that monitors his points, showing a staggering 240 points. Before leaving, she warns him not to place too much trust in others, especially when money is at stake because people's minds tend to cloud with greed. She advises him to be wary, as she has learned from her many adventures. Jin-hyuk assures her he'll be fine and will handle anything that seems off. They part ways, and he heads down to the street, where he's met by Sang-ho and his secretary. They catch up with him and ask how he managed to take down such a formidable monster alone. Jin-hyuk politely declines to share, calling it a secret. One of the executives is offended and doesn't believe a mere C-ranker could defeat such a giant beast. However, Jin-hyuk shows them the monster tracker, displaying a substantial number of points, proving he indeed took it down. Sang-ho stops the executive there and apologizes to Jin-hyuk for the outburst. The executive watches in anger, feeling Sang-ho favors a C-ranker over his guild members. He decides it's time for a change, as Sang-ho is hindering the guild's future. He pulls out his phone and dials an unknown number. By the next day, rumors spread throughout the city that an ordinary C-ranker had defeated the giant monster. Members of the Titan Guild were skeptical, but verifying the information wasn't too difficult. Word also circulated that the guild master had personally offered Jin-hyuk direct entry into the Titan Guild, which he turned down. He must have been confident in his skills to reject such a significant offer from Sang-ho himself. The rumors even reached the Ultron Guild, who learned that Do-yoon had been hospitalized after the monster invasion. Known for his impressive skills, it was revealed that he had been defeated by the rumored C-rank hunter. If this was true, then the rumors held some weight. The Ultron Guild scouts decided to meet with Genik to verify the information. They suspected he might have unlocked a hidden class, which was exceptionally rare for hunters. If that was the case, they needed to recruit him into their guild before another one took him, or eliminate him. Meanwhile, Jin-hyuk slept soundly after the battle. Having exhausted all his stamina, he passed out as soon as he got the chance, and woke up 2 days later, realizing the toll of overexertion. He walked into his living room and found that Lucia had created a massive mess with all the snacks he had bought her. She had managed to eat everything in just 2 days. With no food left in the fridge, her only option had been to consume the snacks. Since he hadn't opened the portal for her, she couldn't return to the dungeon. This confused Jin-hyuk, as he had never needed to open the portal before, it had always been accessible. He headed to the attic to show her that the portal was indeed open, but it didn't make sense to her since there had been nothing there moments ago. She instructed him to step away from the door, then reopened it, revealing that there was nothing there now that he had stepped back. Jin-hyuk was baffled since he had only ever seen the dungeon open. Lucia theorized that the dungeon responded only to him, suggesting it was imprinted directly on him, meaning it could have fallen on his head. Luckily, it was a failed spell. He decided not to dwell on it, and instead ordered food for both of them. Lucia then wondered how he had found his way back to the house after they defeated the monster. She explained that she had placed a recognition suppression spell on it, which should have made it impossible to locate. Jin-hyuk asked why she would cast such a spell on his house. Lucia revealed that strange individuals from a guild named Altron had been visiting while he slept, which annoyed her enough to ensure they could never return. Jin-hyuk was perplexed as to why those large guilds would be searching for him. He pulled out his phone to discover what had happened during his slumber. The first headline he saw grabbed his attention. News of him defeating the giant monster had gone viral. A video was circulating that clearly showed him fighting alongside the Titan Guild, and it seemed he had become famous overnight. This newfound attention was problematic. His greed in using Lucia's power had placed him under a spotlight. The hunter industry was territorial, and strong competitors were swiftly eliminated. He resolved not to dwell on the past. With Lucia done eating, they returned to the dungeon to deliver their loot to the dwarf. Thanks to Lucia's powerful shot, the monster's body was too damaged to salvage, leaving them only with its head. The old man was frustrated with Lucia for overdoing it and ruining valuable material, revealing a natural animosity between them. Jin-hyuk interrupted their argument and asked the dwarf if he could craft something from the corpse. The dwarf dug out an organ from the head, which allowed it to produce lightning. With that, Jin-hyuk could enchant his baseball bat to create lightning as well. He inquired how the dwarf would like to be compensated, but the dwarf simply wanted Lucia to leave his workshop. Angered, Lucia began shaking with rage, and Jin-hyuk had to calm her down by promising more sweets. After barely preventing her from shooting a hole through the dwarf's head, he headed back into the city to buy her the promised treats. On his way back home, Jin-hyuk sensed something lurking in an alleyway. It seemed like someone was tracking him. With a quick flick, he dropped his groceries behind a wall and called out to whoever was following him. The hidden presence was startled that Jin-hyuk had noticed him at all. Suddenly, a figure appeared out of nowhere and rushed at him, swinging a sword. Jin-hyuk barely managed to block the attack with his bat. The newcomer was astonished that Jin-hyuk could even see him, which confirmed the rumors that Jin-hyuk was more than just an ordinary C-ranker. Determined to prove his strength, Jin-hyuk pushed the attacker back and leapt at him for a counterattack. Since the attacker clearly wanted to keep his identity a secret, Jin-hyuk decided he would just have to beat some sense out of him until he talked. However, the attacker had a different plan. He used a skill to turn himself invisible. Jin-hyuk could just faintly feel his presence enough to dodge and block most of the attacks, but he knew he couldn't keep that up forever. If only he had his usual bat, but the old dwarf was still working on it. Stuck with a regular aluminum bat, he thought it was going to be a long day. Realizing he needed to make a run for it, he tried to escape. Just as he moved, the hooded attacker attached a tracking device to his shirt. Jin-hyuk sprinted toward a crowded area, hoping to hide, but the device allowed the attacker to track his every move. The trail led to a bathroom in a department store. He muttered to himself that it was the perfect place to hide. Camouflaging himself, he kicked open a stall door, ready to pounce, except there was nothing there but the tracker stuck to the wall. He realized it was a bathroom trap, and at that exact moment, the assassin realized he'd been played. Frustrated, the assassin charged up a fireball, aiming straight at Jin-hyuk and a poor kid who just wanted to use the toilet. With no time to spare, Jin-hyuk threw up a shield to protect them both. The assassin used the smoke as cover to escape. Jin-hyuk sighed, annoyed that there had been a fireball and a runaway. Just as he tried to catch his breath, an object suddenly pierced through the assassin's chest, killing him instantly. Shocked, Jin-hyuk blinked in surprise, realizing he hadn't meant to kill him. As he lamented the situation, a status window popped up in front of him. It acknowledged the kill, but labeled it as self-defense, which came as a relief, though he still could have done without the drama. Before he could process it further, two detectives approached him, asking questions about the incident. He cooperated, explaining that he had just been minding his own business when chaos erupted. Luckily, since he hadn't received the villain trait, the detectives didn't suspect him of foul play. They confirmed he was acting in self-defense and let him go, though not before warning him not to mention the words murder, self-defense, or villain. They handed him a device that would monitor his every word. Jin-hyuk muttered under his breath about having a babysitter as they let him go. As he headed home, he couldn't shake off the feeling that he had become the center of attention in the hunter community. Meanwhile, the detectives speculated among themselves, noting how he had managed to block a powerful attack while protecting a child, and had even taken down a high-level hunter. They whispered that there was no way this guy was just a C rank, and hoped he wouldn't do anything to lose their trust. Back at home, Jin-hyuk checked out his new class, the Inquisitor. It seemed to build off his cleric abilities, but with a twist. His skills were now more self-focused, allowing him to act like a tank while healing himself. On top of that, he gained the ability to see the karma of others. He found it ironic that he could now literally judge people, and shook his head with a smirk. Excited to test out his new powers, he returned to the dwarf's workshop. As promised, his weapon had been enchanted to send out lightning attacks. All he had to do was think about it, and it would release up to 3 charged lightning blasts. He chuckled, already envisioning the chaos he could unleash. However, Lucia wasn't as impressed. She looked concerned, saying she couldn't sense any holy power from him anymore, and asked what he had done in the human world. Jin-hyuk simply shrugged, explaining that he couldn't share much because of the monitoring device. The dwarf, who overheard, offered to dispose of the device if Jin-hyuk completed a simple task to retrieve an item from a dangerous location using a compass he provided. Jin-hyuk grinned, thinking it sounded like a fun day. This little errand dragged him to a treacherous mountainous path that seemed to defy all logic: steep cliffs, impossible terrain, and death traps everywhere. Who in their right mind would come here willingly? And yet here he was, armed with nothing but basic hiking gear, rappelling down what looked like a bottomless pit. All this effort just to mine some ores. That old dwarf really had no shame, sending him into a death trap over shiny rocks. Meanwhile, Lucia was having the time of her life. While Jin-hyuk wrestled with his gear and tried not to fall to his doom, she leaned back casually, watching his struggle like it was prime entertainment. Amused by his efforts, she teased him, wondering if he was really struggling this much just to go down. From her perspective, this was nothing, and she made sure he knew it. If he wanted to make it out in one piece, he had one job: follow her lead, stick to her instructions, and under no circumstances act on his own unless he wanted to experience a tragic yet slightly comedic death. Then, as if to prove how easy it really was, she took a step forward and jumped. No ropes, no hesitation, just a confident leap into the abyss. Jin-hyuk barely had time to react before she was already scaling down the rock face with nothing but her hands, landing effortlessly like she'd done this 100 times before. Of course, she had. A total show-off. Jin-hyuk sighed, knowing full well he couldn't just do what she did, at least not without breaking a few bones in the process. Taking a deep breath, he loosened his grip on the rope and muttered to himself before letting go. The moment he free fell, adrenaline flooded his system. The wind roared past his ears, and for a second, doubt crept in. But as he neared the bottom, instinct took over. Using his hands and legs, he braced against the rocky walls, slowing himself down just enough to land beside Lucia, completely unscathed. She barely looked impressed. Arms crossed, she raised a brow and remarked that it had taken him long enough. Taking a break in the middle of their mission, they settled on a steep cliff, gazing at the endless landscape below. The conversation naturally drifted toward what had happened outside. Removing the device might get Jin-hyuk in trouble, but the old dwarf had been oddly confident about it, saying it would be fine. That meant there had to be a way. For all his grumpy outbursts, that blacksmith was undeniably talented. Shifting the conversation, Lucia's curiosity turned to something else: karma values, specifically the ones tied to Jin-hyuk's new class. She asked about her own level, and after a quick check, he informed her that she had 82, the highest among the three of them. Jin-hyuk himself sat at 64, while the old dwarf had 72. The numbers didn't surprise her. Considering the life she had led, it made sense that she had the highest karma. She had done everything she could just to survive. Even so, the difference between her and Jin-hyuk was only 20 points, and he had only killed one person so far. Lucia, on the other hand, had long since lost count. That thought led her to an interesting comparison. In the world she used to live in, there had been saints, beings who could distinguish good from evil with just a glance. Jin-hyuk immediately dismissed the idea that he was anything close to a saint, and Lucia agreed without hesitation. That wasn't her point though. She was merely saying that the ability to gauge evil existed across different worlds, not that she cared much about it right now. Truthfully, she had little interest in wasting time searching for a mine just to satisfy the old fart. What interested her, however, were Jin-hyuk's new abilities. She was eager to analyze them thoroughly. When he asked why she was so invested, she simply shrugged and said that she found him entertaining, and she wasn't wrong. Watching him figure things out was much more interesting than staying holed up in an abandoned dungeon. They needed a better way to understand karma values, and Lucia had a simple solution: go outside and run some real experiments. Jin-hyuk hesitated. He felt bad about pausing their mission for the old man, but Lucia had a point. Staying in the dungeon with just the two of them wouldn't give him any deeper understanding of his abilities. After a brief moment of contemplation, he reached into his pocket. Even if he felt a little guilty about ditching the dwarf's request, his curiosity won out. Fishing out a return stone, he held it between his fingers. This particular stone had been set to instantly transport him to a predetermined location outside. With a firm squeeze, he crushed it. A dimensional rift split open right where they stood. Lucia barely had a second to react before she was swallowed up by the portal, her momentary surprise vanishing into the void. Strangely enough, using the stone caused Jin-hyuk's karma to rise. A few minutes later, the duo found themselves standing in the middle of a bustling city street. Crowds moved in waves, neon signs flickered to life, and the air buzzed with energy. Lucia, unfazed by the chaos, casually sipped her drink, while Jin-hyuk sat across from her, quietly panicking over how her so-called camouflage magic was completely failing its job. She had assured him earlier that she was using magic to disguise her true appearance and blend into the crowd. Technically, she wasn't lying. Her pointed ears and otherworldly features were hidden, but the illusion of human clothing didn't change the fact that she looked way too perfect. Every passerby stole glances at the stunning woman sitting across from Jin-hyuk, some even outright staring. Lucia, of course, had no complaints. With a sly smirk, she pointed out that her beauty simply couldn't be concealed. Even with magic, camouflage had its limits, after all. Jin-hyuk wanted to disagree. Really, he did, but even he had to admit that she was probably the most breathtaking woman he had ever seen. And the worst part, she knew it. Deciding to move on before she got even more smug, Lucia steered the conversation towards something more important: their investigation into karma values. So far, their findings were straightforward. Doing bad things increased karma, and it didn't always take something extreme. Jin-hyuk himself had gained a single karma point just for breaking his promise to the old dwarf. Apparently, it wasn't just about hurting people. Betrayal, deception, and even irresponsibility could contribute. On the other hand, harm that was consensual, like a fight in self-defense, wouldn't raise karma at all. The exact scale of karma still wasn't clear, but one rule stood out: once a person's karma exceeded 200 points, they were officially labeled as a villain. At that point, killing them wouldn't even count as murder. It would be classified as self-defense. Essentially, the system stopped seeing them as human. Considering that even Lucia and the old dwarf hadn't reached 100 points, getting past 200 wasn't just a bad habit, it took dedicated villainy. Jin-hyuk had been quietly scanning people throughout the day, checking for any ridiculously high karma values. So far, the most he had seen from a regular pedestrian was somewhere around 50. If they wanted real data, they were wasting their time in a peaceful public area. They needed to go somewhere darker. Thankfully, the city had just the place: the red light district. As night fell, the streets lit up with a kaleidoscope of neon signs, flashy billboards, pulsing music, and the smell of cheap alcohol. This was where the city's real underbelly thrived. As they walked through the streets, a shady-looking barman approached with an exaggerated grin, his eyes lingering a little too long on Lucia. He showered her with compliments, calling her the most stunning lady to grace these parts, and mentioned an ongoing event at his bar: beautiful women could enjoy up to 5 cocktails completely free. Lucia barely acknowledged him. Without breaking her stride, she shoved him aside and continued walking. Before she could get far, Jin-hyuk placed a firm hand on her shoulder, stopping her. He suggested they take a moment to enjoy those free drinks, insisting it would be a waste to turn down such a generous offer. The barman, practically glowing with excitement, eagerly led them inside, promising that Lucia would receive the best service the establishment had to offer. After walking all day and encountering only ordinary people with unimpressive karma values, Jin-hyuk finally found what he was looking for: the barman, an irredeemable villain with a whopping 300 negative karma floating above his head. Settling at the bar, the duo received their drinks and took a sip. The cocktail had a sweet, smooth flavor, something Lucia immediately approved of. Meanwhile, the barman stood a few steps away, quietly snickering to himself. Those two had no idea what they had just consumed. A single drop of the poison-laced liquor was enough to paralyze an average person. There was no escaping it. The moment he saw them relaxing, he signaled a group of thugs waiting in the shadows. They stepped forward, their focus locked on Jin-hyuk. The plan was simple: take him out first. Jin-hyuk, however, barely acknowledged their presence. He simply took another sip and asked if they were sure this was the route they wanted to take. The thugs hesitated for a split second, confused by his calm demeanor. That was when the realization hit: the poison wasn't working. Thanks to his status effect resistance, the so-called fast-acting toxin was nothing more than overpriced juice. Without warning, Jin-hyuk spun around and delivered a bone-crushing uppercut to the nearest thug, sending him staggering backward. Finally, some action. It had been a while since he could properly stretch his limbs, and these street rats looked like the perfect warm-up. With a smirk, he pulled back and threw another devastating punch, knocking 2 goons out at once. 2 for 1 deal. Not bad. The remaining thugs barely had time to react before he pivoted sharply, shifting his weight for a brutal kick. His foot connected with another thug's face, and with just a single strike, the man collapsed unconscious before he even hit the floor. Meanwhile, Lucia's eyes fluttered open as the effects of the paralytic poison finally wore off. Groggy but alert, she turned her head to assess the situation, only to find a pile of bodies scattered across the bar floor. Confused, she glanced at Jin-hyuk. He simply shrugged, saying he was just cleaning up some trash. The barman, now visibly sweating, decided it was time to bring out his trump card. With a desperate yell, he signaled for his strongest fighter to step in: a towering man with a buzz cut. The brute cracked his knuckles as he removed his jacket, muscles bulging through his shirt. This wasn't just some random thug. He was a hunter. The moment he charged forward with impressive speed, both Jin-hyuk and Lucia watched him with complete indifference. Jin-hyuk kept his gaze locked on the approaching brute, analyzing his movements. Meanwhile, Lucia, unfazed, casually reached for another shot of the poisoned cocktail and asked if he needed any help. Jin-hyuk waved her off. One more thug wasn't enough to make him break a sweat. Buzzcut, however, was less than amused. The duo was talking about him as if he were some kind of background character. Enraged, he swung his heaviest punch straight at Jin-hyuk's face, only for his fist to be stopped mid-air by a perfectly timed grab. No matter how much he strained, pushed, or twisted, he couldn't move Jin-hyuk an inch. A terrifying realization dawned on him. This wasn't just some random troublemaker. The sheer strength behind that grip meant only one thing: Jin-hyuk had to be a hunter. But that didn't make sense. If he was strong enough to be a hunter, why was he wasting his time in a dingy bar fighting low-level criminals? While Buzzcut desperately tried to figure a way out of the situation, Jin-hyuk casually tightened his grip ever so slightly until a sickening crack echoed through the bar. A scream of pure agony ripped from Buzzcut's throat as multiple bones in his hand shattered all at once. But Jin-hyuk wasn't done yet. To shut him up, He followed up with a devastating punch straight to the man's mouth. Buzzcut flew backward like a ragdoll, crashing into a line of bar stools. His momentum finally stopped as he slumped against the debris. With every last goon taken care of, only one piece of scum remained: the terrified barman. Jin-hyuk moved like a wild beast, closing the distance in a flash before locking the man into a chokehold. The villain's windpipe nearly collapsed under the relentless pressure as he clawed at Jin-hyuk's arm, struggling for air. But mercy wasn't on the table. Lifting the barman off the ground, he cut off his oxygen completely. The interrogation had begun, and of course, what kind of interrogation would it be without a few warm-up hits? Jin-hyuk didn't hold back. Fists rained down without hesitation, painting the bar walls with the barman's blood. By the time he was done, his own knuckles were dripping red, and the man's face was swollen beyond recognition. Only when he was satisfied did he finally get to the real questions. It was obvious this wasn't the barman's first time pulling something like this. To run an operation like this under the radar, he had to have someone backing him up. Yet even with his face barely intact, he continued to deny any involvement with a bigger power. There was no way a worthless thug like him could repeatedly spike drinks and abduct women without getting caught. And those hired gangsters, they weren't just street-level punks. Someone had to be pulling the strings. Jin-hyuk narrowed his eyes, giving the barman one last chance to talk. The villain still stubbornly shook his head. Either he was ridiculously loyal, or whoever was behind this was far more terrifying than the beating he was taking now. There was only one way to find out. Without warning, Jin-hyuk grabbed one of the barman's feet and started pulling. The villain thrashed, panic setting in as he screamed and struggled. Jin-hyuk, unfazed, calmly explained that he was simply helping him find the motivation to talk. The barman tried to act tough, forcing out a weak declaration that violence wouldn't make him talk. Jin-hyuk strongly disagreed, but before he could escalate things further, Lucia stepped in with a look of pure exasperation. She told him to step aside and quit the barbaric, overcomplicated methods. Jin-hyuk huffed but let her take over. Lucia calmly raised her hand, manifesting a mysterious power that shimmered ominously in her palm. She brought it close to the barman's face, and in an instant, his expression shifted. The sheer terror drained away, replaced by a strange sense of ease, though he remained just as hideous. A few moments of silence passed as the power seeped into his system, and then out of nowhere, his face twisted into something deranged. His eyes darted wildly, as he suddenly blurted out a question, asking if they were sent by an organization called Ultron. His voice cracked with paranoia, insisting that no matter how much trouble Ultron stirred up, it was already too late. Lucia tilted her head. That wasn't the reaction she expected. Sure, she meant to loosen his tongue, but she hadn't planned on making him a complete lunatic. Well, at least it worked. The barman kept rambling, his words spiraling further into madness. He sneered, as he declared that Ultron was insignificant. His tyrant guild would wipe out every last one of their enemies. And just like that, the truth revealed itself. The Tyrant Guild. Jin-hyuk's eyes darkened. This situation was bigger than he initially thought. Now that the guild's name was on the table, he pressed forward, demanding to know what made them so confident they could massacre their enemies. The barman, practically drooling at this point, let out a crazy chuckle. His answer was simple: they had Al-Rauni's elixir. Jin-hyuk frowned. That name meant nothing to him. What the hell was he talking about? A few minutes later, the police arrived to investigate the incident, but by then, Jin-hyuk and Lucia had already slipped away. What started as a simple bar brawl had unexpectedly led them to uncover a massive conspiracy, one that reached all the way to the top, with a major guild secretly pulling the strings. As they hurried through the dimly lit streets, Lucia explained the horrifying truth. Al-Rauni's elixir wasn't just some ordinary performance enhancer. It was a drug that doubled the user's stats, but at a horrific cost. To make it, countless young women were sacrificed. She had heard of dark practices before, but never in her wildest nightmares did she think a guild from Earth would be capable of producing something so sinister. It was almost unfathomable, but this wasn't new to her. Back in her world, Al-Rauni's elixir had existed too. There, they called it the Queen's Tear, a name that carried a heavy, painful weight. One of her closest friends had been sacrificed for it when they were younger. Years later, after reaching platinum rank, Lucia had personally wiped out the organization responsible for the drug's production. No mercy, no negotiations. She had burned them to the ground. That explained why she had been so grim ever since they left the bar. The moment she heard the name Al-Rauni's elixir, she already knew what had to be done. Now, the question was, what next? The barman had already spilled that the elixir was almost complete. If they wanted to stop it, they needed to take down the Tyrant Guild before production was finalized. Meanwhile, back at the bar, long after the police had left the scene, a man dressed in all black stood in the shadows, reporting the incident to his superiors. His mask and glasses covered most of his face, but his sharp, calculating tone left no doubt about his efficiency. Based on his investigation, this wasn't an internal dispute. What was strange was that the perpetrators had only killed the barman and left. This wasn't a tactic used by any rival guilds or their usual enemies. Something didn't add up. His orders were clear: find out who had interrupted their operation. And soon, the masked man was confident whoever the perpetrators were, they wouldn't stay hidden for long. But the Tyrant Guild wasn't the only one making moves. At the Titan Guild, the atmosphere was tense. Their top brass was currently overseas on business, but that didn't stop the gears from turning. The ever-efficient secretary, Lee Hyena, had just finished overseeing their operations in Hong Kong. The results had been excellent, If they kept this up, they could even consider recruiting 15% more guild members. By all accounts, the guild was thriving. But Seo Sangho, the Titan Guild's leader, wasn't feeling too great. He had just received news about Alrauna's elixir. As expected, even someone as competent as Lee Hyena had never heard of it before. The association had been working hard to keep its existence under wraps. Unfortunately, Hyena's return to Korea would have to wait. There was still guild business overseas. That meant Sangho would have to handle things on his own. Wasting no time, he issued an urgent order to the entire guild effective immediately. Titan Guild was declaring full-scale war against the Tyrant Guild. The sudden declaration sent shockwaves through Hyena. A move like this wasn't just risky, it was an outright gamble. Lee Hyena, ever the voice of reason, immediately asked for more details, saying that declaring war without consulting their executives or having a strategy was reckless even by Sangho's standards. But he wasn't budging. He knew that failing to act now would only lead to greater chaos later. If the information he had received was correct, by the time the world found out about Alrauni's elixir, it would already be too late. Hyena, still skeptical, pressed for more information. What exactly had he learned that made him take such a drastic step? Declaring war on a guild as powerful as Tyrant wasn't something they could undo. Sangho didn't answer right away. He knew the risks. He knew this decision would shake the entire guild, but he also knew they wouldn't be alone in this fight. Ultron Guild, and even the government itself, would be on their side once the truth came to light. Even so, war carried enormous risks. Hyena suggested they at least consult their executives first, make a plan, act cautiously. But Sangho had already made up his mind. His thoughts had never been clearer, and he had no patience for drawn-out meetings or debates. One look at his expression told Hyena everything she needed to know. He wasn't going to change his mind. Sangho was a cautious man by nature, but this time, he was decisive. He understood Hyena's reservations. Acting blindly was never ideal, but right now, there was no time to hesitate. For now, he needed her to trust his call. They would keep the war declaration confidential within the guild while conducting hushed investigations. The official announcement of war could come later. As for the internal investigations, Sangho already had a few people in mind, certain individuals he needed more information on. What had prompted this sudden shift in his stance? What had pushed him to act so suddenly? A single text from Jinhyuk, a warning about Tyrant's plan to create a sinister drug, one fueled by human sacrifice. Meanwhile, Lucia was comfortably lounging at Jinhyuk's place, happily munching on sweets while pestering him about his plans. Honestly, she was just relieved to know that there were still some sane and reliable people in this world like So Sangho. If no one had stepped up to take down the Tyrant Guild, she would have handled it herself. And really, with how insanely inhumane the method for creating Alrauna's elixir was, it needed to be stopped. Jinhyuk, on the other hand, had a slightly different concern. He glanced at the elf, who had been practically living in his pantry, and asked when she planned on going back to the dungeon. Her response, a hard no. Why would she return to some dull dungeon when she could join a raid against a villainous guild instead? She figured that if the Tyrant Guild was crazy enough to concoct something so sinister, then they definitely weren't your average hunters. Even Jinhyuk had to admit this wasn't something he could take on alone, at least not yet. That's when Lucia officially threw in her support. She was all in on wiping out those scumbags together. Jinhyuk appreciated the gesture, even though she didn't have the help. Then knock knock. Someone was at the door calling out his name. Jinhyuk wasn't expecting anyone, so this was an unplanned surprise. A delivery maybe, or something else. Beside the door, it was the masked man, the one investigating what went down at the bar. That man had a magical compass, one that could track people through blood. Using the barman's blood, he had locked onto the traces left on Jinhyuk from the bar fight. And this guy, he didn't need a car. He navigated the city effortlessly, leaping across rooftops like it was a casual stroll. His hunt led him straight to an apartment complex where he finally came to a stop. Staring at the humble home in front of him, the masked man felt something odd. For a split second, the house almost seemed hazy, but he shook off the thought, probably just his imagination. More importantly, he recognized the address. This was the home of the hunter who took down the Leviathan a few days ago. That meant there could be a connection between the two incidents. Not that it mattered to him. His job was simple. Find a target, get answers. Without hesitation, he conjured a thick needle out of thin air, its sinister aura practically pulsing in the air. He was ready to persuade his target into answering a few questions. Meanwhile, Jinhyuk casually walked to the door and asked who it was. As expected, the masked man responded with a classic excuse. He was here for a late delivery due to an accident. Jinhyuk wasn't foolish. A delivery showing up in the dead of night, not a chance. On top of that, his house was shielded by a recognition suppression spell, making it practically impossible to locate. If someone had managed to bypass such a powerful enchantment and still had the nerve to show up pretending to be a deliverman, there was only one reason. They were up to something shady. Still, he opened the door, remaining on high alert. The moment he did, the masked man wasted no time, forcing his way inside with a sinister-looking needle in hand. As expected, the intruder had no intention of playing fair. But Jinhyuk had already anticipated underhanded tactics, so when the needle came for him, he effortlessly caught the attacker's wrist. With a hint of amusement, he couldn't help but wonder if deliveries now came with poison darts as a complimentary bonus. The masked man, who had planned a perfect sneak attack, found himself on the receiving end of the surprise instead. Before he could regain control, Lucia intervened, firing an arrow while urging Jinhyuk to step aside. The shot was devastating. At such close range, dodging was impossible. The arrow struck with immense force, sending the intruder hurtling through the second-floor window. As he crashed outside, blood poured from the deep wound, the arrow burying itself further into his body. But Lucia wasn't taking any chances. Without hesitation, she prepared another shot, signaling to Jinhyuk that she intended to finish the job. The boy, however, dismissed the idea, insisting that he would handle it himself. He reasoned that the masked man had likely come for him due to the incident at the bar. Lucia, unconvinced, pointed out that this opponent was no ordinary assassin. After all, he had survived a direct hit from one of her arrows. Meanwhile, the villain struggled to remove the embedded arrow, his hands trembling from the blood loss. As he finally pulled it free, he couldn't help but feel a deep sense of dread. The sheer force behind that single attack had left him in critical condition. He shuddered, realizing that the woman inside wasn't someone to be taken lightly. Despite his injuries, his survival instincts screamed at him to escape while he still could. By the time Jinhyuk moved to pursue, the man was already making a clumsy but determined getaway, leaping across neighboring rooftops despite his wounded state. Lucia glanced at the boy, silently asking if he wanted to give chase, but he found the idea far too troublesome. The masked man would come for him again eventually. There was no need to rush for now. Something else caught his attention. The man's karma value was over 900, the kind of number that only belonged to seasoned killers, those who took lives as if it meant nothing, a real villain. Jinhyuk couldn't deny it. This was going to be interesting. The next day arrived, and our boy and Lucia found themselves seated inside a guild car, being escorted to the mountains. Their driver eventually pulled over, gesturing toward a remote investigation site ahead. This wasn't just any random mission. They had been brought here under Titan Guild leaders' personal orders. But of course, that didn't change the fact that plenty of people within the Titan Guild weren't exactly thrilled about Jinhyuk's presence. As they stepped out, he scanned the gathered troops at the base of the site. His quick assessment told him that at least half of them were A-rank hunters, or higher, a team of pure elites, and leading them, none other than that guy, the same irritating bastard who had once tried to pick a fight with him. Executive Han Young-suk, looking all-important, had apparently been put in charge of the operation. From the moment our boy saw him, an undeniable sense of irritation bubbled up. This mission was definitely going to be a headache. The executive wasted no time formally introducing himself, and much to Jinhyuk's surprise, he even brought up their last encounter during the airstrike. What was even more unexpected was the shift in his attitude. Today, he appeared oddly amicable, almost polite. Jinhyuk couldn't help but notice the drastic difference in personality, and found it very suspicious. Sure enough, Young-suk cleared his throat awkwardly and followed up with an apology, claiming he had just been overly enthusiastic in his efforts for the guild last time. He hoped they could put the past behind them so it wouldn't affect today's mission. Jinhyuk wasn't exactly convinced, but he let it slide for now. Moments later, the executive turned his attention to Lucia. Clearly taken aback by her presence, he inquired about who she was, clearly expecting some kind of explanation. Jinhyuk casually introduced her as a skilled colleague who wouldn't be a hindrance. The recon team they had sent ahead returned with their report. With a curt nod, Young-suk excused himself to hear what his scouts had to say. Of course, Jinhyuk wasn't fooled by the executive's little display. Apology or not, the guy was still looking down on him and Lucia, probably assuming they were just a couple of C-rank nobodies. It didn't matter how strong they actually were. This four-eyed bastard had his own agenda, and his condescending attitude hadn't changed one bit. Lucia had already picked up on the executive's fake politeness. She quietly checked with Jinhyuk, wondering if they were really going to let this guy take the lead. Jinhyuk assured her that it wasn't worth worrying about. They'd be fine. Besides, there was something more interesting to deal with. Someone had been tailing them since earlier. It wasn't even subtle. Both Jinhyuk and Lucia had noticed their not-so-covert pursuer a long time ago. But instead of confronting them, Jinhyuk had decided to let it be. There was no rush. Whoever it was, they might be useful later. Before the raid began, Jinhyuk handed Lucia a bright magical crystal, a small but invaluable communication item. With this, they could stay in contact within a 10 kilometers range. They would need it later, so it was best to keep it close. Meanwhile, Young-suk returned with a confirmation of the initial reports. The evidence was undeniable. The Tyrant Guild was heavily involved in human trafficking, but rather than just sharing intel, Young-suk had another request. After investigating the area, the recon team discovered a strong magical barrier surrounding the building. The problem is that only one person could break through it without setting off every alarm in the vicinity, and according to Young-suk, that person was none other than Jinhyuk. The young man immediately called him out. This wasn't a request, it was a suicide mission, walking straight into enemy territory alone. That was as good as signing a death warrant. But Young-suk, ever the impartial team leader, kept a straight face. He even had the audacity to throw in some sarcasm, claiming that only the man who took down the Leviathan could possibly pull off such a stealth mission. And to make it sound even more reasonable, he pointed out that Jinhyuk would probably have an easier time going in alone, rather than working with Titan Guild members he had never teamed up with before. Of course, that was just another way of saying, "We're dumping all the risks on you. Good luck." It was obvious that they thought they were outsmarting him, neatly shifting the burden onto his shoulders. But what they didn't realize was that this was exactly the kind of situation Jinhyuk had been hoping for. With that, he joined a select team of Titan Guild hunters and move toward the part of the barrier where they could create an entry point. The plan was straightforward. The magic team would generate a small breach, just big enough for Jinhyuk to slip through. The problem, these so-called experts could only hold the breach open for a few seconds, which meant he had to move at full speed. They reached the eastern side of the facility and wasted no time. The magic team got to work, struggling to maintain even the slightest gap in the barrier. Jinhyuk didn't hesitate. He knew he was being played, deliberately funneled into enemy territory like a disposable pawn. But strangely enough, he didn't mind. After all, his real interest wasn't in the mission itself. He just wanted to see exactly what the Tyrant Guild was hiding in these mountains. The moment the breach was established, our protagonist wasted no time and dashed inside the barrier, his eyes gleaming with excitement as he scanned the compound. But the moment he stopped and summoned his trusty bat, he noticed something strange. The base looked completely different from the outside. The protective barrier must have been layered with a distortion effect, disguising its true appearance. That wasn't his concern for now. First things first, he needed to locate the entrance to this massive base camp. However, after several minutes of wandering, something felt off. There were way fewer guards than he had anticipated. The place was supposed to be a high-security facility. It felt eerily underprotected. Eventually, he spotted a lone guard stationed near the barrier, seemingly guarding an entrance. That was the first real lead he had. After all, if someone was standing guard, there had to be something worth protecting behind them. Wasting no time, our boy leaped into the air and raised his bat, pouring his monstrous strength into the swing. The plan was simple: knock the guy out, capture him, and get some much-needed answers. But just as his bat made contact, something unexpected happened. Instead of a satisfying impact, the guard simply vanished, dissolving into thin air like smoke. It was an illusion. Jinhyuk stood there for a moment, blinking at the empty space where the guard had been. Well, that was disappointing. So much for interrogating someone. Now, it was entirely up to him to figure out how to get inside. Much to his surprise, the supposedly high-security facility had automatic doors like a freaking supermarket. The lack of proper defenses was almost laughable. No biometric scanners, no heavy-duty locks, not even a single CCTV camera in sight. It was as if the people running this place were so confident that the women they abducted had zero chance of escaping that they didn't bother with real security. Still, Jinhyuk wasn't about to let his guard down. Just to be safe, he pulled out an insurance policy. From his inventory, he retrieved an EMP generator, a handy little device crafted from the materials of electric-type monsters, and casually dropped it onto the floor. With this, any communications or security systems in the area would be fried. This was precisely why he had left a magic communication crystal with Lucia beforehand, so they wouldn't lose contact despite the blackout. As the EMP took effect and the compound was officially cut off from the grid, Jinhyuk took a deep breath. Now it was time to get started on the real mission. From a distance, the masked man remained fixated on Jinhyuk, silently observing his every move. The pieces were starting to come together. Jinhyuk's connection to the bar incident and the Titan Guild was becoming clearer. But just like everyone else, the masked man had his own hidden motives. And for some reason, Jinhyuk was a key factor in ensuring everything played out smoothly. Meanwhile, inside the facility, the consequences of Jinhyuk's actions were already rippling through. The EMP he had set off didn't just disrupt security, it also ruined someone's gaming session. One of the idle guards had been engrossed in his phone, only to watch in frustration as his screen went black. Cursing the countryside's terrible signal, he grumbled about how his precious gaming time always seemed to get interrupted. Unfortunately for him, that would be the least of his worries. Before the realization even sank in, something red came hurtling toward him. A bat. Jinhyuk didn't even bother swinging it. He had thrown it instead. The blunt tip slammed mercilessly into the side of the man's face, and before he could react, the bat had already pierced through. The guard crumpled to the ground, out cold. Without missing a beat, Jinhyuk activated auto-recovery, summoning his weapon back into his grip. Finally, an opponent made of flesh and blood. The impact sent blood splattering against the nearby wall, as the body hit the smooth concrete floor with a dull thud. And yet, this wasn't some trained hunter or elite fighter. He was just an ordinary man. An ordinary man with a karma value of 800. That number spoke volumes. If even a regular person here had committed enough atrocities to rack up such a score, then this place wasn't just corrupt. It was overflowing with inhuman scum. That meant our boy could go all out. No hesitation, no second thoughts. Every single person involved in this twisted operation deserved nothing less than absolute annihilation. Pushing forward, he entered the locked gate and found himself in a long, dimly lit hallway lined with prison doors. The atmosphere was suffocating, thick with the stench of neglect. This had to be where they kept the abducted women. A quick glance into the cells confirmed his suspicions. The conditions were beyond inhumane. Each prisoner was shackled like a caged animal, stripped of dignity, awaiting their fate. They weren't just captives, they were resources for that cursed elixir. But before Jinhyuk could process his next move, a voice interrupted his thoughts. Someone was calling out, demanding to know who he was. Unlike the other cells, one held a man. Jinhyuk's eyes narrowed as recognition set in. The prisoner wasn't just anyone. He was wearing the uniform of the Tyrant Guild. Despite his own predicament, the captive wasted no time warning Jinhyuk to get out while he still could. Whatever was happening inside this facility, it had already driven everyone to the brink of insanity. Staying any longer was a death sentence. Meanwhile, outside, The so-called team leader was busy checking his watch, tracking the progress of Jinhyuk's infiltration. It had been a while since the young man entered, and things were still eerily quiet. Maybe it was time to make a move. Youngsuk didn't hesitate. With a single order, his men were set into motion, advancing toward the facility in a synchronized rush. Dressed in black jackets, the Titans swarmed forward like a mass of eager flies, ready to strike at the first sign of trouble. Meanwhile, Lucia stood at the side, utterly unfazed by the rush of activity. Youngsuk threw her a glance, still unable to figure out what her deal was. Unlike the rest of them, she didn't seem the least bit concerned. Finally, as the four-eyed bastard joined his men outside, Lucia mulled over her own role in all this. Before the mission had begun, Jinhyuk had been clear. He would handle everything inside the building alone. That was his fight. Her job was different. She was here to keep an eye on the Titans. They still had no idea what Han Youngsuk might try to pull, and that meant she had to stay vigilant. The boy had warned her against getting too involved, but playing it safe had never been her style, and she wasn't about to start. Now, back inside the facility, the prisoner finally introduced himself as Young Da-hoon. Jinhyuk, sizing him up, wasted no time in questioning how a tyrant guild member had ended up in such a pitiful state. Da-hoon didn't hesitate to admit the truth. He had been locked up for attempting to kill all himself. Right now, the only reason they were keeping him alive was for his expertise in illusion magic. That distortion effect on the protective barrier. The fake guard. Yeah, all his work. Jinhyuk found himself intrigued. Why would someone betray their own guild and sabotage its research? The answer was simple. Da-hoon just couldn't stomach the cruelty anymore. Watching his colleagues throw women to monsters as bait had pushed him to his limit. Eventually he snapped, tried to take Alrauni down once and for all, and got caught. For once, Jinhyuk was pleasantly surprised. A tyrant guild member with a conscience. That was a rare sight. Even the man's karma value was surprisingly low, just 62. Without hesitation, Jinhyuk extended an offer. If Dae-yu wanted to tear down this wretched facility, they might as well work together. Meanwhile, in the control room, the grunt assigned to monitor security was having a peaceful little nap in his chair. It wasn't the first time, and it probably wouldn't be the last. He always got sleepy at this hour, and really wasn't a big deal. Nothing ever happened here. At least that's what he thought. The moment he woke up, something was off. Instead of the usual live feeds of the entire facility, the screens in front of him were pitch black. He blinked, looked around in confusion, and tried to make sense of the situation. Panic set in as he scrambled to reboot the system, only to realize the real problem. The power source had been fried. Thanks to Jinhyuk's EMP, every electronic device, including smartphones, was out of commission. The entire system was dead, and he had slept through the whole disaster. If there was an award for Employee of the Month, he was definitely not getting it. Just outside the command center, a few tyrant guild members were passing the time with a card game, having the time of their lives. That was, until their relaxed evening was rudely interrupted by the control room guy screaming about an emergency. Annoyed, the players turned to him, more irritated about their game being cut short than anything else. But the moment they heard what had actually happened, their frustration turned into alarm. The entire security system was down. Every single woman locked in the cells was missing. And worst of all, they had an intruder. With no time to waste, the team leaders quickly split their forces. One group headed straight for the Alraune production room, while the other focused on tracking down the intruder and the missing captives. And as for the genius who had let this all happen, the control room grunt was now stuck with one job: find a way to contact headquarters, no matter what. Every single prison cell had been unlocked, freeing the abducted women. With their lives hanging by a thread, they wasted no time, rushing toward the nearest exit. Leading the way was Dae-yoon, who knew the facility's layout like the back of his hand. He navigated the group through the most optimal path, getting them dangerously close to freedom, only for trouble to arrive right on cue. The tyrant boys had caught onto their escape. As soon as they spotted the fleeing women, they flooded into the area like a pack of rabid dogs. The first one to step in immediately recognized Dae-yoon, charging in alone with the bold claim that he would finish Dae-yoon once and for all. But the moment his punch landed, reality shifted. A cruel reminder of Dae-yoon's specialty, illusion. The attacker seethed with rage, realizing he had fallen for such a simple trick. Meanwhile, while Team 2 was struggling to chase down Dae-yoon and the women, Team 1 was having a far worse time elsewhere. Armed with little more than knives, they found themselves face to face with someone much more dangerous: Jinhyuk, and they had brought knives to a baseball bat fight. Jinhyuk made quick work of them. His superior technique and footwork turned their pathetic attempts at combat into an absolute joke. With each swing, he sent a tyrant boy crumpling to the ground. One clean hit her target, as if you were just knocking down bowling pins. By the time the last one hit the floor, Jinhyuk hadn't even broken a sweat. Judging by how desperately they had been guarding the front gate, there was only one conclusion: Alraune had to be inside. Without wasting another second, Jinhyuk gained access to the room and cautiously stepped in. The sight that greeted him was even more vile than he had imagined. The tyrant scum hadn't just been making the inhumane drug. They built an entire underground lab to mass produce it. Human-sized test tubes filled the space, each one containing a woman the guild had abducted for their twisted experiments. The sheer scale of their operation was enough to make his stomach turn. But the worst part of all, at the center of the lab, encased in protective glass, was the source of this nightmare. The monster responsible for all this grief and suffering, Alraune. Jinhyuk tightened his grip on his bath. The creature showed no reaction to his presence, completely still. It was entirely possible that it was asleep. That was fine, it just made things easier. With a smirk tugging at his lips, he called forth the lightning dwelling inside his weapon, electricity crackling through the air. Stepping into his batting stance, he prepared to take the ultimate swing. If everything went according to plan, he would end this tonight. Suddenly, without warning, tentacles burst from the tubes, lashing out at the boy with terrifying speed. Glass shattered all around, as a monstrous creature emerged from the wreckage, roaring in fury. Jinhyuk reacted instantly, activating his hardened skin ability and dodging as the tentacles struck violently. Wasting no time, he pushed forward, closing the gap between them. But before he could land a hit, one of the writhing limbs managed to catch him, sending him flying across the room. Groaning, he forced himself upright, using his bat to steady himself. His mind raced. What was that power? Even with his armor and hardened skin, the attack had nearly pierced through. Shaking off the pain, he readied himself for another round. Charging in once more, he used his bat to deflect the flailing tentacles, maneuvering swiftly around the battlefield. With a sharp pivot, he ran up the wall, using the momentum to launch himself through the air. His strike was precise, the bat stabbing straight into Alraun's chest. Suddenly, electricity crackled around him as he channeled his skill, sending a surge of lightning through the monster's body. Alrauni convulsed violently, its entire form twisting in agony before collapsing to the ground in a smoldering heap. Breathing heavily, Jinhyuk scanned the aftermath. Amidst the wreckage, something caught his eye, an object lying near the monster's corpse. He approached cautiously, attempting to appraise it, but the result came up blank. Based on its shape and energy, he could only assume it was a magic stone. Without hesitation, he stashed it away and pulled out his communication device. Contacting Lucia, he asked if the girls had moved safely. She confirmed that they were fine, but quickly added something concerning. One of the Tyrant Guild members was with them. Jinhyuk explained that the man had betrayed his own guild and had been helping them. He believed the guy was sincere. Lucia then inquired about Alrauna, to which Jinhyuk casually assured her that had been taken care of. Plus, he'd even scored a magic stone in the process. Just as he was about to leave, Lucia updated him on the battlefield. The others were still fighting against Titan Guild members, but something was wrong. Suddenly, the enemies had grown significantly stronger, fighting like they had gone completely berserk. Jinhyuk's expression darkened. If the Titan Guild lost here, it would cause even bigger problems. He instructed Lucia to help them out. She acknowledged the request, her bow already charging with energy before ending the call, with a teasing remark about how he owed her a ridiculous amount of sweets for this. Jinhyuk chuckled lightly, stepping over the remains of the battle. But just as he moved forward, his expression sharpened. He wasn't alone. Without turning, he called out to the unseen presence, his voice calm but firm. He knew someone was there. A man emerged from the shadows, looking genuinely surprised that he had been sensed. Jinhyuk narrowed his eyes. There was no need for small talk. What was the real objective here? Was it the Alraun stone? Or was it him? The man smirked, admitting that he had originally come for the stone. But after seeing Jinhyuk in action, he had changed his mind. Jinhyuk's gaze darkened. That was a mistake. Without warning, he charged forward, bat raised for another fight. The assassin lunged, aiming a deadly stab with his knife, but Jinhyuk slipped past the attack with ease. Countering instantly, he struck with his hand, only for the assassin to block. Clearly taken aback by Jinhyuk's speed, for a brief moment, the assassin reeled. Too fast. Far too fast for a C-rank hunter. That's when it clicked. This wasn't the first time Jinhyuk had reacted unnaturally fast. Even back at the home, catching that poison dart wasn't just luck. Jean Huck suddenly hurled his bat, but the assassin sidestepped, watching as it embedded itself deep into the wall. Before he could react further, Jinhyuk leaped into the air, calling his bat back to his hand like a magnetized weapon. The assassin barely had time to register what was happening before the bat came swinging toward him. Dodging at the last second, the assassin managed to land a counterattack, striking Jinhyuk's back, but the hit was completely nullified by his armor. Frustrated, the assassin adjusted his strategy, aiming directly for the boy's neck, but Jinhyuk deflected him with a forceful shove. Without wasting a second, Jinhyuk charged his bat with raw electricity, forming a concentrated lightning ball before hurling it straight at the assassin. The man barely managed to conjure a defensive shield, struggling to withstand the sheer force of the attack. Smoke filled the air as the battlefield crackled with energy. Through the lingering smoke, Jinhyuk surged forward, his grip tightening around the bat. With deadly precision, he struck the assassin, the weapon crackling with lightning as the force of the impact coursed through his enemy's body. One final blow ended the fight. The assassin collapsed lifeless. Outside, chaos reigned. The Titan Guild members worked swiftly, burning the bodies of the fallen Tyrant Guild hunters to erase all traces of the battle. Amidst it all, Yongsuk, now tending to his wounds, reflected on how close they had come to death. If that elf hadn't stepped in, they would have been wiped out. Her arrows, sharp, swift, and relentless, had matched the caliber of an S-rank hunter, a terrifying thought in itself. As the cleanup continued, a hunter approached with an update. All the wounded had been transported to the hospital, and every piece of evidence had been erased. Yongsuk gave a nod. With the Tyrant Guild taken care of, it was time to move forward with a welcoming ceremony. But just then, an unexpected arrival disrupted the moment. Daeyun, the Tyrant Guild member who had betrayed them, rushed in, his expression tense. There was no need for words. His face alone carried bad news, and sure enough, his warning was dire. The Tyrant Guild leader, along with their main forces, was already on the way. A chilling realization settled in as Yongsuk stiffened. The guild leader Zhou Wanchul was coming. A brief moment of silence followed before the weight of those words sank in. There was no chance of winning against someone like him. Before they could fully process the first report, another followed, confirming that the tyrant guild hunters were approaching fast. Time was running out. Quickly assessing the situation, Young-suk made the only logical decision: abort the operation. A retreat was their best option now. Turning to Dae-yoon, he asked if the man would be coming with them, but hesitation flickered in his eyes before he shook his head. Leaving now would make his defection far too obvious. He would stay behind and submit a false report instead. Young-suk studied him for a moment before offering a nod of understanding. That was fine, but one thing was certain: an all-out war between the guilds had to be avoided for now. Before departing, he issued one final order: pin everything on Hunter Kang Jin-hyuk. The informant remained silent, weighing the implications of that command. Meanwhile, the Titan Guild made their retreat. As they ran, one of the hunters voiced his skepticism, questioning whether Young-suk's trust in Dae-yoon was warranted. But Young-suk barely spared him glance. It didn't matter. They just needed time, because sooner or later, full-scale war was inevitable. Dae-yoon stood in place, his posture calm yet alert. Moments later, Lucia approached, her gaze sharp as she questioned whether he was the person Jin-hyuk had mentioned. Without wasting time, she told him to, "Let's go." Jin-hyuk was waiting inside. The elf, ever composed, asked if the situation had been handled. Jin-hyuk simply nodded, stating that he had taken care of the man who had followed them. With that out of the way, Dae-yoon turned to Jin-hyuk, seeking an update on their current predicament. Jin-hyuk wasted no time in explaining. Alraune was dead, but there was still a loose end to deal with. He suggested pinning everything on the attacker, making it look like he had died in battle against Alraune. The elf hesitated for a moment, questioning if Jin-hyuk truly intended to frame the man for everything. Our boy, unbothered, told him to check the diary. Inside were the names of all the victims of recent serial murders. Their attacker wasn't just some random thug, he was the great guild killer, the one who had been shaking the entire public by targeting major guilds. If they made him the scapegoat, no one would suspect a thing. Without hesitation, Jin-hyuk turned to Dae-yoon, asking if he could handle it. Dae-yoon, still processing the plan, admitted that he didn't fully understand Jin-hyuk's methods. But if he was saying there wouldn't be problems later, then that was enough. He assured them that he would take care of the rest, and urged them to leave. After all, the Tyrant Guild was already on its way. They had roughly 2 hours before their arrival. Fortunately, the advanced party had been nothing more than an illusion he had created. Before parting ways, the Dae-yoon expressed his gratitude, thanking Jin-hyuk for saving him and the others. Jin-hyuk, as usual, dismissed it casually. There was no need for thanks, just a simple request to contact him once everything was over. As he walked away, our boy couldn't help but smirk at the thought of what was about to unfold. The Tyrant Guild had suffered a massive blow, and once the other guilds caught wind of it, they wouldn't just sit back and watch. The guild's downfall was inevitable, and honestly, he was looking forward to seeing it crumble. Meanwhile, the scene shifted to Titan Guild's master, Seo Sangho, and his secretary, deep in discussion over the latest developments. The situation had escalated beyond expectations, and it was no longer just a problem for the Titan Guild. It affected the entire guild system. Sangho decided that the best course of action was to share the information anonymously. His secretary, however, pointed out that doing so would benefit other guilds, potentially putting Titan at a disadvantage. But the guildmaster wasn't concerned about that. If word got out that Titan Guild was directly involved, the resulting guild war would be catastrophic. It was better to resolve the situation quietly than to waste time scheming for personal gain. With that, the secretary followed orders and anonymously leaked the information. Not long after, the news exploded with reports about the Tyrant Guild's criminal activities. People everywhere were talking about it, and arrests within the guild were already being made. Despite the overwhelming evidence, the Tyrant Guild refused to submit to the investigation. One person who wasn't taking it well was Yong Seok. Enraged, he cursed his guildmaster, blaming him for ruining everything. He wasted no time dialing his superior, demanding to know why they had given away the information anonymously. After all, they had done all the work. Yet now, those Ultron bastards were being hailed as heroes. The guildmaster remained unfazed, explaining that if they had exposed themselves, the Tyrant Guild would have crushed them before the other guilds had time to react. But Young-suk wasn't satisfied. He argued that if his plan to recruit an S-rank hunter succeeded, the Tyrant Guild wouldn't stand chance. The guildmaster, however, wasn't convinced. He questioned whether Young-suk could truly guarantee victory against the Tyrant Guild's master, and more importantly, what would happen to the civilians caught in the crossfire. Young-suk dismissed the concern, calling it a minor loss compared to the power they would gain by absorbing the Tyrant Guild's strength. That was the last straw. The guildmaster, voice filled with frustration, demanded to know what the point of being a hunter was if they couldn't even protect civilians. Young-suk's so-called loyalty to the guild was nothing more than selfish ambition, and he wasn't fooling anyone. Before Young-suk could argue further, the call was cut off. Furious, he slammed his fist into his monitor, seething with resentment. As long as his current guildmaster remained in power, the Titan Guild would never move forward. But he had no intention of sitting around and accepting that. Without hesitation, he made another call. The voice on the other end was uninterested, already knowing what this was about. Another recruitment attempt. He wasn't interested, unless of course it was for the position of guildmaster. This time, Young-suk didn't hesitate. He would make it happen. He would give him the position. And with that, the next move was set into motion. The scene shifts to our boy, who had been set up for a secret meeting. But instead of choosing a discreet, low-profile location like a normal person, he went ahead and picked the busiest damn cafe right in the middle of the market. If someone wanted him to be subtle, well, they were shit out of luck. As he stepped inside, the place was alive with chatter, the rich scent of coffee filling the air. A mix of people surrounded him, and of course, a good number of them were drop-dead gorgeous women. Before he could even fully take in the scene, a voice called out to him, Daeyoon, the same old tyrant guild buddy he'd been dealing with. Jin-hyuk acknowledged him with a nod. Without wasting time, he asked if the web of lies they'd spun had held up. At first, it seemed like it had. The plan was running smoothly, but as expected, there was a goddamn problem. The tyrant guild had decided to form a pursuit team. Jin-hyuk barely reacted. He didn't frown, didn't flinch. Hell, he didn't even look remotely concerned. Instead, with all the urgency of a man debating whether to add more sugar to his coffee, the guild was already hanging on by a thread. Yet somehow, they still found the resources to hunt someone down. He almost found it funny. Daeyoon had an explanation. The guild's higher-ups weren't buying the story. To them, the body had been discovered too quickly, and the news had spread too damn fast. That could only mean one thing. There had to be another culprit. Someone else is pulling the strings. Jin-hyuk, ever the picture of indifference, simply acknowledged that no concrete evidence had surfaced. As long as his identity remained hidden, there was nothing to worry about. Even so, playing it safe was never a bad idea. If lying low for a while ensured that the tyrant guild crumbled on its own, then maybe it was worth considering. Daeyoon agreed. Then, without warning, he pulled out a phone and handed it over. A simple gesture, but one that carried weight. On that device was everything Jin-hyuk needed to know about the pursuit team. Jin-hyuk took the iPhone 11 and began scrolling through the information. Daeyoon, watching him, hesitated for a moment before asking if he was really planning to go through the intel right here, right now. Jin-hyuk, of course, didn't give a shit. Nothing in this place mattered. No one was watching them. In fact, no one was real, because the entire cafe, the chattering crowd, the ridiculously beautiful women, none of it real. It was all an illusion. Daeyoon's reaction was immediate. He was surprised that Jin-hyuk had seen through it from the very start, and as realization dawned, Jin-hyuk simply smirked as if the whole thing was nothing more than a mildly amusing joke. Because at the end of the day, the only thing that actually mattered was who the hell thought they could chase him down. Jin-hyuk settled into his seat, making himself comfortable as Daeyoon laid out the details. The pursuit team consisted of two people, an archer and a mage, both masters of disguise and concealment magic. These bastards could very well approach him in the form of someone he knew. Jin-hyuk barely reacted. His face screamed boredom. That was it. That was all they had on him. Daeyoon, noticing the lack of interest, reached into his pocket. He actually pulled out something, a monster counter. Jin-hyuk's eyes narrowed slightly. He recognized the device, the very same type Titan Guild had given him, the one he had used when taking down Leviathan. But this one was smaller. He picked it up, examining the new design, and shot a questioning glance at Daeyoon. After the Alrauna incident, the association had developed an advanced version of the device. Its purpose is to monitor hunters. And then Daeyoon dropped the real kicker. Starting immediately, all hunters, beginning with his guild, were now required to wear this. This wasn't just some tracking tool anymore. It was a goddamn leash. Every hunter would now be under the association's watchful eye. That meant one thing for Jin-hyuk: trouble. With this device, even hunting in his private dungeon could become a problem. Without a hint of hesitation, he calmly handed the counter back to Daeyoon. Daeyoon, however, wasn't done warning him. If Jin-hyuk planned on using the Alraun pill, he needed to do it now before the monitoring system was fully established. There was no room for error. If Jin-hyuk took the pill after the system was in place, his sudden spike in power would immediately attract attention. And if that happened, even a damn tyrant guild would start suspecting him. Daeyoon was practically urging him at this point. Make a decision and make it fast. Later, as Jin-hyuk wandered through the streets, his mind was buzzing with thoughts of the surveillance system. It was clear now he needed to get stronger, fast, and there was only one solution: the dungeon. Right now, as Jin-hyuk stepped into the dungeon, he was immediately met with the furious glare of the old dwarf. The moment their eyes met, the dwarf let out an exasperated curse and exploded in anger, ranting about how he had sent Jin-hyuk to fetch some ore. Yet, the damn brat had vanished without a trace, only to stroll back in after an entire week. Jin-hyuk hurried to apologize, but that only seemed to make things worse. The old dwarf had assumed he was dead in some god-forsaken corner of the dungeon, and now here he was, acting like nothing had happened. Trying to defuse the situation, the boy urged him to calm down, saying he had something important to show. The moment the dwarf's eyes landed on it, his face twisted in pure outrage. His anger boiled over as he demanded if Jin-hyuk had even a single functioning brain cell to realize what kind of shit he had just brought into the workshop. Not waiting for an answer, he spat out that the core was cursed, filled with countless grudges, and that dwarves, being highly vulnerable to curses, didn't even dare to look at such things unless they had a death wish. Before coming here, Lucia had told him she had some urgent work, and practically shove him ahead. Now it all made sense. That cunning little devil had set him up. Meanwhile, the dwarf was still going off, calling the core a worthless piece of junk, and ordering him to get rid of it immediately before it did something nasty. Jin-hyuk, feeling a little guilty now, apologized again, but the old dwarf just let out a long, suffering sigh, and muttered that being an idiot wasn't a crime. Shaking his head, he grumbled that he'd take care of this mess for now. That's when it clicked for Jin-hyuk. Dwarves were prideful bastards. When it came to their pride, they could pull off the impossible just to prove a point. As the old dwarf turned to leave, Jinhyuk smirked and, in a deliberately mocking tone, muttered that if even the great boss couldn't handle it, then there was no other choice. Lucia had been damn right all along. She even said it would be too much for him. The words landed perfectly. The dwarf froze, his face twisting as if someone had just stomped on his pride. His voice came out sharp as he demanded to know exactly what that elf brat had said about him. And just like that, the scene shifted once again. Jinhyuk found himself standing on the same cliff, staring down at the place below, the temple of a dragon. The old dwarf had taken the bait, fully accepting the challenge. He had shoved a key into Jinhyuk's hands, instructing him to open the temple and purify the curse. Only then, he declared, would he forge something even better than that pathetic bat Jinhyuk was using. Lucia, of course, had plenty to say about this. She gave Jinhyuk an incredulous look and muttered that he was completely insane for using her name to provoke the dwarf. The boy just shrugged, reminding her that she was the one who abandoned him first. Without missing a beat, he held up the key and asked if his thing could really open the temple doors. For the first time, Lucia's expression turned serious. She confirmed that it could, but then asked if he had any idea what kind of place he was about to step into. Jinhyuk, still unfazed, tilted his head and asked what she meant. Wasn't just some temple. Lucia let out a sigh, clearly frustrated by his lack of concern. It wasn't just a peaceful old ruin. It was far more dangerous than any dungeon he had faced so far. And if he went in now without preparation, he'd be dead before he could even satisfy her with his damn chocolates. She made it clear she couldn't afford to let his stupid ass get killed. With that, she turned on her heel and ordered him to move. They were going home right now, Jinhyuk protested. After coming all this way, they was going to turn back, but Lucia wasn't budging. This dungeon was too dangerous, and they had no choice. They would return later, properly prepared. Still annoyed, Jinhyuk muttered if they were really going to go through all this again. Lucia, already taking a leaping stance, just smirked and told him to hurry up. If he was late, she'd eat everything at his place. Left with no other option, Jinhyuk let out a sigh and followed after her. Back at his home, Jinhyuk lay sprawled on the floor, completely drained. As he stared at the ceiling, he couldn't help but wonder just how absurdly fast Lucia was. His thoughts drifted back to the so-called preparations she had mentioned earlier. Potions, scrolls, that was all he could think of. Maybe he should just ask her directly. But then a realization hit him. Where the hell was Lucia? His eyes widened, and in an instant, he bolted toward the kitchen. What he saw made his blood pressure spike. Lucia was there, happily stuffing her face, casually munching down on what was, oh hell no, a whole month's worth of food. The sight of her feasting away like it was an all-you-can-eat buffet made his eye twitch. Calling her shameless was the only logical reaction, but she didn't seem the least bit bothered. Before he could yell at her properly, his phone buzzed. Seeing the caller ID, his expression turned serious. It was Lee Hyena from the Titan Guild. The moment he answered, her shaky voice came through, frantic and desperate. She was pleading for his help, her words tumbling over each other as she said that if he didn't come, the guildmaster would be killed. Jinhyuk didn't waste a second. Without hesitation, he told her he was on his way and demanded the location. As dusk settled, the dimly lit room painted a grim picture. Bloodied clothes strewn across the table, a first aid kit lying open, and Seo Sangho slumped his chair, his body covered in fresh bandages. His secretary, Lee Hyena, worked frantically, her hands trembling as she patched him up. Tears welled in her eyes as she begged him to hold on, sobbing that Kang Jin-hook was on his way. But the pain was unbearable. Sangho coughed violently, a fresh trickle of blood escaping his lips, making Hyena's chest tighten in helplessness. Seeing her boss in such a wretched state was more than she could bear. Sangho, despite his pain, forced a weak smile and assured her that he would be fine, telling her not to cry. But she wasn't stupid. She knew he was lying through his teeth. His condition was worse than he wanted to admit. Just then, the doorbell rang. Hyena flinched, her heart skipping a beat, but when she checked the security camera, relief flooded through her. It was Jinhyuk. As soon as he stepped inside, Jinhyuk wasted no time. He opened his inventory, retrieving a potion bottle, and moved towards Sangho. The injured man let out a weak chuckle, barely managing to thank him for his kindness. But Jinhyuk simply told him to brace himself. The potion would sting like hell. Without further delay, he poured the liquid over Sangho's wounds. The moment it touched his skin, a sharp, burning pain tore through his body, making him writhe in agony. But soon, the worst had passed, and the healing effects began to take hold. Once Sangho was stable, Jinhyuk demanded to know what the hell had happened. How could an S-ranker like him end up in such a pathetic state? Sangho let out a bitter laugh, his eyes filled with exhaustion and rage. It was a trap, he explained, one set by his own guild. The bastards had betrayed him. Earlier that day, he had attended a guild event, but strangely enough, only Yongsuk's faction was present. That four-eyed bastard had planned it all. As they shared a drink, Sangho had sensed that something was off, but before he could act, it was too late. The moment the wine touched his lips, his throat burned, and he started coughing up blood. That scumbag had poisoned him. Before he could even recover, they charged at him, intent on finishing the job. Barely clinging to consciousness, he fought with everything he had, forcing his way through them and escaping by the skin of his teeth. But the damage had been done. Now he was left like this, broken and bleeding. Jinhyuk found it strange. Even if Sangho had been poisoned, ordinary guild members shouldn't have been a match for him. But before he could ask further, Songho suddenly broke into a violent coughing fit. Lee Hyena panicked as she noticed the wounds that had been sealed by the potion were reopening. Jin-hyuk immediately realized the poison must be far stronger than he initially thought. Without wasting a second, he turned to Lee Hyena and asked if she knew exactly what kind of poison had been used on Songho and whether there was an antidote. She shook her head, saying she had no idea, but hesitantly asked if they could try using the antidotes that hunters typically carried. Jin-hyuk didn't even hesitate before dismissing the idea, knowing it wouldn't work against something this potent. They needed proper treatment and fast. Without another word, he said they had to head to the hospital immediately. But Songho, still struggling to breathe, weakly refused. The hospital wasn't a safe option. They might come after him again. Jin-hyuk understood his concerns. If those bastards found out where they were, innocent civilians could get dragged into this mess too. He had no choice but to take a different route. Without wasting any more time, he turned to Lee Hyena and told her to get ready. They had to leave quickly. He had a plan. His home might have a way to treat the poison. As they got into the car and started moving, a red car almost crashed into them out of nowhere. It was Lee Hyena behind the wheel, her eyes widening in surprise as she rolled down the window to ask if they were okay. Jin-hyuk quickly assured her that he would take care of the guildmaster and told her to hurry up. Without wasting a second, she slammed her foot on the accelerator, sending the car roaring down the streets. She weaved left and right, drifting through narrow alleys like a pro. Her driving skills were no joke. As they came to a halt at a traffic signal, Jin-hyuk turned to Songho, telling him not to worry and to just stay conscious a little longer. They were almost there. But before he could say anything else, Hyena spoke up. They had a problem. Someone was tailing them. Jin-hyuk's eyes narrowed as he glanced in the rearview mirror. It was the same red car from earlier. The moment the traffic light turned green, Hyena asked what they should do. Jin-hyuk didn't hesitate. They couldn't head to his place while being followed. He had no choice. He told her to follow his directions. After a while, they finally pulled up at a construction site. Jin-hyuk told Hyena that he would block their pursuer and handed her his location, quickly informing the elf to open the door for them. As he stepped out of the car, a man in a black hoodie approached, his voice dripping with mockery. Instead of Songho, a lower-ranked guy was stepping up to block him. Jin-hyuk scanned him, thinking only one person seemed to be tailing them. Just then, his phone rang. It was Lee Hyena. She hadn't left yet. Annoyed, Jin-hyuk picked up and asked why she was still there. But before he could say another word, her panicked voice cut through the line. She told him to run no matter what. The bastard standing in front of him was none other than S-Class Hunter Kang Juntae. Jin-hyuk's heart nearly stopped. An S-Class? Before he could fully process it, the bastard lunged at him, wasting no time and trying to end things quickly. But Jin-hyuk's presence detection skill kicked in at the last second, and his bat moved on its own, blocking the attack just in time. The sheer force of the strike sent the bat flying some distance away, making Jin-hyuk realize just how strong his opponent was. Without wasting another second, he quickly put some distance between them and told Hyena to leave immediately. He couldn't hold this guy off for long, but he would catch up later. She hesitated for a moment, not wanting to abandon him, but in the end, she told him he'd better follow them. Jin-hyuk watched the car speed off. He let out a mocking laugh, asking where they thought they were going. Without hesitation, he summoned his spear and prepared to strike. Lee Hyena, wasting no time, stomped on the accelerator, but before the car could move forward, Juntae had already launched himself into the air. He was certain he had them until something else caught his attention. Jin-hyuk came at him with a powerful kick, but it barely missed. As expected from an S-ranker, Juntae dodged it with ease and immediately countered with his own kick. The impact sent Jin-hyuk skidding across the road, and the stubborn bastard landed on his feet just in time to watch the car disappear into the distance. Jin-hyuk could only hope the others made it out alive. Letting out a relaxed sigh, Juntae turned to Jin-hyuk, annoyed that no one had warned him about an interference. Now irritated, he told Jin-hyuk he was a bit busy, and ordered him to get lost if he wanted to live. But Jin-hyuk, pushing himself back up, scoffed and told him to shut his garbage mouth. He wasn't scared of someone like him. If Juntae wanted a fight, he'd give him one. Juntae smirked, clearly amused. He admitted he was impressed by Jin-hyuk's guts, but within a second, he closed the distance, grabbed Jin-hyuk by the collar, and sneered that this was getting entertaining. Without wasting another moment, the fight erupted, both exchanging blows at a relentless pace. Jin-hyuk struggled to keep up, the sheer speed and strength of his opponent overwhelming him. But Juntae, on the other hand, looked absolutely thrilled. It had been a while since he'd found someone who could actually challenge him. With a grin, he urged Jin-hyuk to show him what he had. Then, without warning, Juntae tightened his grip, pulled back, and with both hands on his spear, prepared a lethal strike. Jin-hyuk's instinct screamed at him. If that attack landed, he was dead. Without hesitation, he opened his inventory and equipped his mithril chainmail armor, knowing it would cut both physical and magical damage in half. Just as the armor settled onto his body, Juntae's spear struck his ribs with terrifying force, sending him flying backward. The impact rattled his entire body, but as he gasped for breath, he couldn't help but be grateful he had the armor. Juntae, watching him still standing, narrowed his eyes. He had fought plenty of strong men before, but this one he didn't recognize. Curiosity sparked in his mind as he says he didn't recall anyone like him. And then it clicked. He suddenly recalled a certain class hunter, the one who had taken down the Leviathan. Yongsuk had mentioned him before, the one close to Seo Sangho. Jin-hyuk stiffened, his identity was blown. Even if he got away now, it was only a matter of time before they tracked down his house. His priority had just changed. Escaping from this guy was now the only thing that mattered. Juntae, however, had a different idea. Instead of pressing the attack, he smirked and made an offer. He told Jinhyuk to forget about Seo Sango and join forces with him instead. The new Titan Guild needed someone like him. Jinhyuk couldn't help but chuckle. It was almost pathetic. He had actually hesitated before the fight, but now, hearing this offer, he knew exactly where he stood. Without a second thought, he rejected it outright and told Juntae that they were going all the way to the end. Meanwhile, at our boy's house, the car of Secretary Lee Hyena sat parked outside, a clear sign that she had made it back safely in time. Inside, Lucia was focused on healing Guildmaster Seo Sangho, her magic working through him as a soft glow surrounded his body. It seemed like her spell had worked, at least to some extent. Lee Hyena, watching anxiously, asked if he was okay now, but Lucia's expression remained serious. Without sugarcoating it, she admitted that this was as far as she could go. She then requested that they talk outside in the living room, away from the unconscious Guildmaster. Once they settled, Lucia explained that while she had taken successful measures, the job wasn't completely done. The poison was simply too strong. Right now, Seo Sangho wasn't feeling any pain, but that was only because of her magic, and it wouldn't last forever. Her words sent the secretary into a panic, and she immediately asked if there was any other way, anything that could fully cure him. Lucia took a moment to think. There might be one possibility. If that short-tempered dwarf could handle it, then maybe it could work. But for that, she needed access to the dungeon, and the key to that, none other than Jinhyuk himself. Turning back to Secretary Lee, she told her there might be a way, but it all depended on Jinhyuk. Without wasting another second, she asked where the hell he was. That was when Secretary Lee, still catching her breath, explained everything that had happened. Back to our MC, who is still struggling to hold his ground. It's clear now that this guy is seriously strong. Every attack is pushing Jinhyuk to his limits. Suddenly, he noticed something. Juntae lunged at him, spear in hand, aiming straight for a lethal strike. But Jinhyuk barely managed to dodge in time. Frustrated by his evasiveness, Juntae made up his mind. He would take this fight to the bitter end. The attacks came relentlessly, each strike carrying enough force to shake the ground. One particularly powerful blow sent Jinhyuk skidding backward. Seizing the moment, Juntae lunged forward and delivered a brutal punch straight to Jinhyuk's face, throwing him off balance. Without giving him even a second to recover, Juntae followed up with a devastating kick to Jinhyuk's left ribs. The impact was brutal enough to send him flying and crashing hard on the ground. Juntae, now confident in his victory, scoffed as he looked down at his fallen opponent. With a smirk, he taunted Jinhyuk, asking if that was all he had and where all that earlier energy had gone. Jinhyuk, his body trembling, struggled to get back on his feet. He knew he was at his limit. He needed a potion right now, but with this bastard's non-stop attacks, there was no time to even reach for it. That left him with only one option. Gritting his teeth, he tightened his grip on his bat, preparing for a desperate counterattack. Juntae, clearly amused, mocked him, saying he should keep fighting. Giving up would just be too boring. But Jinhyuk didn't waste another second. Without hesitation, he lunged forward and swung his bat with everything he had, this time faster and stronger, but hit nothing but air. Juntae dodged effortlessly, and before Jinhyuk could react, a brutal knee strike connected straight with his face, sending him crashing into a nearby container, blood dripping from his mouth. Determined to end this fight, Juntae didn't hesitate. With a smirk, he hurled his spear straight at Jinhyuk, who knew he had a move. If he didn't, he was dead. He couldn't let that happen. He still had unfinished business, and Lucia would kill him herself if he died before their smashing session. At the very last second, he managed to shift just enough to avoid a fatal hit. Juntae, surprisingly impressed, chuckled, and told Jinhyuk to reconsider his offer to become his underling. But even in pain, Jinhyuk scoffed and called it nonsense. Annoyed, Juntae clenched his fist, preparing to strike and finally end this once and for all. But before he could land the finishing blow, an arrow shot straight at him, making both him and Jinhyuk freeze in shock. Jinhyuk's eyes immediately recognized the arrow, and despite the pain, a slight smile crept onto his face. A little while earlier, Lucia had been tracking Jinhyuk's location using Apple Maps, but considering it was her first time using it, things weren't exactly going smoothly. She frowned at the screen, frustrated by how confusing it was. She should have just used Google Maps instead. The map instructed her to turn left in 200 mice, and without wasting a second, she took a huge leap forward, muttering to herself that Jinhyuk better not die. After all, if he did, she wouldn't get to taste him. Back on the battlefield, the arrow shot by Lucia detonated with an earth-shaking explosion, sending a powerful shockwave rippling through the air. Juntae's heart nearly jumped out of his chest as he watched the sheer destruction unfold before him. His hands trembled slightly. Had he just witnessed that, right? The sheer power packed into that arrow made him question everything, and for a moment, he almost pissed himself. What kind of monster was she? Just as he was trying to regain his composure, Lucia arrived, dust swirling around her feet. Thank God she made it in time. Otherwise, her precious chocolates would have been gone, and that would have been a real disaster. But something about her didn't sit right with Juntae. She didn't look overwhelmingly strong, and yet she had fired that devastating shot like it was nothing. Suspicion crept into his mind, and he decided to test things himself. He made his way toward Jinhyuk, who was still impaled by the spear, and grabbed the weapon. As soon as he pulled it out, a sharp, unexpected pain shot through his body. His legs gave out, and before he knew it, he was on the ground. Gritting his teeth, Juntae glanced at Lucia, forcing a mocking grin. In a voice dripping with sarcasm, he sneered, asking if she had come running to save her little boyfriend. But Lucia remained unfazed, standing tall with an icy expression. She didn't even acknowledge his taunts. Clearly, she had no interest in entertaining a bastard who had nearly killed her sugar daddy. Juntae's irritation flared at her indifference. He was being ignored by her. Gritting his teeth, he gathered all his energy and prepared his best attack. If she wanted to act tough, he would break that confidence. Channeling every ounce of power he had, he lunged at her with his full strength. But just as the spear was about to strike, Lucia calmly raised her hand and stopped it. Just like that, Juntae's mind short-circuited. What the hell had just happened? His strongest attack, the one that had crushed countless enemies before, was stopped with nothing but a single hand. His fingers tightened around the spear as disbelief and rage surged through him. This wasn't possible. Who the hell was she? Lucia, however, barely looked interested. She glanced at him like he was an idiot before scoffing and calling him a fool. Then, with a slow, deliberate motion, she clenched her fingers around the spear. The weapon groaned under the pressure. Juntae's heart pounded in his chest as he realized what was happening. She was breaking it with her bare hands. A sense of dread crawled up his spine as cracks spread across the spear shaft. Then, with one final squeeze, the entire weapon shattered into useless fragments. Panic seized Juntae as he instinctively activated his shield. If her raw strength was this ridiculous, he wasn't going to take any chances, but it didn't matter. Lucia moved in an instant, piercing through his defense like it was paper, and before he could react, her fist crashed straight into the center of his chest. The impact sent him flying backward, his body skidding across the battlefield as he gasped for air. Jinhyuk, still watching, couldn't help but feel a mix of awe and disbelief. Just how strong was she? Even Juntae, who had been so full of himself just moments ago, lay on the ground, stunned, and struggling to comprehend what had just happened. His pride was completely shattered. He refused to believe it. How could he, a top hunter, be getting his ass handed to him by a woman? His mind raced, trying to make sense of it. Was she an S-class hunter from another country? No, that didn't make sense. There wasn't a single record of a hunter like her anywhere in the world. Lucia turned her attention to Jinhyuk, her sharp gaze scanning him for any lingering injuries. Without wasting a second, she asked if he could move. Jinhyuk, still feeling the aftermath of the fight, but unwilling to show weakness, nodded in agreement. But Lucia wasn't done yet. Her expression turned serious as she bluntly asked if he wanted that bastard dead. Jinhyuk, despite everything, shook his head. No, killing him wasn't enough. He wanted to be the one to personally beat the crap out of Juntae. That bastard had gotten away with too much, and Jinhyuk wasn't about to let it slide. Turning to Juntae, he made it clear they were done for today, but next time, there would be no escape. Juntae, now fully realizing how badly things had turned against him, could feel a growing warmth in his pants. An unpleasant confirmation that his body had completely betrayed him. If things kept going at this rate, soon those wet patches wouldn't just be sweat, they'd be a full-blown disaster. But still, his pride wouldn't let him back down entirely. Putting on his best tough guy act, he scoffed, pretending that he was also exhausted and simply choosing to end the fight. With a forced smirk, he threw out one last threat, warning them that next time he wouldn't just fight, he'd kill them both. And with that, he made his retreat, not daring to look back. With the battlefield finally quiet, Lucia focused on healing Jinhyuk's wounds. She worked quickly and efficiently, while he downed 2 bottles of stamina potions like a man dying of thirst. The process felt like it dragged on forever, but eventually the wound fully closed. Lucia stood up, stretching slightly, and assured him that he should be able to move now. Thankfully, it wasn't as serious as it had looked. Jinhyuk tested his body, rolling his shoulder and flexing his fingers. He was genuinely amazed. There wasn't even a scar left behind. Grinning, he glanced at Lucia and casually remarked that with skills like hers, she was basically a cool OP character straight out of game. Lucia, however, just stared at him, looking more confused than anything. Seeing her blank expression, he quickly cleared his throat and explained that it was just a compliment. Deciding to change the topic, Jinhyuk asked about Seo Sangho's condition. Lucia let out a small sigh, explaining that he was stable for now, but things weren't looking great. She admitted that while she had done what she couldn't treat him completely. However, there was still a chance. Maybe the dwarf could help. Jinhyuk didn't hesitate. With his identity now exposed, there was no telling when the next attack might come. He had no time to waste, sharing a quick nod with Lucia. The two of them leaped into action, heading straight for the dungeon. The scene shifted to the dwarf's workshop deep within the dungeon, where the usual chaos awaited. As expected, the moment Jinhyuk stepped inside, the old dwarf let out an exasperated sigh before launching straight into his usual barking. And honestly, who could blame him? Every single time the dwarf assigned Jinhyuk a task, the guy vanished for weeks. And when he finally returned, he never actually completed the job. No, instead he always brought some fresh disaster for the poor old man to deal with. This time, however, Jinhyuk had truly outdone himself. Not only had he failed to bring back what was needed, but he had also dragged in Seo Sango, who was barely clinging to life in a poisoned state. The dwarf took one look at the unconscious man and let out a string of curses, calling Jinhyuk a complete idiot. But as always, Jin-hyuk muttered a half-ass apology, and insisted that they should focus on treating Seo Sang-ho first. The dwarf let out another long-suffering sigh and told him it wasn't that simple. Sang-ho had been poisoned by basilisk venom, one of the nastiest poisons out there. An antidote was needed, but the problem was that the necessary ingredients weren't available here in the dungeon. Without them, there was no way to cure him. The dwarf then shot Jin-hyuk a look and asked if Lucia hadn't mentioned this to him beforehand. Jin-hyuk blinked, clearly caught off guard. Maybe uncle might have something. That was his immediate thought. To him, the dwarf was practically a walking treasure chest, one that somehow had everything inside. But the old man only scoffed, shaking his head in disbelief before muttering that Jin-hyuk should wait while he figured something out. Meanwhile, a weak voice called out. Seo Sang-ho had finally regained some consciousness, though his face was still pale and covered in cold sweat. He looked around, confused, before turning his gaze to Jin-hyuk and asking in a strained voice where they were. Jin-hyuk, without missing a beat, told him to hold off on the questions for now. He understood that the guildmaster must have a lot on his mind, but for now he should just think of this place as one of his abilities. Seo Sang-ho, though still weak, felt a wave of gratitude wash over him. It wasn't just about saving his life. Jin-hyuk had chosen to trust him. With difficulty, he muttered his thanks, but Jin-hyuk only shrugged, his expression remaining calm. If anything, it was the guildmaster who had trusted him first. Sometime later, the dwarf finally returned, holding a potion in his hands. He handed it to Seo Sang-ho, before turning to Jin-hyuk with a grim look. The medicine would buy them time, but only for half a day. If they failed to find the antidote before then, Seo Sang-ho would die. Jin-hyuk's expression darkened. Half a day wasn't much time. Letting out a dull sigh, he asked if there was any other way, something, anything, that could keep Seo Sang-ho alive longer. But the old man shook his head. If there was another solution, he didn't know about it. Jin-hyuk clenched his fists, his mind racing. There was the Hunter Specialty Hospital. They might have the antidote, but as Seo Sang-ho had said before, the moment they made a move, their enemies would come after them like bloodthirsty hounds. A direct approach was risky. Then suddenly, an idea sparked in his mind. Maybe, just maybe, there was a way to get the antidote without leading their enemies straight to them. Back at his home, Jin-hyuk and Lee Hyena carefully placed Seo Sang-ho on the bed, letting him rest while they moved to the living room. Jin-hyuk, keeping his voice steady, explained everything that had happened in the dungeon. As he spoke, he pulled out his phone and held it up, his expression serious. This was it, their last hope. If this didn't work, they were completely screwed. Somewhere else, in a dimly lit office filled with expensive decor, a phone rang. This wasn't just any call. It was reaching a black market dealer, the same one Jin-hyuk had made a deal with earlier. As the very definition of wealth and luxury, the man never settled for less. Even his iPhone was always the latest maxed out model, upgraded the moment a new version was released. Seeing the caller ID, he immediately picked up, his tone shifting to a respectful one, as he addressed Jin-hyuk as Sir, and asked why he was calling at such a late hour. Jin-hyuk didn't waste a second. With a firm voice, he got straight to the point. He needed an antidote for basilisk venom. The dealer, caught slightly off guard, admitted that he didn't have it on hand, but he knew a doctor who could arrange it. His curiosity piqued. He asked why Jin-hyuk needed something so rare, but Jin-hyuk wasn't in the mood for small talk. Brushing off the question, he simply stated that he had run into some trouble. What mattered more was keeping this entire transaction confidential. The dealer, who valued Jin-hyuk as a VIP customer, didn't need any further convincing. Assuring him that everything would be handled discreetly, he asked for his address to send the doctor over. Ending the call with a smirk, Jin-hyuk turned to Lee Hyena and casually told her that the doctor would be arriving soon. At first, she just stared at him, stunned. Could it really be this easy? The weight that had been crushing her chest for hours suddenly felt lighter, but she was still too overwhelmed to believe it completely. When Jin-hyuk reassured her that everything was under control, the relief hit her like a flood. She couldn't hold back her tears anymore. Her body trembled as she let out a shaky breath, whispering thank yous over and over again. After all the stress, the fear, the helplessness, this was the first time she could finally breathe. Not long after, the sound of a car pulling up outside signaled the arrival of the doctor. He wasted no time. The doctor immediately treated the guildmaster. After administering the antidote, he turned to them and delivered the final verdict. Seo Sang-ho would survive, but full recovery would take at least 2 weeks. Until then, he needed complete rest. No movement, no exertion, just time for the antidote to work its magic. As Jin-hyuk escorted the doctor outside and watched the car pull away, he let out a slow breath, but his mind refused to settle. The problem looming over him was far bigger than anything he had dealt with before. The guildmaster would take at least 2 weeks to recover, and during that time, the Titan Guild would be relentless in their pursuit. He knew they wouldn't just sit back and wait. They would come for him. And even if Lucia stood by his side, there was only so much she could do. She was strong, but she wasn't invincible. And against an entire guild, even she had her limits. Then there was his own weakness. The fight against Juntae had been a brutal wake-up call. He had gone cocky, believing he could handle it, only to be beaten so badly that he barely walked away alive. That fight had exposed the harsh reality. He wasn't as strong as he thought he was. It wasn't just about being outmatched. It was the fact that he had been too naive to see it coming. He thought he was ready for war, but he was barely surviving battles. Even if the guild master recovered, Jin-hyuk wouldn't be of any real help. If anything, he would just get in the way. Before he could sink any deeper into frustration, Lucia arrived. One look at him, and she immediately understood what was running through his mind. Without hesitation, he admitted that after fighting that S-rank bastard bastard. He had finally realized the bitter truth. He was too weak. But before he could say anything more, Lucia stepped closer and, without a shred of hesitation, agreed. He was weak. Her words were blunt, almost cutting, but there was no malice behind them, only cold, undeniable truth. Jinhyuk felt a flicker of irritation, but quickly swallowed it. She wasn't wrong. She asked if he truly wanted to change that, her voice serious and unwavering. Then she revealed that she had a way, something dangerous, something that came with risks, but if he was willing to go through with it, she promised he would come out stronger, strong enough to change everything. She met his eyes and asked him straight, was he ready to take the gamble? Jinhyuk's hesitation lasted only a moment. His thoughts cleared, his frustration hardened into resolve. He clenched his fists, took a deep breath, and with a determined look, he gave his answer. He would do it, no matter how risky it was. The next day, Jinhyuk was busy double-checking the items in his inventory. Looked like he was really going to take the risk. Lucia had told him last night to be well prepared, and he had taken her words seriously. 300 mana potions, 300 health potions, his armor, and of course, his trusty companion, Bat. But as he ran through his supplies, doubt lingered in his mind. Was this really enough? The place he was heading to wasn't just some random dungeon, it was the Dragon's Temple. Just as he was about to question himself again, a voice cut through his thoughts, asking if he had stored the return stone. He turned to see Lucia approaching, and right behind her was Lee Hyena. Jinhyuk gave a slight nod, confirming that he had packed the return stone, his only escape route if things went to hell. Lucia took the stone and assessed it for a while. After a moment, she let out a quiet sigh of relief. At least they had one way out. That was something. Still, her expression hardened as she looked at him with a serious face. She warned him about the dangers of the Dragon's Temple. The place wasn't just dangerous, it was a death trap. She knew exactly how stubborn and reckless Jinhyuk could be in his pursuit of strength, but she made one thing crystal clear. If he let greed take over, he would die. If he felt he had reached his limit, he had to leave immediately. Jinhyuk scratched his head, a small grin creeping onto his face. It was nice seeing Lucia worry about him like this. There was a warmth in her concern, something that reminded him that despite her sharp tongue, she truly cared. He reassured her, saying that if things got too dangerous, he would use the return stone without hesitation. Their conversation was abruptly interrupted when Lee Hyena stepped forward, her voice tinged with guilt. She hesitated for a second before apologizing for all the trouble she had caused him, but Jinhyuk just shrugged it off, telling her there was no need to feel sorry. He wasn't the only one struggling. Everyone had their own battles, their own reasons to grow stronger. He wasn't going to dwell on the past. Then, turning back to Lucia, his expression softened. He told her with absolute certainty that he would be counting on her. She was the only one he could truly rely on, the one person he trusted without question. No matter what happened, he would come back for sure. Lucia simply nodded, her face unreadable, but deep down she felt an unsettling weight settle in her chest. The scene shifted as Jinhyuk arrived at the entrance of the Dragon Temple. With zero hesitation, he pulled out the key and unlocked the massive gate. The door creaked open, and a sudden burst of intense light caught him off guard, forcing him to shield his eyes. As his vision adjusted, he found himself standing before the legendary temple, its sheer presence enough to make anyone shiver. The overwhelming energy in the air was suffocating, yet exhilarating. Lucia's words echoed in his mind. Don't get greedy, and leave if things get dangerous. But Jinhyuk knew better. If he had planned to play it safe, he wouldn't have come here in the first place. No, he was here to see this through to the end. Stepping inside, he silently vowed that he wouldn't leave until he was strong enough to kick S-rank asses without breaking a sweat. As soon as he crossed the threshold, the temple doors rumbled and began to shut behind him. A heavy silence followed. Darkness swallowed everything around him, stretching endlessly in all directions. He walked forward, but with no source of light, he couldn't even tell if he was heading in the right direction. A faint doubt crossed his mind. Was he just wandering aimlessly in pitch black? Just as the thought surfaced, the entire space came to life. One by one, torches flared up, illuminating the grand hall. His eyes widened slightly as the flickering flames revealed towering knights standing in their favorite position, straight. The whole scene had an eerie, majestic vibe, but Jinhyuk, he walked in like he owned the damn place, striding confidently down the long carpet that stretched through the hall. The silence had been unbearable, so seeing some light was at least a relief. His gaze swept over the knights standing rigidly around him. They looked unsettlingly lifelike. But for now, he figured they were just for decoration. He smirked at the thought and continued forward. Unfortunately, one knight took offense to being called a mere decoration, and instead of grumbling about it, he decided to settle the matter the old-fashioned way with a sneak attack. Because let's be honest, even this tin can wasn't stupid enough to challenge our MC head-on. With a metallic screech, the knight drew his sword and lunged, but our boy dodged effortlessly and created some distance. His brows furrowed slightly. Were these things monsters? His earlier words might have pissed him off, but honestly, he had expected something like this. Right on, Quay. The rest of the knights came to life, their armor clanking as they rushed toward him in a full-force assault. But Jinhyuk, he was more than ready. A grin spread across his face as he dashed straight into the horde, excitement pulsing through his veins. He landed a clean hit on one knight, and in an instant, its armor crumbled into a heap of scrap. But as he stepped back, expecting a lifeless pile, the scattered pieces suddenly began moving, assembling themselves back together. Within moments, The night was good as new. Jinhyuk clicked his tongue. So that's how it was. He had definitely overestimated these flashy tin cans until they pulled off that little trick. But even as the knights reformed, he remained as cool as a cucumber. He had seen enough cursed artifacts and enchanted puppets to know exactly what was going on. They had cores inside. All he had to do was destroy those, and they wouldn't be getting back up again. If it had been the old Jinhyuk, he might have panicked. But now, he was more than ready. Charging up his bat with crackling electricity, he leaped into the air, eyes locked on his targets. In a single decisive strike, he slammed the bat into the ground, sending a powerful electric shockwave ripping through the entire hall. Within seconds, the knights convulsed as the electricity surged through their cores. Their armor vibrated violently, unable to withstand the attack. One by one, they collapsed, their metallic bodies clattering onto the floor, now nothing more than useless scrap. Jinhyuk let out a satisfied sigh, cracking his neck as he surveyed the mess. First challenge cleared. He glanced at the fallen knights, smirking as he casually asked them how his electric attack. Not that they could answer, but hey, a little trash talk never hurt. The scene shifted to the Titan Guild, where Youngseok was practically seething with rage, his frustration boiling over. That idiot Kang Juntae had completely screwed up. Not only had he failed to capture a man who was already poisoned, but he had also managed to make things even more complicated. Youngseok's jaw tightened as he turned to one of his underlings, demanding an update on the executives who had supported Seo Sangho. The underling, sensing the tension, quickly reported that they had been confined and completely cut off from the outside world, ensuring they couldn't communicate with anyone. At least something had been handled properly. The white-haired bastard gave a small nod of approval, telling him he had done well and to continue keeping an eye on them. But before the conversation could continue, a loud crash echoed through the room as a wall practically exploded inward. Juntae stormed in, barking out Youngseok's name, his face twisted in fury. He demanded to know why he hadn't been informed about the damn obstacles beforehand. Youngseok barely spared him a glance as he responded that all necessary information had been provided. But Juntae, still fuming, shot back, asking where the hell that archer girl had come from. Then, before the situation could escalate further, the underlings foolishly tried to step in and defuse the tension. Big mistake. He was rewarded with a well-deserved punch, reminding him why staying loyal to this bunch of bastards was a terrible life decision. Meanwhile, Youngseok's mind wandered back to the archer girl, Lucia, the same girl who had saved their sorry asses when they were about to be smashed by the tyrant boys. His gaze darkened as he turned to Juntae and flatly asked if he had lost to her. As expected, the crybaby did what all sore losers do. He shifted the blame, whining that his spear had broken too early in the fight. But Youngseok was an idiot. He saw right through it. If Juntae had struggled that much, then the girl was undoubtedly strong. Taking a deep breath, he exhaled sharply, realizing they now had another problem to deal with. It wasn't just Kang Jinhyuk anymore. The girl had to be dealt with too. Straightening up, he told Juntae that, in order to take control of the guild, their first priority had to be eliminating Seo Sangho. He was confident that Sangho was already on the verge of death, but on the off chance he survived, things could get tricky. The man used to be powerful enough to put up a serious fight, and as for Jinhyuk and the archer girl, Youngseok would make sure the guild's members tracked them down and finished them off. Juntae, gritting his teeth, tried to act tough, pretending like he was ready to handle it himself. It was almost laughable. Just hours ago, he had been practically pissing himself, and now he wanted to act all high and mighty. But Youngseok let him have his little moment. After all, once their mission was complete, the position of Titan Guildmaster would be his. Back to our boy standing before a massive door. He had already taken care of those damned armors, and now it was time to move on to the second room. But the moment he stepped inside, something fell off. The room was almost empty. No traps. No monsters, just an eerie silence that sent a chill down his spine. That's when he saw it. Seated on a grand throne was a man with sharp blue eyes, his presence both imposing and strangely calm. But the strangest part, his karma level was 0. That alone should have been reassuring. Yet, our boy couldn't shake off the uneasy feeling creeping up his skin. Something about this man wasn't right. The moment their eyes met, the man's lips curled into a small smile. It had been a long time since he had seen a challenger, and he looked genuinely pleased. Jinhyuk, keeping his guard up, greeted him politely and asked who he was. Instead of answering, the man simply turned the question back at him, curious about what Jinhyuk thought. Without overthinking, Jinhyuk replied that he definitely didn't seem like an ordinary person. The man's expression turned serious as he asked if it was because he carried no karma. That caught Jinhyuk guard. His body stiffened for a moment. How the hell did this old man know that? His mind raced, trying to process just who he was dealing with. Someone who knew about karma levels and, more importantly, someone who seemed to know about his abilities. The old man slowly stood up, his gaze sharp and knowing. He spoke again, asking if Jinhyuk had come all the way here, carrying something cursed and filled with resentment. Jinhyuk froze, his mind scrambled for an explanation. Was this guy reading his thoughts or something? The eerie sense of unease only deepened. Deciding there was no point in hiding it, Jinhyuk reached into his inventory and pulled out Al-Round stone. Holding it up, he explained that he had come to purify it. The old man studied the stone, and within seconds, he understood. The core had been formed by devouring countless lives, absorbing their hatred and grudges over time. But to him, this wasn't much a problem. Without hesitation, he raised his hand above the stone, and in an instant, waves of powerful blue magic filled the room. The energy surged, crackling in the air as the cursed red glow of the stone slowly faded, bit by bit, replaced by a calm, purified blue. Within seconds, the purification was complete. Jinhyuk stood there, eyes wide in awe. The ominous aura that had been clinging to the stone, the suffocating pressure he had felt, was completely gone. A deep sense of relief washed over him, and without hesitation, he bowed his head in gratitude, thanking the old man sincerely. But the old man wasn't done yet. With a knowing look, he told Jinhyuk to hold on to his gratitude. He should save it for when his true purpose here was fulfilled. Jinhyuk frowned, not understanding what he meant. Before he could ask, the old man simply raised his hand once more. Blue magic surged forward, engulfing Jinhyuk's entire body. The air around him crackled with energy, and in that moment, the realization hit. Whatever was about to happen, the real challenge had only just begun. In the next second, Jinhyuk found himself transported into a void-like space. Darkness stretched infinitely in all directions, an eerie silence wrapping around him. Slowly, he opened his eyes, his mind still adjusting to the sudden shift. That's when a loud, commanding voice echoed through the emptiness. An old man's voice, clear and sharp, warning him not to let his guard down unless he wanted to lose his life. Jinhyuk's head snapped left and right, his eyes scanning the surroundings, but there was nothing, just endless blackness. Suddenly, the sound of footsteps caught his attention. Someone or something was approaching. His gaze locked onto the figure emerging from the darkness, and he immediately recognized it. Well, look who it was. The same armored knight he had faced back in the first room, letting out an exaggerated sigh. He loudly questioned if he had been transported to another space just to kick some more metal asses. Honestly, looking at this bleak battleground, he couldn't blame himself for thinking that was the case. At first, he assumed he was only up against one knight again, but the moment he met those glowing red eyes, a sharp chill ran down his spine. There was something different about this one. Unlike the previous metals he had smashed through, this knight radiated an aura that practically screamed danger. And yet, our boy, as confident as ever, couldn't help but throw in some attitude. With a smirk, he casually remarked that this knight didn't look much different from the weaklings he had fought before. He asked if this guy was just a warm-up, and if the real challenge would be showing up later, but the knight didn't bother entertaining his arrogance. Instead of responding, he simply stated that the trials had begun, and that Jinhyuk should prepare himself. Jinhyuk's amusement flickered for a second. Well, that was new. The previous knights were nothing but mindless husks, yet this one could actually talk. That alone was enough to make him acknowledge that this opponent was different from the rest. But before he could think too much about it, the knight moved, and damn, did he move fast. In a blink, the knight lunged forward with terrifying speed, his blade cutting through the air like a streak of death. Jinhyuk's instinct screamed at him, and in that split second, realization hit him like a truck. He had completely underestimated this opponent. The scene shifted to two figures dressed entirely in black, leaping effortlessly across rooftops, their movements swift and calculated. They landed silently in front of Third Man, most likely their boss. Turns out these were the Titan Guild pursuers sent by none other than that bastard Youngsuk. But thanks to Lucia's magic, they were completely blind to Jinhyuk's whereabouts, unable to track down his house, no matter how hard they tried. Frustration twisted the leader's face. He knew damn well that if he returned without completing the job, he was as good as dead. Gritting his teeth, he barked at his underlings, making it clear they had no choice. They had to find their target no matter what, and if that meant tearing down the entire damn neighborhood, so be it. Without hesitation, he ordered them to start destroying every single house in the area, convinced that sooner or later they'd flush out their target. Well, bad move. All that noise and chaos would only do one thing: cut the distance between their sorry asses and Lucia's arrows. Before they could even make a sound, the arrow had already done its job, cutting through the air in an instant. The shot was brutal, straight to the neck of the loudest one in the group. Yeah, the same bossy bastard who had been barking orders to burn everything down. Well, rest in peace, buddy. The remaining two stood there completely stunned, their brains struggling to process what the hell just happened. Before they could even react, another arrow found its mark, another clean headshot, and just like that, there was only one left. Realizing the absolute disaster unfolding before him, the last guy didn't waste time thinking. He just ran as fast as his legs could carry him. He bolted, hoping to escape whatever nightmare had just wiped out his crew. But he wasn't fast enough. Not faster than Lucia, our favorite elf. She didn't even break a sweat as she moved in. Her knife slashed. One swift motion, and he was down, sent straight to join his dear companions in the afterlife. After taking care of 3 criminal souls, Lucia finally arrived home. The moment she stepped inside, Hyuna, in concern, immediately asked where she had disappeared. Plopping down on the sofa, Lucia casually explained that the Titan Guild tracking team had been sniffing around, which instantly sent Miss Lee into panic mode. But before she could spiral, Lucia reassured her that she had already dealt with them permanently, munching on Jinhyuk's food supplies like it was just another day. She continued, grumbling about how those bastards have been ready to blow up the entire neighborhood just to find a single damn house, and those guys must be convinced by now that Seo Sangho must be here. With a sigh, she told Hyuna that if those bastards came back in full force, there was no way she could protect everyone. The only real hope was for Jinhyuk to return soon. He was the only one who could get them through this mess. And on a slightly more urgent note, the food stash was running dangerously low. The scene shifted to the armored knight, who suddenly surged forward at an insane speed. Jinhyuk barely had time to react. 1 second, the knight was at a distance, and the next, he was right in front of him. His body froze, terror locking him in place. Before he could even think about dodging, the knight's blade flashed, slicing clean through his neck. Just like that, it was over. Our MC died. But then he woke up gasping for air. His hands shot up to his neck, frantically checking for the wound. His heart pounded in his chest as he realized he was perfectly fine. Looking around, he found himself right back at the door of the second room. Confused and shaken, he yelled out, demanding to know what the hell had just happened. He was so damn sure his head had been lopped off, so sure that he didn't even get enough time to wet his pants. But now he had plenty of time for that. Suddenly, a voice interrupted the boy, snapping him out of his thoughts. He turned his head toward the source, only to hear a chuckle. The voice explained that the place where he had just died was nothing more than a virtual space. There was no need to panic. Even if he died there, it wouldn't be real. That's when recognition hit him. The voice belonged to the same elder who had purified his all-round stone. Before Jinhyuk could say anything, the old man continued, telling him bluntly that he was still far too weak. The Dragon Temple wasn't just a place for growth, it was a place of trials. That was why he had warned Jinhyuk to never let his guard down. He advised him to grow stronger and try again later. But for Jinhyuk, those words sent him straight into panic mode. He didn't have the luxury of taking casual advice. If his hideout was discovered, then Seo Sangho and Hyena would be in danger. And if Juntae showed up, he wouldn't even be able to land a scratch on that bastard. Realizing the urgency of the situation, he started banging on the door, yelling for it to be opened. He admitted he had been careless, swearing he wouldn't repeat the same mistake. He didn't have time to sit around. If he didn't get stronger fast, then none of it would matter. The old man remained unfazed, calmly warning him that no matter how desperate he was, it wouldn't change the outcome. If he rushed in now, he would still lose. And in just a few seconds at that, Jinhyuk wasn't backing down. Raising his voice, he shot back that he could win if he didn't let his guard down this time. For a moment, there was silence. Then the elder let out a soft hum, as if he had found something amusing. He asked why Jinhyuk was so desperate. Even after experiencing death, he still refused to give up. Jinhyuk didn't hesitate. If he had been afraid of dying, he wouldn't have come here in the first place. He had already walked the thin line between life and death, and he had made his choice. If he was going to die, then so be it. He would die here endlessly until he got strong enough. The old man's expression shifted, his amusement turning into something more genuine. After a brief pause, the massive gates creaked open with a voice that carried both intrigue and approval. He declared that Jinhyuk would be granted an exception. He would be allowed to re-challenge the trial. As Jinhyuk stepped through the gate, a heavy tension settled over him. The atmosphere alone was enough to put him on edge, but he pushed past it, summoning his trusty bat. Without missing a beat, he called out to the knight, mocking him and demanding a rematch. The knight shot him a piercing glare, but admitted with a hint of amusement that returning after experiencing death took guts. Even so, admiration didn't change the fact that Jinhyuk was still trembling slightly, barely managing to hide his fear. Gripping his bat tightly, he forced a wide grin and declared that last time he had been careless, but this time he wasn't going to die as hollowly as he died before. There was no more time for words. In an instant, the knight leaped into the air, blade poised to strike. Jinhyuk barely had time to react before their weapons clashed, sending shockwaves rippling through the battlefield. His arms ached as he struggled against the sheer force of the attack, gritting his teeth as the pressure nearly overwhelmed him. The knight, sensing his struggle, let out a mocking chuckle and remarked that it seemed Jinhyuk had finally come to his senses. But our MC wasn't about to back down. Focusing his aura into his legs, he gathered all his strength, and with a roar, he pushed forward, sending the knight sliding backward, creating some much-needed distance between them. But the recoil of the attack sent him stumbling as well. Stunned, Jinhyuk could only stare, trying to process just how monstrous this opponent truly was. A direct confrontation was impossible. He knew that now. He had to be smarter. Strike, retreat, wait for an opening, and strike again. That was his only chance. Steeling himself, he lunged forward, moving in perfect sync with his plan. The knight, rather than being angered, seemed impressed. He acknowledged Jinhyuk's ability to wield aura, but of course, there was a catch. Before Jinhyuk could react, the knight's blade struck with brutal precision, sending him flying through the air. As pain shot through his body, the knight coldly explained that while Jinhyuk had learned to channel aura into his legs, he left his upper body completely exposed. Still airborne, Jinhyuk clenched his teeth as realization hit him. He barely had time to land before another thought sent a chill down his spine. How did the knight know exactly where to strike? His mind raced, a tense expression overtaking his face as he wondered if his opponent could read his thoughts. The eerie familiarity of it reminded him of his fight with Juntae, who had also predicted his every move with terrifying accuracy. But before he could analyze further, the knight lunged once more. His voice carried an air of finality as he told Jinhyuk that while his spirit was admirable, if this was all he had, then he could die in peace. The knight swung his blade with lethal precision, expecting to end the fight in an instant. But to his surprise, Jinhyuk blocked just in time and retaliated with a crushingly heavy strike. The impact sent the knight staggering backward, but just like before, the recoil also forced Jinhyuk to skid back. However, this time, our MC revealed something crucial. The knight had been predicting his attacks by reading his aura, giving him an unfair advantage in battle. The knight acknowledged his talent but scoffed, saying that no matter how skilled he was, the outcome for him wouldn't change. Understanding the gravity of the situation, Jinhyuk realized that if he kept using aura like he had been, he was as good as dead. He needed a new approach. Without hesitation, he reached into his inventory, retrieved a mana potion, and downed it in one gulp. His plan was simple but risky. He would envelop his entire body in aura, leaving no gap for the knight to read his movements. But the knight wasn't interested in giving him breathing room. He urged Jinhyuk to focus on the fight, launching another strike. Their weapons clashed, sending shockwaves that were at least 10 times stronger than before. The knight instantly realized what Jinhyuk had done and asked if he had really wrapped his entire body in aura. Jinhyuk confirmed it without hesitation. The knight then questioned the potion he had just consumed, wondering if borrowed strength could truly be called his own. But Jinhyuk didn't care. He firmly stated that as long as he could win, he would use whatever means necessary. Clearly impressed, the knight smirked and told him to prove it. What followed was a fierce exchange of blows, dodging, countering, and attacking with flawless precision. Amidst the relentless battle, the knight couldn't help but praise Jinhyuk, calling him somewhat formidable. But Jinhyuk, now brimming with confidence, knew he was far more than that. The fight raged on, neither willing to back down. The knight acknowledged that Jinhyuk was holding up better than expected, but Jinhyuk wasn't finished yet. He gripped his bat tightly, channeling crackling electricity through it, charging his ace move. The air itself buzzed with power, violent sparks surging around him. Then, with lightning coursing through his weapon, Jinhyuk leaped into the air, ready to unleash the perfect strike. Just as the electrified bat came crashing down toward the knight, the scene abruptly shifted to the city. A car sat parked in the designated parking lane, its occupants remaining still as the chaos outside unfolded. Inside, Lee Jungchul, the black market dealer, kept a close eye on the scene. His driver, growing impatient, finally asked why he wasn't stepping out. Without shifting his gaze, Junchul simply told him to wait. Through the windshield, he watched as members of the Titan Guild frantically searched the area, clearly hunting for Seo Sangho. The driver quickly understood the situation. Getting out now would only draw unnecessary attention. Reaching into his pocket, Junchul pulled out his iPhone, a custom version without any logo. He instructed the driver to stay put, saying he needed to make a call. Dialing a number, he soon found himself connected to Lee Hyena. However, she didn't recognize the caller. He introduced himself and asked if she had heard of him through Kang Jinhyuk. Hyena confirmed Jinhyuk had indeed mentioned him as the one who arranged for Dr. Lee. Satisfied, Junchul wasted no time and got straight to the point. He inquired about Seo Sangho's condition, to which Hyena expressed her gratitude, informing him that thanks to the treatment he had helped arrange, Seo Sangho was now safe. Nodding to himself, Junchul then revealed that he was currently near their hideout. However, there was a problem. The entire area was crawling with Titan Guild members, and judging by their relentless searching, they seemed convinced that Seo Sangho was inside. Hyena listened in silence as he laid out the situation. He continued, if things remained as they were, they would soon have no choice but to face a full Titan Guild blockade right outside their doorstep. But with absolute confidence, he assured her there was no need to worry. He had a way to resolve this issue, and to discuss it properly, he wanted to meet in person. Back on the battlefield, the fight raged on. Jinhyuk had thrown his most powerful attack, putting everything he had into it, only for the knight to stop it effortlessly. The bastard even had the nerve to mock him for it. Frustration boiled in Jinhyuk's veins, his mind racing to process what had just happened. He had been sure that this attack would do some serious damage. Yet, the knight stood there completely unscathed, as if it had been nothing more than a light breeze. With a cold, unwavering tone, the knight told him he was still too inexperienced, too weak, and now that he had wasted his strongest move, it wouldn't work again. Before he could react, calling him pathetic, delivered a brutal kick. The sheer speed was overwhelming. Jinhyuk barely had time to register what happened before he was sent staggering backward, struggling to keep his balance, with a fair distance now between them. The knight coldly asked if Jinhyuk was done with his little hidden tricks, or if he had anything else left. If so, he might as well bring it on now. Jinhyuk clenched his fists, taking a deep breath as he looked at his opponent. Even his strongest attack had failed. That thought gnawed at him, but backing down was an option. Shooting the knight a determined glare, he declared that he had nothing else hidden, but that didn't matter. He was going to gamble everything, his strength, his will, his very life, and fight to the death if he had to. The knight, now seemingly done with his warm-up, let out a low chuckle and channeled power into his sword. Magic surged around the blade, crackling with energy as he told Jinhyuk that from now on, he would play along properly. Jinhyuk's eyes widened as he recognized the power flowing through the weapon. That energy was a divine power. His mind raced as he blurted out the question, wondering if the knight was actually a paladin. With a smirk, the knight denied it, saying he wasn't a paladin, but he was close enough. Then, in a strong, commanding voice, he told Jinhyuk to get ready. Jinhyuk grinned, rolling his shoulders as he steadied his stance. Ready? He was more than ready. With unwavering confidence, he told the knight to come at him any time, because no matter what, he was going to become stronger. With that, both warriors lunged at each other. Jinhyuk knew that fancy tricks wouldn't work here. All he needed was raw strength, a full-force strike, and so, the real battle began. Jinhyuk and a knight clashed, and the impact of their energies sent rumbling shockwaves across the battlefield. Just by looking at our boy's face, you could tell this was the expression of someone silently muttering, "I'm so fucked." But he knew one thing for sure. If he backed down now, he was dead. So, gritting his teeth, he decided to pour every last bit of his aura into this fight and settle it once and for all. That's when the armored knight noticed something strange. His precious sword was starting to crack. For a second, the knight looked genuinely thrown off, feeling something he hadn't in a long time. But he wasn't slow to catch on. He realized Jinhyuk had used his aura at a critical moment, not just to boost his own strength, but to show his desperate hunger for power, a drive that had always been burning inside him. Even so, the knight gathered himself, pushing Jinhyuk back with a forceful blast. But in doing so, his sword completely shattered. Refusing to give in, he focused all his remaining energy into the broken blade and unleashed a final powerful swing. Somehow, against all odds, Jinhyuk managed to block it. In the next cut, Jinhyuk collapsed to his knees. He had somehow managed to block that fatal blow, but now his aura was completely drained. He didn't even have the strength left to save his own ass by running away. The knight calmly lifted his blade, restoring it to perfect condition in no time, using his divine power. Then he pointed the weapon straight at Jinhyuk, who was utterly spent with no tricks left up his sleeve. But strangely, the knight didn't strike. He just stood there, almost like he was waiting for something. Breathing heavily, Jin Hyuk told the knight that he had given it everything he had. He didn't have any regrets left. If the knight was going to kill him, he should just get it over with. Besides, even if he died here, it wasn't truly the end for him. And one thing was certain. He would challenge the knight again and again. No matter what, he had to get stronger. The knight then spoke, telling Jin Hyuk that the trial was over, and that Jin Hyuk had misunderstood something. This trial was never about defeating the knight. As he spoke, the knight began to dissolve into golden dust. He revealed that he was not just the opponent, but also the examiner and the judge. Jin Hyuk, still confused and desperate to know whether he had passed or failed, struggled to process it all. The knight, before disappearing completely in a flash of golden light, said that while Jin Hyuk still had a lot to improve on, for now, he had passed the trial. As the dust finally settled, Jin Hyuk picked up on something different. Out of the fading cloud, an old man stepped forward. Calm, steady, and weirdly impressed that our boy had stuck it out to the damn end, and then it hit. This geyser was the same knight Jin Hyuk had been throwing hands with for nearly a decade. Without warning, the old bastard flicked Jin Hyuk on the forehead for interrupting him mid-sentence, like some pissed-off grandpa. But true to his word, he was ready to spill the secret to getting stronger. He placed a hand on Jin Hyuk's head, and whatever the hell he started doing sent shivers crawling down Jin Hyuk's spine. Before fading away, the old man dropped one last bomb. Jin Hyuk had to connect with the divine. Then, just like that, he began disappearing into thin air, but not without leaving a little gift behind. Guess he'd taken a real liking to our stubborn idiot. Fast forward to the next scene. Jin Hyuk found himself floating in some endless void, butt-ass naked. Not that he gave a damn. Strength first, pants later. That's the mindset you need if you want to get anywhere. And then shit got real. A giant-ass dragon came charging at him. When it roared, the sound damn near ripped his ears off. And yeah, our boy clutched his head like anybody else would. The dragon told him not to fear. Like, seriously, dude. Maybe don't roar like a freaking monster if you don't want people shit their pants. Before he could even react, the dragon started spinning like a goddamn tornado. The whirlwind grew bigger and bigger until the beast just vanished into it. Jin Hyuk panicked hard, but from that raging spin, a golden light shot straight toward him. On instinct, he threw all his focus into his palms. Somewhere in the swirling void, the dragon's voice echoed one last time, telling him again, "Don't fear, accept the power of the divine." Back at Jin Hyuk's house, somehow Lee Jun-chul had managed to sneak inside, rambling about his upcoming plans. But Lu Xia wasn't listening. All she cared about was Jin Hyuk's return. She was worried sick about him. Suddenly, she felt something. Instinctively, she headed toward the room where the dungeon gate usually appeared. Seeing the gate glowing quietly, she finally let out a breath of relief. He was okay. As she waited, a powerful aura began to leak from a gate, and then a figure stepped out. It was our boy, but one look at his eyes made my skin crawl. Lucia, too, froze for a second. What the hell had Jin Hyuk gone through to end up like this? Her face hardened. Without wasting time, she demanded to know if he had really passed the trials. But one glance at his dead serious expression told her everything. No words needed. Without thinking twice, she lunged at him with a knife. But Jin Hyuk, using just a fraction of his new power, easily stopped her. To Lucia, he had always been a reckless, idiot, greedy fool who didn't know when to back down. But we know the truth. It was that same stubbornness that gave him power. Without it, he'd still be a weak C rank getting tossed around by S rankers. Even Lucia had to admit, if only to herself, that she was taken aback. And yeah, the artist didn't forget to bless us with some curves while showing that. Anyway, back to the point. Lucia acknowledged that he had gotten stronger, but she warned him to be careful. If he ended up in heaven or hell, she wouldn't be able to travel dimensions to save him. With that, she turned and headed toward the dungeon. She wasn't about to be left behind. And honestly, for the chaos ahead, Jin Hyuk alone was more than enough. Jin Hyuk was genuinely thankful to Lucia for staying by his side, but she immediately shut that down, making it clear she only helped him because if he died, the dungeon would be totally screwed. And, of course, her help wasn't free. She demanded a mountain of sweets delivered to the boss's magic room as payment. Lastly, she gave him a final warning. The perception magic she had cast would soon wear off after she left. He needed to be ready before the Titan Guild found them. Jin Hyuk made his way to the hall, where Lee Jun-cheol was already waiting, quietly watching him with a look that clearly said he was wondering where on earth our boy had popped up from this time. Meanwhile, Secretary Lee Hyena couldn't hide her happiness. The moment she saw Jin Hyuk, her face lit up with pure relief and excitement. For Jin Hyuk, the feeling was mutual, though he kept it low-key. He was just glad that nothing major had happened while he was away. Hyena, overjoyed, showed her gratitude openly, but Jin Hyuk simply brushed it off, treating it like it was nothing more than an ordinary friendship gesture. No big deal in his mind. After sharing a few casual words, Jin Hyuk shifted his attention to Lee Jun-cheol. Apparently, Jun-cheol had been trying to get in touch with him, but when he couldn't, he decided to show up in person. That alone made Jin Hyuk suspicious. After all, people like Jun-cheol, rich, powerful types, didn't usually go out of their way unless there was something important brewing. Without wasting much time, Jin Hyuk decided to cut straight to the point. He asked what was really going on in Jun-cheol's mind. Jun-cheol, catching the hint, didn't bother beating around the bush. Keeping a straight face, he asked Jin Hyuk if he would be interested in creating a guild together. It was a bold move, but then again, it was classic Jun-cheol, the dealer who always had a plan hidden up his sleeve. Jin Hyuk was honestly taken aback by the sudden proposal. Hyena, who had half expected Jun-cheol to suggest some clever escape route, seemed to pause for a moment, her mind already racing ahead. But was time to get a little more realistic realistic. Even if Guildmaster Seo Sangho miraculously recovered, there was no going back to the Titan Guild anymore. The harsh truth was staring everyone in the face. The fact that no one from Titan had come to rescue Seo Sangho said it all. It was clear to Juncheol, to Hyena, that the guild had completely rotted from the inside out. Juncheol didn't believe for a second that anything could fix what had already decayed. In his eyes, the only solution was to build something entirely new from scratch. And at the very core of this new foundation, the person he wanted leading the charge was none other than Jinhyuk himself. Meanwhile, Jinhyuk just sat there listening calmly as Juncheol continued to lay out his plans in full detail. At one point, Juncheol even flashed his iPhone, showing that he wasn't just all talk. He had already prepared a lot behind the scenes. He confidently explained that he could personally handle all the resources they would need, from funding to materials. He had even arranged for a building that could serve as the headquarters for their new guild, and had scouted several talented individuals who could potentially join them. He told Jinhyuk that he would send over all the details so he could take a closer look and evaluate everything himself. Hyena was honestly impressed by how thorough and serious Juncheol's preparations were, but being the sharp, realistic person she was, she didn't let that admiration cloud her judgment. She immediately pointed out the hard truth. No matter how much preparation Juncheol had done, it still wasn't enough to take on the Titan Guild head-on. Even if they somehow managed to start confrontation, there was no way they could deal with an S-rank hunter like Kang Juntae, who was one of Titan's strongest assets. Of course, Juncheol wasn't caught off guard by her concerns. He had already thought about it. Casually, he turned toward Jinhyuk and without any hesitation, asked him if he could defeat Kang Juntae. Hearing that, Jinhyuk couldn't help but raise an eyebrow. Part of him wondered why Juncheol wasn't directing that question towards Seo Sangho instead, but thinking about it for a moment, it made sense. Seo Sangho was still in a critical condition after everything that had happened. Even if he recovered, it would take time, and by then the opportunity they had now would be long gone. Juncheol then explained that he had heard a rumor circulating among certain circles. According to the rumor, Jinhyuk had already fought Kang Juntae once and survived. If that rumor was true, then there was a real chance that their plan could succeed. But if it was false, Juncheol was ready to scrap the entire operation without a second thought. Simply put, the entire plan hinged on one thing: whether Jinhyuk could actually take down Kang Juntae, and this rich blonde dealer was prepared to stake everything he had on that possibility. So, he needed a clear answer. Could Jinhyuk defeat Kang Juntae or not? But instead of answering immediately, Jinhyuk felt excitement bubbling inside him. He didn't just blurt out a response. Instead, he leaned back, smiled, and said he wanted to hear the full plan first. Only after hearing everything would he give his answer. The scene shifted to a building where chaos had already broken out. A man came flying through the air, his face completely smashed in by a brutal punch, before crashing hard onto the floor and sliding across it like a ragdoll. And the one responsible for that devastating blow, none other than Zhou Wanqiol, the leader of the Tyrant Guild. Wanqiol was absolutely furious. His anger had been simmering for a while now, thanks to the Titan Guild's thugs, who had started barging into his territory as if they owned the place. They didn't even bother to hide their arrogance, acting without a shred of fear or hesitation. Adding fuel to the fire was the recent news explosion about the Al Rowney incident. Public opinion had turned sharply against the Tyrant Guild. Their reputation, already shaky, took a massive hit. Wanqiol had thought it would be smarter to lay low for a while, let things cool off, and avoid drawing more attention to themselves. But while they were busy keeping their heads down, the Titan Guild had seen an opportunity and moved in on their territory without mercy. Now, this gorilla was beyond pissed. If the Titan Guild won a fight, then fine. He wasn't going to hold back anymore. He was more than ready to meet them head-on and crush them. Back at Jinhyuk's house, Juncheol finally started explaining his plan in detail. His idea was simple but bold. He wanted to drag the Tyrant Guild into this whole mess. According to him, the Tyrant Guild had a massive force, almost comparable to the Titans, and their leader, who was the same gorilla-looking guy we had seen in earlier incidents, could definitely go head-to-head against the Titans if it came to that. However, Miss Hyena was skeptical. She pointed out that the Tyrant Guild was already in chaos because of the Al Rown incident. After suffering such a major loss, it was unlikely they would be thinking about going to war anytime soon. But from Juncheol's perspective, it was actually easier now to make both of these rotten guilds clash. Recently, the Titans have been expanding their territory aggressively, and most of the land they were taking originally belonged to the Tyrant Guild. While other guilds had also been targeted, the Titans had clearly crossed the line with the Tyrants, and there's already a lot of bitterness building up because of that. Now, all they needed was a way to push the Tyrant Guild over the edge and make them take the first step against the Titans. Miss Hyena, with her sharp mind, already knew exactly how to ignite that spark. Juncheol didn't immediately understand what she meant. That's when Jinhyuk, speaking casually as if it wasn't a big deal, revealed the truth. They were the ones who had leaked the information related to the Al Rown incident in the first place. This revelation completely shocked Juncheol, but he was smart enough to connect the dots quickly. If Jinhyuk had leaked the information, it meant he had something to do with Al Rown's death, and since Jinhyuk had been working with the Titan Guild at that time, this piece of information alone would be more than enough for the Tyrant Guild to justify attacking the Titans. Juncheol realized that they could use this situation to their advantage by taking control of the chaos that would follow once the two guilds clashed. After the entire plan was laid out, Juncheol turned to Jinhyuk and asked for his opinion and whether he was ready to join forces with him to make this plan a reality. Jinhyuk, wearing a small smirk on his face, agreed without much hesitation. Miss Hyena, excited by how things were shaping up, started throwing out ideas for their new guild's name. But Jinhyuk already had a name prepared in his mind. He chose a name drawn from mythology, a name that represented gods who once overthrew the Titans themselves. That name was Pantheon. Everyone liked the sound of it immediately. It fit perfectly with what they were trying to do. Jun Cheol, never the type to waste time, decided they would begin working on the plan right away. According to the division of roles, Hyena's job would be to leak the information to the Tyrant Guild. Jun Cheol would focus on preparing supplies and resources for the coming conflict. And as for Jinhyuk, his role for now was to divert the attention of any pursuers and buy them time. With everything decided and roles assigned, the plan officially set in motion. Meanwhile, the Titan Guild members were desperately searching for Seo Sangho, acting like a pack of crazed dogs. They were running around frantically, checking every possible hiding spot. Suddenly, one of them spotted two shadowy figures moving in the distance. His eyes widened in recognition. He realized it was Jinhyuk and Lee Hyena. Without wasting a second, he quickly informed his team through the communicator that the targets were moving towards Sector D. And just like that, the entire group of Titan bastards immediately started chasing after them, closing in like bloodthirsty hounds. Up on the rooftop of a nearby building, Daeun quietly observed the chaos below. Daeun was a skilled illusionist, and thanks to his incredible ability to manipulate perception, Jinhyuk managed to buy some precious time to make his move. While they waited, Daeun couldn't help but bring up the rebellion happening inside the Titan Guild. He had heard bits and pieces earlier, but now he wanted the full story. Jinhyuk had already explained the situation to him. The truth about how things had spiraled completely out of control within Titan Guild, about Guildmaster Seo Sangho's downfall, and most shocking of all, about his confrontation with Kang Juntae. Even Daeun, who had seen his fair share of crazy things, was left stunned by that revelation. Still, as powerful as Kang Juntae was, Jinhyuk was even stronger now. The real reason Jinhyuk had set up this secret meeting, though, wasn't just to share information. He had a much bigger goal in mind. He wanted Daeun to join the new guild he was forming, the guild that would stand apart from all the rotten ones currently out there. The scene shifted to the Tyrant Guild's third branch where, following Jinhyuk's plan, Hyena had already leaked the crucial information about the Alround incident. As expected, she didn't have any particular loyalty to any guild. For her, it was just a simple transaction. She sold the information for money and didn't look back. The leak report laid out everything in detail. It claimed that on the day of the Alround incident, members of the Titan Guild had infiltrated the area, intending to steal precious artifacts. During the operation, they ended up clashing with Alround. To cover up the mess they had created, the Titans allegedly leaked a false version of the story to the media, shifting the blame away from themselves. Unsurprisingly, the leader of the Tyrant Guild, the same gorilla-looking guy from before, did not take the report lightly. Reading through the details, his anger flared up immediately. He was furious that his guild's name had been dragged through the mud because of the Titan Guild's actions. Without wasting any time, he called one of his executives and ordered them to gather all the available members. As he slid on his heavy knuckle dusters, a sign that he was personally ready for a fight, he laid out his decision clearly and without hesitation. They would not sit quietly anymore. They would strike first. From that moment on, he declared that the Tyrant Guild was officially at war with the Titan Guild. Back at the Titan Guild headquarters, chaos had already begun to unfold. A guild member rushed in, urgently reporting that the Tyrant Guild had officially declared war on them. At first, the four-eyed bastard, Young-suk, thought it was nothing serious. In his mind, it was probably just another typical fight over territorial disputes, something they could easily handle like before. However, that casual attitude quickly shattered the moment he heard the real piece of news. Guildmaster Zhou Wanxiol himself, the leader of the Tyrant Guild, had personally declared war against them. Hearing that, the pale-faced executive completely lost his composure. Panic set in immediately because this wasn't some minor squabble anymore. If Wanxiol had stepped in person, it meant things were about to get really ugly and really fast. Meanwhile, outside the guild building, the situation was already spiraling out of control. The gorilla had already started his rampage. Without wasting any time, he threw a devastating punch at a bus parked nearby. The force behind the blow was so monstrous that the entire bus was sent flying straight toward a group of Titan Guild members. By some miracle, they managed to dodge it just in time, but they didn't even get a chance to breathe. In the very next moment, they found themselves just a few steps closer to the rampaging monster. That's when it finally hit them. They were well and truly screwed. Inside the building, Juntae suddenly burst out laughing loudly, so much so that both of the other guys stopped and stared at him, wondering if he had finally gone mad. But Juntae wasn't laughing because he had lost his mind. He was laughing because he understood something that the others hadn't realized yet. Juntae had sensed it earlier, the unsettling quietness. It had been too calm until now, like the eerie silence that comes just before a storm. He had already smelled trouble coming, but Young-suk, still stuck in panic mode, hadn't thought that far ahead yet. In his frantic state, Young-suk immediately ordered someone to contact the association and report the situation, but that was pointless. They couldn't rely on the association, not this time. The reason was simple. The association already knew everything. They had already broadcast the warning publicly, and that was all they were willing to do. They had no intention whatsoever of stepping into the middle of a fight between big guilds. This wasn't the problem, and they weren't about to get involved. Juntae quickly caught on to the real picture. He realized that for the association, this situation was actually perfect. It was a rare opportunity to let two of the biggest guilds tear each other apart without lifting a finger themselves. Meanwhile, Young-suk, still desperate, tried to come up with a new approach. He thought maybe he could convince the association by bringing up concerns about civilian safety. Maybe if they made it about protecting innocent people, the association would be forced to act. But the man shot down that idea immediately. He told Yang Seok flat out it wasn't going to happen. Meanwhile, back in the city, the situation was already spiraling out of control. News had broken out about the conflict, and authorities were urgently advising all citizens to evacuate to safe locations. In the middle of all this chaos, a heartbreaking scene unfolded. A little girl was crying beside her unconscious mother. Unfortunately, the two of them had gotten caught right in the middle of the battle between the Tyrant Guild and the Titan Guild. During the fight, one of the Tyrant Guild members launched a massive fire attack towards his Titan opponent. However, the Titan fighter managed to sidestep the attack at the last second, and the blast went flying in a completely different direction, straight toward the helpless little girl. Just before the attack could hit, someone stepped in and stopped it. It was our boy. He couldn't believe what he was seeing. These lunatics were fighting with such reckless abandon, not even caring about the civilians around them. He knelt down in front of the crying child, gently comforting her and checking if she was all right. Turning serious, he told Miss Lee that from now on, their top priority was to rescue civilians and protect them from getting caught in the crossfire. Without wasting any more time, they immediately started the evacuation operation. It became even clearer to Jin Hyuk just how serious the situation was. The dealer, Jun Chul, was no ordinary figure. Only someone with real influence and power could have orchestrated a mess of this scale. Hyena quickly issued an order to everyone on their side: begin the evacuation immediately and save as many civilians as possible. Over at the Titan Guild, things were already tense when someone reported the latest move Pantheon had made, rescuing civilians. It might have sounded like a simple act, but it was enough to make Yongsuk pause. He started to piece things together, realizing that Juntae had probably already figured out that Pantheon was using this whole situation as an opportunity to build their name. And with the way things were unfolding, it wouldn't be long before smaller guilds began flocking to their side. At first, Yongsuk decided it wasn't worth paying much attention to. Let them make their moves. Titan Guild was still far too powerful for a new guild to cause any real trouble. But then something clicked in his mind. He brought up the possibility that Pantheon might be connected to either Seo Sang-ho or Jin Hyuk. Juntae dismissed the idea at first, thinking it sounded ridiculous. But Yongsuk didn't stop there. He pointed out that the name Pantheon wasn't just some random choice. It referred to the Temple of Gods who once defeated the Titans. To Yongsuk, it started to look like Pantheon had intentionally chosen that name as a direct challenge to the Titan Guild. That small detail finally made things click for Juntae. Now it all made sense. Their sudden appearance, the perfectly timed declaration of war, and the way everything seemed to fall into place too smoothly. The more they thought about it, the clearer it became. It was almost too perfect to be a coincidence, and Yongsuk was convinced that Pantheon was the one pulling the strings behind everything that was happening. His train of thought was interrupted by the sudden buzz of his phone. He answered, only to receive an urgent update on Wanchiul's movements. The gorilla himself was heading straight toward headquarters, right where Yongsuk currently was. Realizing the gravity of the situation, Yongsuk knew there was no time to waste. Things had escalated far beyond what they expected, and if it had come to this, then there was only one solution left. They had to settle things once and for all. With that in mind, he began formulating a plan. No more waiting around, no more playing defense. If Wanchul was coming to them, they would be ready. And Juntae, confident in his abilities, was already prepared to take Wanchiul down. Meanwhile, the battlefield had turned into complete carnage. Hunters were slashing at each other without holding back, and it was turning into an all-out massacre, no different from a real war. Mages were busy preparing their spells, and when they launched their fire attacks, it didn't just target the enemy. It ended up destroying nearby buildings too. The chaos put the lives of countless civilians at risk. Amidst the destruction, Junchiul appeared on the scene. Without wasting any time, he immediately started organizing an evacuation to get civilians out of danger. Once the evacuation was complete and the people were safe, Junchiul took a moment to comfort the shaken citizens. He reassured them that their guild would always be there to protect and help them whenever needed. Of course, this guy didn't miss a chance to flash his iPhone during the whole process, practically marketing his guild right there on the spot. He made sure everyone saw it, taking pictures, making a scene, and it was obvious he was trying to promote the guild's image as heroes who cared about the people. Naturally, his subordinates couldn't help but feel secondhand embarrassment from his behavior. Even some of the civilians thought his actions were a bit strange. While they were grateful, it was clear they found his over-the-top performance a little awkward. At that moment, an officer from the Hunter Association arrived at the scene. He respectfully greeted Junchiul and thanked him for saving the civilians. From that point on, the association would officially take control of the situation. The officer admitted he hadn't expected any guild to actually care so much about protecting civilians. When he asked which guild they belonged to, he found out that it was a newly formed one, a guild called Pantheon. After some time, Junchiul left the scene. He couldn't help but wonder how those association members always managed to show up late, acting like they were there to take control, smoothing things over with empty words. Their main concern was never the actual situation. It was always about protecting the public image of the guilds they supported. Anyway, they had already done their part, put on a decent enough show, and now even the association was started to take them into consideration. That alone was enough for them. They didn't need anything else. Later, the three members of Pantheon gathered for a meeting. Ever since the war between the Titans and Tyrants had escalated into a full-scale conflict, the situation had become critical. Civilians are getting caught in the crossfire, and their safety had become Pantheon's top priority. At the same time, Protecting innocent people would naturally help Pantheon build a positive image for themselves, which wasn't a bad thing either. But while Hyena focused on the logistics of protecting civilians, Juncheol was clearly worried about something else. The destruction caused by the ongoing war was on a whole different scale. If this kept going, it would spiral out of control, and they wouldn't be able to handle it. They needed to find a way to end it, and fast. That's when Jinhyuk brought up a plan. Apparently, he had received a call from someone who had been tracking Wancheol. It was Diyun, who had been assigned the task of keeping an eye on that dangerous beast. Miss Lee immediately grew concerned the moment Jinhyuk began to explain. His plans were always reckless, and this one didn't sound any different. But at the same time, she couldn't ignore the reality in front of them. If two S-rankers actually clashed head-on, the level of destruction would be unimaginable. She did some quick mental calculations, and the numbers didn't look good. In her opinion, there was still a chance that Wancheol wouldn't go that far. Maybe he wouldn't engage in a direct fight, but that's when Jinhyuk dropped the real bomb. Wancheol was already on his way to the Titan Guild's main headquarters. That piece of news instantly pushed Hyena into a state of panic, but before she could fully process it, Jinhyuk calmly laid out his plan. Now that both of those monsters, the Tyrant Guild's gorilla and the Titan's core power, were going to be in the same place, he was going to take them both down at once. That was enough to throw Hyena into full-blown panic mode. She tried to stay calm. Somehow, she managed to pull herself together and take in what Jinhyuk was saying. She knew he had become much stronger than before. She had seen it herself, but taking on two S-rankers alone, that was another level entirely. She had her doubts. Still, Jinhyuk didn't hesitate. He turned, took a steady stance, and leapt in the direction of the battlefield, his decision already made. And even though part of her was still worried sick, Miss Lee knew one thing for sure. She could trust Jinhyuk, especially when she looked into those confident, unwavering dark eyes. The scene shifts to another part of the city where the gorilla had finally arrived at his destination. His expression was cold and unreadable, his pace steady and confident. It didn't take long for trouble to start. Two members of the Titan Guild who were stationed outside the building noticed his approach. At first, they stepped forward to stop him, clearly unaware of who they were dealing with. But the moment they recognized his face, their expressions changed instantly. Panic set in, and one of them quickly tried to contact the control room for urgent backup. Unfortunately for them, it was already too late. Before the call even went through, one of the guards was sent flying across the pavement with a single blow, completely taken out. The second guard didn't last much longer. Wancheol, the man known as the gorilla, wasn't in the mood for small talk. He moved without hesitation and finished off the second guy, just without warning. Meanwhile, inside the Titan Guild headquarters, things were starting to stir. Yongseok received the emergency report about Wancheol's arrival and immediately passed the information to Juntae. Juntae, however, didn't seem the least bit worried. On the contrary, he looked completely confident, almost smug. He didn't even flinch at the news. With overwhelming confidence, he stated that he would personally bring back the head of the Tyrant Guild's master and present it as a gift. Meanwhile, the news was blowing up with coverage of the all-out war breaking out between the Titan and Tyrant Guilds, right smack in the middle of the damn city. To keep regular people from getting caught in the chaos, the police and the Hunter Association slapped down an emergency lockdown on the whole zone. No in, no out. On top of that, the association set up shelter for residents stuck in a blast radius, trying to keep everyone safe while two powerhouses went at it like it was their personal battleground. Back to Joe Wancheol, who was out here wrecking the Titan Guild's goons like they were cardboard cutouts. One dumbass tried creeping up from behind with a sword, thinking he had a shot. Spoiler, he didn't. That blade didn't even stand a 0.01% chance against Wancheol's fist. Dude cracked it like a breadstick and launched the guy flying. Man went crashing a full 30M like some ragged doll in a physics demo. At this point, Wancheol had already bodied hundreds of these nobodies, and still not a single high rank showed up. That ticked him off. He wasn't here to waste time punching small fries. He wanted the real deal. Meanwhile, the small fry Titan members were finally realizing what they were dealing with. This guy wasn't just strong, he was a damn gorilla in human skin. And yeah, since this was way above their paycheck level, survival mode kicked in. Most were ready to dip and save their asses before they got smashed. But of course, there's always that one clown in the squad. Some wannabe leader decided to go full hero mode and yelled for everyone to charge together, no matter what. And just like in every bad anime speech, he threw in the classic, "If we fight together, we can win morale boost." Sounds lame as hell, right? But the sad part is, these poor bastards actually bought it. They screamed, they charged, and yep, game over. The second the charge started, it ended. Within minutes, the whole crew got folded, stomped, and left in a pile of unconscious regret. Bodies everywhere, and Wancheol still standing like nothing happened. But even after that, the dude was fuming. Still no sign of the guildmaster. He was done waiting. So he marched right up to Titan HQ and yelled his lungs out, daring the boss to come out, or else he was going to tear the entire damn building down, brick by brick. Out of the thick smoke, Juntae came storming in like a whole damn wrecking ball, charging straight at Wancheol without hesitation. No warning, no chill, just straight up chaos. Dude even started taunting him mid-charge, calling him a wild-ass gorilla who'd lost it. Wancheol, still processing the madness, wasn't ready for this scene. Like, why the hell was Juntae here? But Jun wasn't there to talk or explain. He came with hands, ready to throw down. Without missing a beat, he grabbed Wancheol by the collar and straight up launched him through the damn forest, telling that he's the new guildmaster now. Wancheol got yeeted across a full 50 meters like a rag doll, trees snapping and crashing under his tanky-ass frame, making collateral damage. But even mid-air, the man didn't fold. He managed to stick the landing, all serious now, and shot back a sharp look, trying to figure out what happened to Seo Sangho. But Juntae, full smug mode, said Seo Sangho's already halfway to the afterlife, and Wancheol could catch up for a friendly reunion once he's dead too. Just toxic levels of confidence. That was all Wancheol needed to snap. His fist clenched, his vibe turned deadly, and the air straight up shifted. No more holding back. This wasn't some sparring match. It was a real S-rank clash about to go off. Two monsters with zero common sense. Fight begins. Meanwhile, young Seok pulled up to an absolute mess. Titan guild members laid out, wrecked, and busted. Without wasting a second, he told his guy to call on the clerics ASAP, but the reply hit different. Every damn cleric was already locked in other fights across the city. And not just clerics. Even regular hunters from the Titan guild were deep in combat. Every single branch tangled up in this chaos. That info smacked young Seok like a truck. His brain started piecing things together. The troop movement, the timing, the solo attack from Wancheol. It all lined up too perfectly. That bastard had planned this from a jump. The whole damn war was just a smokescreen. His real target, the main base. And with everyone distracted, the guy was already on his way to wipe it clean. Normally, a stunt that reckless would be suicide, but Joe Wancheol wasn't your average dumbass. He was an S-rank menace, and with that kind of power, he could pull off wild shit like this. In the end, it all came down to one thing. This war wasn't going to be won by numbers or strategy. It would all be decided by the final showdown. Kang Juntae versus Joe Wancheol. One fight to settle it all. Now, cut to my favorite elf girl, Lucia. She'd been staring at that magic circle for days, deep in full-on analysis mode, trying to crack its secrets. And honestly, she still had a ton of shit to figure out, but she was dead set on one thing. If she could decode this whole thing, maybe she'd find a way back to her own world. Then out of nowhere, her stomach let out a loud growl. Hunger hit her like a sneak attack. She knew once she bounced from this world, all the snacks and weird foods here would be off the table forever. So she figured might as well enjoy the local flavor while she still could. While munching was on her mind, her thoughts drifted to Jinhyuk. She looked kind of tense for a sec, a flicker of worry showing on her face. Deep down, she was hoping nothing bad had happened to him. Back in the middle of the S-rank showdown, Wancheol was throwing heavy-ass punches while Juntae was holding it down with his spear, playing defense like a pro. Then out of nowhere, Juntae launched himself into the air like a missile, aiming straight through with his spear. Wancheol didn't flinch, whipped out a shield just in time. The hit landed, and the shockwave was straight up earth-shattering. The entire area shook like a damn earthquake just rolled through. One of the tall buildings nearby couldn't handle the pressure and started collapsing, and right under that falling chaos, our boy was just standing there, calm as hell, not even twitching. Watching those two wreck half the damn city had him hella pissed. He'd heard the rumors before. S-rankers were walking disasters. But now, seeing it go down in real time, it finally clicked. That wasn't just hype, it was facts. So he locked in, took a stance, and started charging up his bat like some baseball warlord. Then boom, he swung that thing, launching a cross-strike mid-air. The blast split the crashing building clean in half, slicing it like butter. And just like that, his confidence shot through the roof. Our dude was now fully convinced he could take both of those bastards down without a sweat. While the battle raged on, Wancheol admitted that Juntae was tougher than he looked. But that moment of respect instantly got nuked when Jun fired back, calling him a scared-ass chicken. And right before things could explode between them, a voice cut through the chaos, snapping both their attention. Out of nowhere, Jinhyuk blitzed in between them, slamming his bat down hard enough to make both those bastards stumble back like they got hit by a truck. Juntae stood there, shook for a second, trying to figure out what the hell just happened. Meanwhile, Jinhyuk low-key felt bad for showing up a bit late. He had planned to clap both of them in one clean strike. Juntae, on the other hand, just stare at this so-called loser, wondering why some nobody was interrupting a brawl between two S-rankers. But in the background, Wancheol was picking up on something different. That aura, that heavy, chilling pressure oozing off Jinhyuk. He couldn't tell where the hell this ominous hunter even came from. Jinhyuk clocked Wancheol immediately. Tyrant Guildmaster, the same piece of shit who fed countless women to Alron like sacrifices. Dude was human garbage. And another side was Juntae, the other scumbag. Jinhyuk looked them both dead in the face, asking if they were even hunters anymore, or just wild animals in disguise. He made them take a hard look at the city they'd wrecked. Civilians were caught in the crossfire, bodies on the ground, blood in the streets. People who had nothing to do with this war were now dead or barely clinging to life, and he straight up called them out, demanding to know if they ever felt a shred of shame or guilt for any of it. Just like expected, Juntae laughed it off like it was a damn joke. That bastard didn't give a single shit, called the civilians pathetic insects, said he couldn't care less if they lived or died. To him, they were bugs meant to be crushed without a second thought. He even mocked Jinhyuk for caring, saying he thought Seo Sangho was the only self-righteous clown out here. But apparently, there was another one now. Double the cringe in his eyes. At that moment, Jinhyuk realized these bastards weren't just trash. They were worse than animals, beyond saving. And honestly, he was kind of grateful. They just made his job easier. Now he could kill them both without a guilt. Jinhyuk raised his bat and aimed it straight at Juntae. Dude was hyped and ready to throw down. Juntae felt the heat instantly, all fired up, swearing to end Jinhyuk for real this time. He told Wancheol to pause their beef for a sec. He had to deal with this bat-swinging bastard first. Wancheol had zero complaints. If these two wrecked each other, he'd just slide in and scoop the win easy. But plot twist, Jinhyuk threw them both a curveball. He told them to come at him together. Yeah, man said he's down for a 2 versus 1 brawl. Juntae wasn't about to take that kind of disrespect. No way was he playing bottom in this fight. He blasted forward, spear locked in, and went full send. But just as the tip lunged in, Jinhyuk dropped a shield like it was nothing. Spear hit, and the shock waves rippled out. Juntae was shook. He didn't understand how the hell a C-rank guy can tank his strongest shot like that. Then came the real slap. Jinhyuk saw the opening and went in. Juntae, quick on the reflex, yanked his spear back and blocked, but still got rocked. The impact sent him stumbling like he just got hit by a truck. Wan Cheol, watching from the side, was left with his jaw hanging. During his own fight with Juntae, he could never push him back like that, not even close. Now Juntae is straight up pissed, full rage mode, regretting heavy that he didn't finish Jinhyuk back when he had the chance. Jinhyuk didn't disagree. Last time he barely got away by the skin of his teeth, but this round, nah, this one's different. Jinhyuk's not here to run. He's here to repay the humiliation Juntae dropped on him, and he's doing it with force. Juntae was getting real fed up. Scrapping with Jinhyuk turned out way more annoying than he thought. He didn't expect the guy to level up this fast, but then an idea hit him. Out of nowhere, he yelled loud enough for Wan Cheol to hear, throwing shade at Jinhyuk and accusing him of snatching the Alrauni elixir. That got instant reaction. Wan Cheol perked up like a hound, catching a scent, and pressed him hard, wanting to know what the hell he was talking about. Juntae doubled down, claiming Jinhyuk was the one who killed all and pocketed the elixir. The gorilla was fuming now. Dude was all fire and smoke, demanding answers, ready to pop. And Jinhyuk, he just flashed a smug little smirk, digging into his pocket like he was pulling a rabbit out of a hat. What he pulled out instead was a stone, and with that same smirk, he flashed it to Wan Cheol like this. "What you're looking for." That was it. Wan Cheol lost it. He charged like a beast, but Jinhyuk wasn't sweating. He slipped past the first hit like it was nothing. Dodged the second one smooth too, quick on his feet. The third strike, though, came straight down from above, way harder to dodge, but the hit smashed the floor instead, while Jinhyuk launched himself high into the air. Mid-air, he realized that last attack wasn't just flashy, it could have seriously wrecked him if it landed. And just then, while floating above the chaos, his eyes locked on something, a drone hovering with a camera. That thing was live streaming everything, broadcasting the S-rank throwdown in real time. The footage showed an unknown hunter suddenly stepping into a clash between two top-tier monsters, and not just holding his own, but actually surviving a full-on 2v1. Somewhere off-scene, Miss Lee was grinning. Everything was clicking into place exactly like she'd planned. She was the one who tipped off the media and the spotlight. This was the stage she'd been setting. Back at Battlefield, Juntae straight up can't believe what he's seeing. Our boy is dancing around every swing from the Tyrant Guildmaster like the damn warm-up drill. Not only dodging, but his counters are brutal as hell, landing clean every single time. Juntae starts tripping out, wondering how the hell he got this strong. Meanwhile, Wan Cheol is out here getting his ass handed to him by a hunter younger than him. Dude gets slammed to the ground, scrapes himself up, and then has the nerve to ask if the kid's holding back. That thought pisses him off even more, like this brat is looking down on him. He yells at Jun to stay the hell out. He's dead set that he'll be the one to take our boy down. Wan Cheol goes full rage mode, charging in with all his strength, talking about how things are going to be different now. Spoiler, it's pure cope. He's still whiffing every damn hit. Jinhyuk smacks him back with bare fists, drops a cold line that nothing looks different, then steps in and cracks him with a bat. The big bastard barely manages to block, arms shaking. But before he can breathe, here comes Juntae from behind, trying to get slick with a sneak attack. Too bad Jinhyuk is on another level. He blocks it with his bat without even looking. The clash is so insane it shatters Juntae's spear into worthless splinters. Panic hits him hard as he watches the MC step in, and just a shockwave from the bat swing knocks him on his ass. Backed into a corner, Wan Cheol suddenly suggests teaming up. Crazy, considering these two were just trying to beat the crap out of each other minutes ago. He throws out the idea of an alliance, at least until Jinhyuk is down. Juntae doesn't buy it, so he threatens to kill him if he dares backstab during the deal. Wan Cheol barks at him to quit stalling and fall into position, saying maybe they got a shot if they throw everything they got at our boy together. Meanwhile, the news reporter drops the bomb that the identities of the two S-rank hunters tearing it up in the war have been revealed, but nobody has a clue who the random hunter that just joined them is. On top of that, the Titan Guild's master hasn't said a word. Right when that's mentioned, we cut to see Seo Sang-ho slowly cracking his eyes open in his room. The first thing this stubborn guy does after waking up is get dressed. Man cares more about flexing his guild's pride than taking care of his own body. After suiting up, he looks around for Hyena, wondering where she dipped. Turns out she's on her way to the battlefield when her phone rings. Hearing Sang-ho is finally awake, she's shocked, but quickly catches him up on everything going down. Sang-ho asks her location, and she tells him she's headed straight into the war zone. She even explains that Kang Jinhyuk just formed a new guild and she's riding with him now. That news smacks Sang-ho in the face. It's way too much for the guildmaster to swallow, so he decides, screw it. He'll call Jinhyuk directly, but Hyena tells him no shot. The kid's literally fighting two S-rank monsters at that very moment. Hearing that, Sang-ho jumps up, knowing damn well the kid can't realistically take on two S-ranks no matter how cracked he is. He demands the location, saying he'll go himself. Hyena hesitates, worried his body isn't ready, but Sang-ho bites back that this whole mess started because of him. As guildmaster, he can't just sit while his people fight. Hyena finally agrees and sends him the spot. Still anxious, but trusting his call, she steels herself, thinking this is no time to hesitate. She's got to do what needs to be done. Back at the war zone, Juntae is busting his ass, trying to land even a single clean hit on our boy, but Jinhyuk is clowning him effortlessly, reading his every move and swatting attacks away like it's nothing. The clash gets so heavy that shockwaves ripple across the field. While Jinhyuk's locked on Juntae, The other S-rank tries to sneak him from behind, aiming for the kill, but our boy's too sharp. He hops out of the way, making the two almost smash into each other. Seeing his buddy on the brink, Wanchul tells Juntae to down a mana potion while he keeps the kid busy. Juntae is pissed about teaming up, but he knows the gorilla is right. He chugs the potion, thinking if they dump every ounce of mana into one big hit, maybe they can crush him. Meanwhile, Wanchul is clearly struggling holding the line. Jinhyuk grabs his fist mid-swing, gives him that cold, dead-eye stare, and asks why he isn't just trying to kill him and steal the elixir for himself. He even mocks him to put some damn effort into it. Then, before Wanchul can even react, Jinhyuk snaps his wrist like a twig and smashes him with his bat. Juntae's jaw drops as the mighty Wanchul gets tossed around like a rag doll. Watching him hit the dirt, our boy casually strolls over and asks if he's still breathing. He tells him straight that he can't let him live after all the shit he's done. This was the bastard who lured innocent women, kidnapped them, and threw them up as sacrifices for Alron. The ones who resisted got locked away, while his loyal guild scumbags drowned themselves in drugs. Every ounce of pain he's feeling now is just karma cashing in. On the ground, bleeding and broken, Wanchul can't believe his story's ending in such a pathetic dog's hit way. Jinhyuk lifts the bat over his chest and asks if he's got any last words. With despair in his eyes, the S-rank croaked out if he's really going to kill him over something so trivial. He starts begging like a worm, promising to make Jinhyuk the guildmaster if he just lets him live. But Jinhyuk's done playing games. He tells him the only reason he asked for last words was to give him that one final dignity. His decision was set the moment he saw those captives waiting for death like cattle. Wanchul still doesn't get it, still whining about why kidnapping a few people should seal his fate, but none of that matters. Jinhyuk knows well that he has every reason to finish him. Without hesitation, he drives the bat straight through his chest, ending it. The S-rank screams in agony, thinking he can't die like this, but his cries mean nothing, and slowly the light fades from his eyes as his body goes limp. Jinhyuk coldly reminds him to apologize to every single soul he slaughtered when he reaches the afterlife. Meanwhile, Juntae is standing there shaking like a bitch, torn between swinging at Jinhyuk while he's distracted or just bailing out, but his eyes give him away. He already knows he's screwed. The only thought in his head is running, but it's already too damn late. Jinhyuk clocks him trying to sneak off and whips his bat at him like a bullet, telling him where the hell does he think he's going. The S-rank barely manages to deflect it, and tries to act all cool, claiming he isn't running, just letting Jinhyuk off this time. He convinces himself he's faster and can outrun him, but reality hits when Jinhyuk catches up instantly and tells him he doesn't need to hold back anymore. At the same time, Seo Sangho and Hyena reach the ruins of the battleground. She guides him to the spot, warning him he'll hit the battle zone once he passes it. Before he leaves, she begs him to reconsider, but the guy's already set. He can't dump everything on Jinhyuk. He has to fight, too. Hyena urges him to rest, but Sangho insists he'll finish what he started. She finally relents, asking him not to push himself past his limit. As he heads out, Sangho looks at the sky and mutters for Jinhyuk to wait for him. On another rooftop, Youngsok watches the whole mess unfold. He's pissed that the fight spiraled out of control. It should have been a clean duel between two S-ranks, but then someone stronger had to crash the party. Seeing no way to save Juntae, he decides to cut his losses. His dream has always been building the greatest guild, and Seo Sangho was in his way, so he poisoned him, clearing the path to his own twisted goal. Now, staring at Jinhyuk, Youngsok decides to let him live for now, planning to escape and twist public opinion in his favor later. But before Sangho left to help Jinhyuk, Hyena had told him something crucial. While monitoring the fight with drones, she spotted Youngsok on top of the Titan building. Back in the present, the guildmaster suddenly appears behind the traitor, making Youngsok freeze in pure disbelief. Before he can react, Sangho snarls his name and grabs him by the collar, demanding why the hell he betrayed his own guild. Youngsok stares him down and says the guild doesn't need him anymore. That stings, and Sangho demands to know what he means. Youngsok doubles down, saying Sangho was holding the guild back and was useless. But Seo Sangho sees through the bullshit. He calls him out, saying, all of this is just greed, dressed up as excuses. Youngseok pushes back, claiming he saved the guild from destruction. Sangho shuts that down hard, telling him the guild is collapsing because of his betrayal and the chaos he orchestrated. Cornered, the traitor pulls a knife and lunges at him, but even half-healed, Sangho dodges easily, spitting that he's a disappointment to the very end. Youngseok uses the moment to bolt, running with the delusion that his only crime was trying to create the greatest guild. He blames Jinhyuk for screwing it all up, and leaps off the building. The guildmaster isn't about to let him get away. He charges after him, summoning his axe midair. With one brutal swing, he slams it into Youngseok's skull, roaring at him to take responsibility for the disaster he caused. Blood sprays as his head splits open and his body crashes to the ground below. Sangho stands over him, declaring that his duty is finally done. But the victory sours in an instant as he remembers Jinhyuk. He wasted too much time chasing the traitor. Without hesitation, he sprints toward the battlefield to back up the MC. Meanwhile, our boy is straight up wrecking the S rank like it's child's play. Juntae takes a nasty hit to the chest, gasping like his lungs are on fire, barely able to breathe. Jinhyuk points his bat right at him, making it clear this is the end of the road. Juntae already knows he's tapped out. There's no miracle, no way out. Desperate as hell, he starts begging like a bitch, offering everything he's got, even his damn guild position, if it means living another day. But Jinhyuk isn't buying that crap. He remembers the last time they clashed. When he was bleeding out from a spear wound, he never begged, never folded. He fought till his last breath. That memory just makes Juntae's whining look even more pathetic. The S-ranker keeps pleading anyway, clinging to life like a coward. Jinhyuk shuts him down with one cold line. If you want to live, you better fight till your last damn breath. Before Juntae can spit out another word, Jinhyuk swings and smashes his head clean off his body. No hesitation, no mercy. Silence hits. The S-rank's corpse hits the ground, and Jinhyuk just stands there, soaking in the fact that he finally took down an S-rank hunter with his own strength. For once, it wasn't luck. It wasn't backup. It was him. Then, out of nowhere, he hears Seo Sangho's voice calling out, asking if he's hurt. Jinhyuk spins, shocked as hell to see the guildmaster alive and walking like nothing happened. He blurts out, "When the hell did he wake up?" Sangho says, "Chill. He woke up a while ago and already recovered." He then looks around and asks what the hell went down here. Jinhyuk tells him it's a long story, but the short version is that he got a chance to power up and he grabbed it. Thanks to that, he was able to solo those S-rank bastards. Sangho just stares, struggling to believe that Jinhyuk could jump in strength so insanely fast. Catching that doubt, Jinhyuk tells him he'll explain everything later. For now, they got to deal with the city that just got wrecked. Sangho waves it off, saying not to stress it. He and Hyena will handle the mess. What matters now is the message he got from Hyena. The association wants to meet Jinhyuk. The scene shifts to the training room inside the Hunter Association headquarters, where Jinhyuk stands in confusion. He had accepted their invitation to come here, yet he still doesn't understand why they're making him go through this process. A voice informs him that this is a test, and his task is to destroy the drones ahead while dodging their attacks. Before he can even wrap his head around what's happening, the drones immediately launch their assault, forcing him to instinctively decide that taking them out first would be the best option. The drones come at him from every direction, making it increasingly difficult to dodge. But compared to the fight he had earlier against the S-rank hunters, this feels like nothing more than a light warm-up. With a confident smile, he starts swinging his bat and destroys the drones one by one. It doesn't take long before he clears all of them out. The voice then announces that he has just set a new record. Jinhyuk looks at the screen in front of him, clearly annoyed, and says that he's starting to get irritated since no one informed him about this test in advance. On the other side, a pink-haired girl explains that this is part of the official procedure to determine his proper rank as a hunter. After his recent fight, where he single-handedly defeated 2 S-ranks, the association can no longer categorize him as a C rank. Still, Jinhyuk considers the whole test pointless. His temper flares as he demands they open the door so he can leave. The girl tries to calm him down, but he refuses to cooperate. As he walks toward the door, she frantically warns that he cannot leave until the test is completed. To everyone's shock, he simply smashes through the door with his bat and walks out, calling it nothing but a waste of his time. But the association isn't ready to let him go just yet. After a few steps, he finds himself blocked by a group of hunters. He warns them to step aside if they value their lives, and since they've already witnessed his overwhelming power, they know he isn't bluffing. Unsure of what to do, the hunters look to their team leader for a command, but the man doesn't move an inch. Realizing this, Jinhyuk prepares to strike, convinced they've chosen death. Just then, a voice from behind orders him to stop. Before Jinhyuk even turns around, the hunters suddenly bow in respect, calling the newcomer chairman. It dawns on him that the man behind him is none other than No Teksu, the chairman of the Hunter Association. Jinhyuk greets him and bluntly asks why a C rank like him was summoned here. Noticing his irritation, the chairman apologizes and explains that the real reason he was called is because someone else wanted to meet him. That someone turns out to be the strongest hunter in all of South Korea, Cheon Sanho. Even Jinhyuk is left stunned to see the #1 hunter standing before him. As Cheon approaches with his immaculate style, Jinhyuk can't help but wonder why a man of his level would want to meet him. Cheon steps forward and shakes his hand, creating a moment that feels almost surreal. When Jinhyuk asks why he wanted to meet, Cheon explains that he watched the footage of his recent fight with the 2 S ranks. He compliments Jinhyuk's performance and says he simply wanted to meet him in person. Jinhyuk thanks him politely, though deep down he feels there must be more behind this. Sure enough, the top-ranked hunter reveals that he actually wants to ask Jinhyuk for a favor. Meanwhile, elsewhere, Seo Sango and Hyena are sitting together over tea in his apartment. Hyena informs him that, based on their latest findings, the remnants of the Tyrant Guild and the Titan Guild have officially merged into a new group called the Pantheon Guild, with the association's approval. She apologizes, admitting she did everything she could to save the guild. Seo Sangho, however, tells her that disbanding it was the right decision. He reflects with a bit of regret, thinking that perhaps he could have avoided this downfall if he had listened more to his guild members in the past. With that, he announces his retirement from the hunting world. Hyena then slides a contract form toward him, telling him that it would be a waste for him to retire now. Curious, Sangho glances at the document and realizes it's a registration form for the Pantheon Guild. She explains that the guild needs someone of his caliber, and their guild master believes the same. When he asks her if she has already joined them, she playfully winks and confirms that she is now a member of the Pantheon Guild. Meanwhile, Jinhyuk and Cheon stood face to face, ready for a duel. The whole situation felt bizarre to him. First, he was thrown into some test room, and now the strongest hunter in the entire country wanted to fight him. In the monitoring room, the chairman and a girl were watching the match live on their screen. She couldn't believe Cheon had come to the HQ on his own, since he was hardly ever seen in public. The chairman explained that he had met Cheon earlier, and after watching Jin Hyuk's fight against two hunters, Cheon claimed he had finally found someone worth fighting alongside, or maybe even a rival. When Jin Hyuk asked why they were fighting, the top hunter admitted he wasn't sure himself. Still, Jin Hyuk wasn't the type to back away from a challenge, so he braced himself for the fight. The girl grew uneasy, and asked the chairman if they were really going to let this happen, but he laughed and said it was fine. It was just a normal spar. Back in the arena, Cheon summoned his sword, and both hunters told each other to give it their all. Jin Hyuk smirked, thinking that rankings meant nothing to him. All he wanted was payback for the hell Cheon had once put him through. Meanwhile, Hyena was shocked to get a call from the association telling her the top-ranked hunter was about to spar with Jin Hyuk. Seo Sangho noticed her worried expression and asked what was going on. Putting the phone down, she said that Cheon Sanho was going to fight the MC. Concerned, Sangho asked why, but she didn't know either. Thinking Jin Hyuk could be in danger, the two decided to rush to the hunter association. Back at the fight, both hunters waited patiently for the other to slip up. The girl asked the chairman what he thought about the match. Just then, the two charged at each other, and their weapons clashed with a thunderous impact. The chairman confidently stated that the top-ranked hunter would win, but in reality, the two seemed evenly matched as they were both pushed back. Jin Hyuk realized Cheon was on a completely different level compared to the other S-rank hunters he had beaten earlier. Deciding it was useless to test the waters, he went all in from the start, releasing a powerful aura shockwave at Chan. Standing firm, Chan wondered if Jin Hyuk was truly ready to give it his all. That was reason enough for him to get serious too. He sliced clean through the aura and charged forward with a counterattack, determined to push Jin Hyuk to his limits. Watching from the screen, the girl grew nervous as the fight escalated. Even Jin Hyuk could feel the overwhelming power radiating from Cheon, but instead of being scared, he got excited. Swinging his bat, he thought this was finally a chance to test his limits. But to his surprise, Cheon suddenly told him they couldn't continue. Confused, Jin Hyuk demanded to know what he meant. Cheon then declared that he had lost. The chairman was stunned. This was the first time he had ever seen Cheon admit defeat. When asked why he ended the spar so suddenly, Cheon raised his sword, which immediately shattered into pieces. He explained that if they had continued, it wouldn't have held up. With that, the chairman officially declared the duel over, and announced Jin Hyuk as an S-rank hunter. It didn't take long for the news to spread. Media outlets replayed Jin Hyuk's fights with S-rank hunters, and reported that he had even defeated the nation's top hunter. Interviews followed, and when Cheon was questioned, he admitted it was true and said Jin Hyuk would undoubtedly become the face of Korea's hunter world. Meanwhile, Jin Hyuk felt a little let down that the fight had ended so soon. He had wanted more. As he walked away from the association, Cheon called out to him and congratulated him on becoming an S-class hunter. Jin Hyuk thanked him, but asked why he went that far for him. Cheon explained that he simply wanted comrades to fight alongside, and also wanted the association to acknowledge Jin Hyuk's strength. As he turned to leave, Jin Hyuk stopped him, telling him not to hold back next time. They both knew the sword Cheon used was a fake. Walking away, Jin Hyuk realized Cheon had been holding back on purpose, maybe even helping him gain recognition. Either way, he now understood something important. Despite everything, he still wasn't strong enough. Later, Jin Hyuk heads to the parking lot just as Hyena's car screeches to a stop. She jumps out, clearly worried, and rushes over to check on him, with Sangho following right behind, just as concerned. Hyena admits she couldn't believe what she heard about the spar. Sangho is furious too, angry that the association had dismissed it as just a sparring match, when in reality they'd thrown Jin Hyuk against the strongest hunter in the country. He even suggests filing a complaint, but Jin Hyuk remains calm, saying he isn't upset. In fact, he explains that he actually learned a lot. Fighting Cheon reminded him of the intense pressure he once felt at the Dragon Temple. He then suggests they head back to the guild and talk it over. That evening, Jin Hyuk finally feels relaxed for the first time in a long while. He reflects on how rare it is to feel at peace. Constant fighting had kept him on edge, but now he can finally breathe. Just then, his phone rings. It's Jun Cheol, the guild manager, calling to check in after the fight with Cheon. He asks if Jin Hyuk is okay and warns him not to push himself too hard. Strength matters, but staying alive is just as important since he's the guild master. Jin Hyuk appreciates the concern and promises to take care of himself. Then he shifts the topic, asking how the guild is doing. Jun Cheol brings good news. They've officially taken over the assets of the Titan and Tyrant guilds. Their biggest rivals are gone, and new hunting zones have been opened. These areas are already buzzing with activity, strengthening the guild and protecting their territory from others. He invites Jin Hyuk to visit soon, and Jin Hyuk agrees. After the call, exhaustion settles in. He wants nothing more than to rest, but responsibilities weigh heavier. Instead of relaxing, he decides to head into a dungeon to catch up with Cheon. On the way, he stops by the dwarf craftsman's workshop for help. The dwarf, however, isn't thrilled to see him, grumbling that Jin Hyuk only shows up when he needs something. Jin Hyuk apologizes and explains that he needs his weapon upgraded. The dwarf complains further, saying Jin Hyuk always disappears when given errands, making him unreliable. Jin Hyuk insists he had his reasons and promises to make up for it. When he mentions the spar with Cheon, the dwarf blows up, furious, grabbing the weapon and demanding to know if Jin Hyuk actually lost while using the bat he crafted. Offended but not refusing, the dwarf says Jin Hyuk is lucky. He had been wanting to test out a new technique, Anyway, Jinhyuk tries to thank him, but the dwarf cuts him off, saying this isn't kindness. He simply wants to prove himself as a craftsman. As Jinhyuk leaves, his thoughts drift toward Lucha. He realizes he hasn't seen her in a while, and that she might hold the answer to something that's been bothering him. With a hint of hope, he heads deeper into the dungeon to find her. But along the way, he can't shake the uneasy feeling that he's forgetting something important, though he can't put his finger on what it is. When he finally finds Lucia, she's furious, almost punching him the moment she sees him, demanding why he came without bringing anything. Jinhyuk brushes it off, saying he was looking for her, then asks if she's really been in the dungeon this whole time. Lucia confirms it, explaining that she's been working on a magic circle, her only hope of returning to her world. She's made progress, which catches Jinhyuk's attention. He asks if she'll be able to go back soon, but Lucia sighs and shakes her head. It's not that simple. She explains she's tested her dimensional magic several times, and each time it feels perfect. The steps are right, the energy is right, the spell should work, but in the end, nothing happens. No matter what she does, the result is always the same: nothing. As she's saying this, something strange stirs. Back in Jinhyuk's fridge, a portal begins to open. The next morning, Jinhyuk heads to the local supermarket and buys some snacks for Lucia so she won't complain later. As he's about to leave, the cashier suddenly asks if he's Guildmaster Kang Jinhyuk. Looking confused, he admits it, which excites the girl. She says she's a huge fan and asks for a photo. He then notices other people snapping pictures of him as well. Not wanting to draw more attention, he quickly apologizes and bolts out of the store. On his way back to the cave, he realizes he's far more well known than he thought. The dwarf finally shows him a new weapon, claiming it's on a completely different level from the last one. As soon as Jinhyuk grabs the bat, he feels it draining his mana. He wonders if something's wrong with it, but the dwarf takes it as an insult and smacks him in the face. He reminds Jinhyuk about the Alrone he purified earlier, explaining that he used it to upgrade the bat. Normally, cores from monsters carry their traits. In Alrone's case, it should have absorbed life, but thanks to Jinhyuk's purification, it now absorbs mana instead. Since it's draining him, that means the weapon is working perfectly. Jinhyuk still worries it might suck out all of his mana, but the dwarf reassures him that it will stop after reaching its limit. Sure enough, the bat soon stops absorbing, signaling that it's fully charged. The dwarf explains that Jinhyuk can use the stored mana whenever he wants. To test it, Jinhyuk swings the bat toward his statue, releasing a powerful shockwave of mana. The dwarf is slightly impressed that he managed to control it so well on his first try. Jinhyuk thanks him for the enhancement, but the dwarf brushes it off, saying he only wants booze. As they chat, the dwarf asks about his plans, and Jinhyuk mentions he's going to see Lucia. Just hearing her name makes it obvious the dwarf dislikes her. Curious, Jinhyuk asks why. With a serious look, the old man says, it's a long story. Dwarves and elves have always been at war. He reveals that the elves once sold their own people to the dragons, a revelation that shocks Jinhyuk and makes him realize how deep the hatred runs between the two races. Later, when he meets Lucia, she immediately yells at him for being late. He asks why she called him to the temple when she usually stays in the boss's room. Instead of answering directly, she tells him to look around, and he realizes the entrance temple is gone. She believes it vanished before he cleared the dragon's trial. During a recent investigation, she also discovered a dimensional teleportation magic circle, even more advanced than the one the mage used in the boss room. Looking at him seriously, she asks if he understands what this means. Jinhyuk quickly figures it out. If they study the circle, he might be able to return to his original dimension, but there's a catch. Lucia can't activate it on her own, even if they manage to complete it, which means he'll need to learn magic from her to help with the activation. Jinhyuk asks her again to confirm if she really means that he should learn magic from her. She affirms, explaining that the magic circle demands an enormous amount of mana, and she can't power it alone. Even with his help, she's unsure they can activate it. Jinhyuk starts brainstorming ways to provide a huge mana boost, and suddenly recalls that his bat could be perfect as it stores mana. He suggests she try using it. Hesitant at first, she changes her mind when he demonstrates mana leaking from the bat. He explains that the old man upgraded it to store mana, and while he doesn't know exactly how much it holds, it might still help activate the circle. When Lucia tries to touch the bat, she gets a massive shock. Even Jinhyuk is puzzled until he remembers that the dwarf engraved a binding effect on it, so only he can wield it. This means the bat isn't usable for them, leaving them with no choice but to teach him magic. She tells him he'll be her student from now on. His first lesson takes place in his apartment, where she even assigns homework while he snacks. Learning isn't as easy as he thought. He has to memorize a huge amount of magical theory, control the flow of mana, and apply it to activate the magic circle. After days of study, he finally grasps the basics of magic. Just as he feels accomplished, she snaps him back, saying that was only the foundation. The real lessons are starting. Lucia goes over her research notes on the magic circle from the boss's room. She explains that the circle failed because a mage had modified it to handle all the mana alone, which required an enormous amount. The teleportation succeeded, but the dungeon appeared in the wrong location, his room. Jinhyuk asks why they're studying a failed circle, and she responds that by comparing it with the Dragon Temple circle, they can identify the flaws and build one that actually works. From that day on, they dive into research to create the perfect magic circle. Jinhyuk steadily improves, eventually learning to channel mana into the circle. He fills the bat with maximum mana and starts transferring it while Lucia assists, signaling him when enough mana has been poured. As they pour mana in, the circle lights up, reacting to the energy. Jinhyuk keeps pumping mana, but suddenly the bat begins leaking aura uncontrollably. He struggles to stop it, and even Lucia is confused, asking why he's injecting aura into the circle. Neither fully understands what's happening, but they work together to keep it stable. Suddenly, the ground beneath them shakes, and the floor under the circle collapses. They manage to jump back in time, avoiding the collapse, but this destroys their only route of return. Furious, Lucia yells at him for causing the circle to vanish. Meanwhile, the portal inside his fridge begins glowing even brighter. Later, the two of them are sitting in his apartment while Lucia munches desperately on snacks. He apologizes, admitting he never expected his bat to start injecting aura into the magic circle. She's still upset and yells at him, pointing out that he doesn't even understand the difference between mana and aura. Jinhyuk is taken aback by her words, but explains that he often uses the bat for fighting, so it's possible he accidentally converted mana into aura. By now, Lucia has calmed down a bit, and acknowledges that she should have checked things before the activation, but it doesn't change the fact that they've lost their chance to reverse the situation, which weighs heavily on him. He reassures her that he'll find a solution and asks if she wants anything. In response, she shouts for him to bring the tastiest, sweetest treats he has. Jinhyuk rushes to the fridge and asks if she wants cake, but the moment he opens it, a strong wave of cold air blasts out. Definitely not normal. He calls her over to check it out, and when she arrives, they both see a completely new world beyond the fridge door. Lucia smiles, realizing that the magic circle didn't actually fail. The snowy landscape is a result of the circle, and from the mana she senses, she believes this is the dimension she once lived in. Though she doesn't understand how the portal appeared inside the fridge, she suggests going in to investigate. Jinhyuk agrees, saying he just needs to take care of a few things first. He immediately calls Juncheol, his guild's co-founder, and asks him to come over, also inviting Hyena to join. When they arrive, Jinhyuk explains that he plans to leave temporarily to train. After his fight with Cheon, he realized he's still not strong enough. Hearing this, Juncheol asks if he has found a way to get stronger. Jinhyuk admits he isn't sure yet, but it might be possible. Hyena hands him a report, noting that the guild is stable for now, but could face difficulties if he's gone too long. Before he can respond, Juncheol stands and reassures him that everything will be fine, saying he'll handle the guild so Jinhyuk can focus on training. Since their guild influence is comparable to his, he can leave and return stronger without worry. Later, Juncheol calls another guild member to inform him that the guildmaster will be away for a while, so he'll take on more responsibilities. The man expresses concern about Jinhyuk leaving at such a critical time, but the co-founder assures him that it's fine. When Jinhyuk returns stronger, their guild's influence will increase, making them the #1 guild in the country. Meanwhile, Lucia awaits while Jinhyuk changes. He emerges wearing a heavy winter coat and apologizes, saying he had more to pack than expected. He then gives her a special bow with some arrows, explaining that the dwarf instructed him to give it to her. She studies the weapon quietly, initially thinking a few arrows aren't a big deal, but her expression changes as she notices the high quality of the arrowheads. Jinhyuk gets excited, saying he thought they were normal arrows since he tossed them casually, and mentions how well the old man looks out for her. Lucia, still hesitant to admit it, remarks that she might have to repay him someday. Finally, they step into the portal, and Jinhyuk immediately notices this is a different dimension. They discuss where to start exploring and come across a mysterious dungeon. Excited, Jinhyuk senses that something is hidden inside. Lucia agrees, and together they decide to enter the dungeon. The dungeon was far larger and deeper than they had expected. The moment they stepped inside, she immediately sensed monsters rushing toward them. Lucia quickly stopped him and warned him to get ready, knowing a fight was imminent. Soon enough, the monsters appeared. It was a group of yetis. They lunged at them ferociously, and she asked him if he could handle the attack. With a confident grin, he assured her he could, summoning his bat and claiming he could take them down with his eyes closed. The two of them began taking out the monsters with ease, Jinhyuk attacking head-on, while Lucia provided support from behind. As the battle went on, she started noticing just how effective his arrows were. Feeling confident, Jinhyuk decided to finish the fight with one final strike. Meanwhile, the dragon god received a message that the apostle had crossed dimensions. Sitting calmly in his chair, he listened and declared that he would meet the apostle soon. The dragon was still puzzled as to why the title of apostle had been given to a human rather than a noble dragonkin. The dragon god explained it was due to the man's destiny. He was born to bring ruin to the world. Meanwhile, a brutal clash unfolded between Jinhyuk and a monstrous creature. He leapt into the air, aiming to end the fight quickly. Without hesitation, he swung his bat like a lightning bolt, striking the creature's skull and killing it instantly. Panting, he opened his inventory and read the monster's name, Yeti. He didn't remember encountering such a creature before. Lucia soon approached and reacted sharply at the mention of Yeti. She explained that Yetis typically live in packs in the mountains. If the creature he had just killed was indeed a Yeti, they needed to leave the cave immediately. Confused, Jinhyuk asked why they had to escape so suddenly. She warned that killing even a single Yeti would likely provoke the entire pack to retaliate, and their combined strength would be brutal and merciless. Before they could discuss further, a blizzard suddenly tore through the tunnel, accompanied by monstrous howls echoing from the shadows. Realizing the danger, Jinhyuk asked why she hadn't mentioned this sooner, and she admitted she had just remembered. With no time to waste, she urged him to run. As they fled, the icy floor beneath them began cracking. Despite the danger, he glanced back at the advancing Yetis, questioning if fleeing was truly necessary. They didn't appear that strong to him. Lucia explained that the threat wasn't only the monsters. The cave's fragile structure meant any battle could collapse the ice and kill them all. Suddenly, he came to a halt. Alarmed, Lucia demanded to know why he had stopped in such a perilous spot. Calmly, he said he had a tool that might help. He pulled out a flash grenade, intending to freeze the monsters in place. Just as he prepared to throw it, the Yetis unexpectedly started retreating into the cave. Both Jinhyuk and Lucia were stunned. The creatures that had been charging at them moments ago now seemed afraid. She peered deeper into the cave and suggested that the Yetis might sense something even more dangerous ahead. Their instincts were warning them not to go further. Jinhyuk was shocked at the thought that something terrifying enough to scare off an entire Yeti pack could exist deeper inside. Lucia confirmed sensing a strange, powerful, magical energy unlike anything she had ever felt before. Dark, twisted, and deeply unsettling. She concluded that the only way to discover more was to press onward. They pressed forward until the tunnel opened up into a vast hidden space. In the center of the mist stood a massive snow-covered structure. Lucia pointed out that this was the source of the dark, magical energy they had been sensing. Jinhyuk decided they needed to investigate it closely. Despite her composure, Lucia remained tense and warned that the aura around the place felt unnaturally disturbing. Even she, who had never known fear in battle, felt a deep unease in her chest, as if something inside the structure was observing them. Elsewhere, in a different shadowed realm, the dragon god sat alone. He murmured that he had finally found what he had been seeking. The last messenger had arrived, and now it was time to wait for what was coming. Meanwhile, Jinhyuk and Lucia began moving toward the temple. The cold was biting, and the air carried a tense, ominous feeling, as if danger lay ahead. As they ventured further, they noticed a man standing silently in the distance. Jinhyuk felt something off about him, and Lucia warned that dark energy emanated from the man. Jinhyuk wondered if the man was still human and suggested trying to speak to him, but Lucia quickly refused, noting she had never felt this kind of mana before. At that moment, the man spoke. His voice was rough, and he said he had not expected anyone to come here, asking if they were sent by him. Jinhyuk replied that they had simply come to investigate, sensing ominous mana, and asked the man his identity. Suddenly, the man became angry, yelling that intruders could not be allowed to leave after seeing this place. The atmosphere grew heavy. Lucia told him to step back immediately, and then she suddenly realized who he was. She explained that he was actually a dragon. The surroundings shifted, and the man transformed into a gigantic red dragon before them. The dragon declared that they had entered a sacred place and must pay the price. Lucia prepared to fight, noting she had faced dragons before. Jinhyuk was shocked, trying to process what had just happened, but readied himself for combat. Then suddenly, everything froze. The wind ceased, the fire went out, and even the dragon and Lucia could not move. Jinhyuk was confused, noticing that Lucia was also immobilized. A deep voice spoke, declaring, "Time has been stopped." A figure appeared in the air, clad in a black cloak. He did not walk on the ground, but seemed to float or tear through space. Jinhyuk asked his identity. The man introduced himself as Ordo, claiming he created the dragon Tiamat and asserting that he was the god of the world. Jinhyuk was surprised, but unsure whether to believe him. Ordo said it did not matter whether he believed him, it was still the truth. Ordo explained that he had been observing humans for a long time. Initially, he appreciated how they lived, but they eventually began fighting each other, causing destruction. Not wanting humanity to destroy itself, he became a god to protect them. He created monsters to provide humans with a common enemy and gave them the power to fight back by turning them into hunters. Initially, this worked, and humans cooperated, but eventually, they turned their powers against one another again. Ordo said Jinhyuk had also misused his power in the same way. He explained that Jinhyuk was never meant to be so strong, and that becoming his apostle required enduring far more trials, but the plan failed due to an anomaly from another dimension. A powerful magician had moved the dungeon into Jinhyuk's room, allowing him to grow stronger earlier than expected. Ordo had tried to destroy the dungeon when Jinhyuk first entered, but the dragon god inside blocked him, so he had to give up. Because of the dungeon's effects, Ordo could not locate him until recently, when the dragon god's presence disappeared, allowing a face-to-face meeting. Ordo revealed that he had already marked Jinhyuk as his apostle long ago. His plan was for Jinhyuk to become a powerful protector of humanity, capable of bringing peace and ruling at the top of the world. He offered Jinhyuk this position as his rightful place, but added a threat. Refusal would mean death for merely seeing this place. Jinhyuk considered it, then calmly declined. He admitted that he once desired such power and destiny, but he refused to follow Ordo. He accused Ordo of knowing the pain he had endured and doing nothing to help, making the request to serve as his apostle feel like manipulation. Jinhyuk declared he would rather die fighting than become someone's puppet. Ordo laughed at the response, calling him foolish for failing to understand his grander plans. Changing his approach, Ordo floated higher, declaring that if Jinhyuk would not join willingly, he would use another method. He introduced Timut, a creature he created after capturing an ancient dragon from another world. He claimed it was his most powerful creation and that nothing, not hunters nor monsters, could stop it. Ordo planned to use Timut to destroy everything and build a new world populated only by those who love peace, with Jinhyuk as the first sacrifice. Even when faced with this terrifying threat, our boy doesn't flinch. He clenches his teeth and tells Ordo to go ahead, charging straight at the dragon-like creature, a move that looks almost suicidal. Ordo is impressed by Jinhyuk's courage, but dismisses it as meaningless, claiming he'll only be left behind. Meanwhile, Deep underground, the old dwarf is finishing crafting a shiny new set of armor. Talking to himself, he mentions it took longer than expected because the old armor was completely worn out. He recalls Jinhyuk and jokes that the guy better bring him some good booze as thanks. He reminisces about how weak Jinhyuk used to be when they first met, but has since grown into one of the continent's strongest warriors, probably aided by that loud elf along the way. He wonders what they'll bring back this time, laughing at the thought that it might even be a dragon. Back at the battle, Ordo snaps his fingers, and a massive creature suddenly comes to life. Its eyes glow, muscles ripple, and it starts moving. Lucia regains consciousness and realizes the danger, shouting at Jinhyuk to be careful. The dragon unleashes a massive fire blast aimed at him. Jinhyuk tries to dodge, but the attack is too fast, and he gets swallowed whole. Lucia is horrified and screams in despair. Ordo smiles coldly, mocking him for making a dramatic speech, only to be taken out so quickly. But then a growl comes from inside the dragon's mouth. Jinhyuk is still alive. From within, he forces the dragon's jaws open, roaring in defiance, causing the dragon pain. Overwhelmed with relief, Lucia asks if he's okay. Jinhyuk confirms he is, and declares he won't allow someone like Ordo to destroy the world, vowing to stop him no matter what. Ordo laughs, finding the determination amusing, and comments that all Jinhyuk will feel in the end is crushing despair. Meanwhile, Hyena receives a call from the guild's co-founder, who informs her that the association has issued a mandatory summons. Confused, she asks why, but he admits he doesn't know the exact reason. Dungeons are appearing across the city, including their own jurisdiction, so their cooperation is requested. She promises to notify the other guild members immediately. After hanging up, Sango asks what's going on. She explains that a massive number of gates have appeared in Region 9, intriguingly close to Jinhyuk's home. Back at the battle, Jinhyuk remains trapped inside Timut, the dragon's mouth. Lucia fears he might burn alive if he doesn't escape soon. He struggles, but the dragon's strength keeps him pinned. Suddenly, the elf shoots an arrow straight into the dragon's head, causing it to scream in pain and open its mouth, giving Jinhyuk a chance to break free. Despite taking a direct hit, the dragon appears unharmed. As Jinhyuk hits the ground, the dragon swoops toward him to finish him off. He quickly gets back on his feet, realizing the creature isn't giving him a moment to recover. The dragon slams down, using all its power to crush him. At the same time, Lucia attempts another arrow shot, but the dragon strikes her with its tail before she can release it, sending her flying. Jinhyuk finally understands the dragon's immense strength, seeing how easily it knocked her away. With her down, the dragon turns back to him. Feeling the immense pressure, Jinhyuk knows he must go all out. Ordo seems slightly disappointed, thinking it's over, and orders the dragon to finish him. Yet, something is wrong. No matter how hard the dragon tries, it cannot crush Jinhyuk. Shocked, the dragon struggles to believe that a mere human can endure its power. Jinhyuk counters with all his strength. Channeling the power he gained from the dragon's temple, he unleashes it with a roar, forcing the dragon to recoil. Even Ordo is stunned, unable to comprehend that Jinhyuk can wield the power of the dragon god. Meanwhile, the dragon god sat on his throne, declaring that the time had come to act since his apostle had finally awakened to his true power. Rising from his throne, he proclaimed that he would settle their long-standing grudge once and for all. In the other dimension, Ordo sensed the shift in energy immediately, recognizing it as a sign of the dragon god's arrival. Even Jinhyuk felt something unusual, surprised by the immense strength of the dragon god. On top of that, he noticed the dragon mark on his wrist. Ordo also saw the symbol above him and wondered if the dragon god had truly chosen him as his apostle. Knowing he had to finish his task before the dragon god appeared, he ordered the dragon to kill him at once. Timut obeyed instantly, sending a massive wave of fire toward him. Surprisingly, the fire that had seemed so threatening a moment ago no longer intimidated him. He felt confident he could defeat the dragon. Suddenly, a voice told him to stop, and for a moment, time itself seemed frozen. Jinhyuk assumed Ordo was behind it and shouted at him, asking if he had something to say. Ordo, equally confused, denied stopping time. At the same time, the dragon god's voice reached him, asking why it had been so difficult to locate him. His eyes widened as he finally realized the dragon god had arrived far sooner than Ordo expected. Looking up, he saw the elder flying above and asked what he was doing there. The dragon god turned to Ordo, accusing him of kidnapping a dragon that was like a child to him, and transforming it into the monstrous Timut. He questioned why Ordo had done such a thing, despite knowing it was wrong. Ordo tried to justify his actions, claiming he did it for the sake of his world, expecting the god to understand. The dragon god saw through the lies, pointing out that turning his child into a monster to destroy a world was unnecessary and done purely for Ordo's own satisfaction. Even now, Ordo attempted to kill his apostle out of personal dislike. Furious, Ordo insisted he had only acted to bring peace to his world, viewing it as a minor sacrifice for the greater good. The dragon god then addressed Jinhyuk, asking if any of Ordo's reasoning made sense. Our protagonist lunged at Ordo, declaring it all nonsense. Ordo asked if he even understood the situation, noting that he was interrupting a conversation between gods. Ordo tried snapping his fingers to stop time, but nothing happened. Shocked, he realized his powers had no effect on Jinhyuk. The dragon god explained that Jinhyuk was facing his proxy, someone capable of wielding dragon power, a human with god-level strength. It was time for Ordo to be defeated by the very being he had looked down upon. Without hesitation, Jinhyuk swung his bat at him. Ordo blocked the attack, but Jinhyuk's overwhelming strength quickly gained the upper hand, screaming that they didn't need a god intent on destroying their world. Jinhyuk threw Ordo to the ground. The impact caused a massive explosion, shrouding the area in smoke. Opening his eyes, Jinhyuk found himself in a different spatial plane. Ordo stood before him, urging him him not to worry. Seeking answers, Jinhyuk asked Ordo what he intended. Ordo revealed that he had simply altered the dimensions to facilitate conversation. He admitted he had lost the fight, and acknowledged that Jinhyuk's strike had completely changed his perspective, teaching him that being a god did not mean knowing everything. Consequently, Ordo decided to abandon his previous plans and instead oversee the entire world. As his form began to fade, he told Jinhyuk he would now supervise everything. Determined to prove himself wrong, Jinhyuk hesitated, unsure if he could bear such responsibility. But Ordo's decision was final. Jinhyuk would become the new manager of the world. He then returned to the other dimension. The dragon god asked if Jinhyuk had a meaningful conversation with Ordo, explaining that Ordo had relinquished everything and chosen to trust humanity again. He even returned the dragon, promising to watch over the new world. Before departing, the dragon god reminded Jinhyuk that it was his duty to bring peace to his world, assuring him that he would support him and urging him to become a manager even the gods would respect. Jinhyuk stood in awe, wondering if he had truly become the world's manager. Suddenly, he heard Lucia's voice calling him. He rushed to her and asked if she was all right. She revealed that she had nearly died but had been healed by the dragon god, allowing her to recover. With the danger past, Jinhyuk invited her to return home. She explained that this was her original world and she could not leave, which saddened him. They said their goodbyes and parted ways. Looking down at his world from above, Jinhyuk recalled how a dungeon had mysteriously appeared in his room, never imagining that a bottom-tier hunter like him could rise to become the manager of the world. Though he still didn't understand why Ordo had chosen him for this power, he was determined to guide humanity on the right path, preventing them from going astray. He would accomplish this while connecting with others to build a better world, fulfilling his role both as a human and as the manager of a new world.